They called this kid Filth, which is highly ironic considering he actually belonged to the highest noble bloodline in the entire kingdom. But to the rest of the world, he was nothing more than an unwanted bastard child. He didn't own a single thing of value, living only with the constant hatred and disgust of those around him. If there was one saving grace or talent he possessed, it was the power to heal. In this realm, the divine power of recovery was granted to a select few, and those who mastered it were highly revered as healers. These healers enjoyed immense respect and lived luxurious lives, regardless of their social background. For an outcast like him, becoming a healer was the sole path to earning a speck of respect and being accepted by society. But despite burning the midnight oil and studying endlessly, his healing skills remained absolutely terrible. It turns out that sheer effort alone can never bridge the gap when you completely lack raw talent. 5 long years had passed, and yet he was still stuck at the very bottom as a mere apprentice. For most people in his field, healing is simply a way to make a living. For Ray, however, every day was a battle for survival, filled with constant mockery and ridicule for being incompetent. People treated the blonde boy like complete garbage, finding it satisfying to mock him because his father was a legendary figure. But then, a bizarre event in the library completely terrifies him one afternoon. A mysterious blue screen pops up right before his eyes, announcing that the player has awakened with the doctor class. For a guy who had completely given up on his hopeless life, this felt like an absolute miracle. His initial thought is that he's just hallucinating due to extreme fatigue and lack of sleep. The word doctor was entirely foreign to him, and he figured he would have imagined something far more pleasant if he were daydreaming. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light fills the room, and his clothes instantly transform into the attire of a chief surgeon in an operating theater. Out of nowhere, he finds a patient lying right in front of him, bleeding profusely with rapidly dropping vitals. In the chaos, someone shouts for a blood transfusion, leaving him completely bewildered and lost. Medical terms like clamps, forceps, and lavoft fill the air, echoing all around him. Although none of these things should make sense to a simple apprentice, deep down, he instinctively knows how to react. The definitions of those strange words suddenly flood his mind, as if the knowledge had always been locked inside him. Without even realizing it, he holds his hands high above his waist to keep them sterile, suddenly understanding that he is a surgeon about to perform a splenectomy on a ruptured spleen. He realizes intuitively that while standard healing magic is useless here, the power of medical science can actually save this person's life. In the next heartbeat, he is pulled back to reality, realizing that only a single second had elapsed in the real world. To him, the concept of slicing open a person's abdomen to heal them sounds incredibly barbaric and dark, almost like a form of black magic. Forcing a nervous chuckle, he tries to dismiss it as a hallucination brought on by overwork. Yet, in his heart, he knows this experience was far too vivid to be a mere dream. He gets a strong premonition that this logic-based healing method is far superior and more reliable than the magic they practice. While healing magic often fails the sick in the land of Lepentina, this medical science approach actually has the power to cure them. His mind is reeling in confusion when another notification appears, offering congratulations on awakening the SSS grade doctor class. Prompted to check his status window, he sees his name registered as Dr. Raymond, whom we'll refer to as Dr. Ray. His rank is listed as novice resident, and his title is Dirty Bastard. Starting at level 1 with 0 experience and skill points, his stats display surgery at D, general medicine at C, basic medicine at C, herbology at S, and pathology at A, alongside a passive skill named Heart of Steel at D rank, but no extra skills. The system advises him to accumulate experience points to level up and unleash the true depth of his medical capabilities. Though the entire situation is incredibly bizarre, he is convinced that this is a divine blessing in disguise. Right at that moment, an intruder bursts into the room and immediately begins taunting him for wasting time. Startled, Raymond prepares to walk away, but the bald bully splashes a bucket of filthy water over him, sneering that a failure who can't even get an F rank belongs with the trash. He claims that someone so useless has absolutely nothing of value to offer the Belland Infirmary. Within moments, a crowd of onlookers gathers at the entrance, snickering and whispering about why this failure refuses to quit. They complain that his continued presence is nothing but an embarrassment to the prestigious institution. Suddenly, Ray's friend steps in, warning the bully that if a certain powerful figure overhears these insults, there will be hell to pay. However, the crowd remains completely unbothered, viewing the boy as nothing but an insignificant outcast anyway. It turns out that this influential individual was the very person who secured his admission into this high-status clinic. But the general consensus is that his benefactor sent him here, hoping he would quietly perish in obscurity and stop being an annoyance. Dirty water trickles down his face as he stands there, forced to listen to every single insult. Suddenly, a voice calls out for Raymond, announcing that Master Lance has summoned him immediately. A cold dread grips him, and he quickly makes his way to the office. Arriving at the Master Healer's quarters, he bows deeply to the arrogant elite, who immediately points out that while normal students graduate in 2 years, this outcast has spent 5 years stuck as an apprentice. Lance jeers at him, boasting about how he himself started only a year prior to Ray and has already risen to a B-grade senior healer and master. Drenched in nervous sweat, Ray attempts to ease the tension by praising Lance's remarkable genius. Lance dismisses the flattery, revealing that the Council of Official Healers has unanimously concluded that Ray will never qualify as a real healer. Without a shred of mercy, the arrogant superior terminates his apprenticeship on the spot. Terrified of his impending doom, Ray falls to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floor as he begs desperately for another shot. Lance coldly retorts that he was only tolerated this long out of respect for his father, and any other incompetent student would have been thrown out within a year. Raymond is devastated, knowing that becoming a healer is his only shield against being completely discarded by society. If he is banished from the infirmary now, his dream of ever becoming a certified healer will be shattered forever. Suddenly, a blue notification panel blinks to life, indicating that Ray now has the ability to perform surgical operations on patients. In an instant, he realizes he can use this strange new medical power to successfully cure people. A desperate plan forms in his mind, and he begs the master for one final test to prove his worth on a real patient. He feels confident that even if his traditional magic rank is F, this medical science system will enable him to heal properly. Desperation taking over, Dr. Ray literally begs Master Lance to assign him a single case. He promises that if he succeeds in curing this patient, he will have proven his right to remain at the Belland Infirmary. With a wicked smile, Master Lance questions if Raymond thinks the noble art of healing is a mere joke. But then, an insidious idea occurs to Lance, and he formulates a plan. He tosses a patient's medical record to Ray, instructing him to go cure this specific individual. If Ray successfully manages to heal this case, his expulsion will be canceled. Walking down Lincoln Street, the novice resident clutches the documents tightly, his mind flooded with anxiety and self-doubt. He questions whether he is truly capable of doing this, considering he has never treated a single soul in his entire life. Arriving at the destination, he takes a deep breath to steady his nerves, knocks on the door, and braces himself. The young apprentice knows with absolute certainty that failure here means the absolute end of his career. He will be thrown out before even completing his training, making this his final opportunity to survive. Messes this up, and he will be barred from taking the license exam, forever branded as an uncertified rogue healer. Worse, he could face arrest and imprisonment, fueling rumors that the disgraced noble bastard has now turned into a common criminal. He would go from being an outcast bastard to a disgraced convict. People would gossip that his powerful father would never be able to wash away such a humiliating stain. Most would think it'd be far better if Raymond simply ceased to exist. Gulping down his fear, he prepares to enter, but the door suddenly flies open, hitting him square in the face and sending him sprawling onto the floor. The young girl who opened the door panics upon seeing him on the ground with his documents scattered everywhere. Just then, her eyes catch the official emblem of the Belland Infirmary, and she asks eagerly if he is indeed a healer from the clinic. Weeping with relief, she rushes forward to usher him inside, clearly desperate for any medical assistance. She yells to her mother that the healer they requested has finally arrived at their home. Her mother emerges from the back, completely stunned to see a healer standing at their humble entrance. Scrambling back to his feet, Ray brushes himself off and tries to sound as professional and confident as possible. The mother respectfully invites him further into the house. Even as Ray attempts to clarify that he is merely a low-ranking apprentice, she ignores his protests and begs him to save her dying husband. She confesses they never truly expected the clinic to send anyone, as they didn't have the money to pay for medical services. They had already resigned themselves to watching her husband slip away before their very eyes. Reviewing the patient's records, the apprentice resident realizes the man is suffering from a deep infection near his hip, a critical condition that typically demands a skilled B-grade healer. Unfortunately, destitute families simply do not have the luxury of receiving premium medical care. Instead, they are forced to stand by helplessly as their loved ones slowly and painfully wither away. This tragic sight instantly triggers painful childhood memories of him begging the heartless clinic staff to save his own mother. He had wept bitterly, promising to labor endlessly to settle the debt while offering the single meager coin he owned. Now, the roles are mirrored. A desperate mother is pleading for her spouse, while a sobbing daughter begs for her father. Stealing his resolve, Raymond requests to examine the patient, and the family eagerly escorts him to the bedside. Suddenly, a system notification praises his charitable attitude, granting him a unique bonus and 5 skill points. Unsure of what these skill points actually do, he decides to inspect the system interface. He learns that these points are accumulated by completing specialized quests and can be redeemed to purchase medical abilities. Conveniently, the system issues him a novice-level medical quest to heal his very first patient, promising 10 skill points and an instant level up as a reward. The reality of treating his very first patient feels overwhelming, but despite his selfish motivations, a genuine desire to save this man ignites within him. He makes a silent vow to save this patient's life, no matter the cost. He might lack magical strength, but with this advanced medical knowledge, success is definitely within reach. Without hesitating, he unlocks the Surgery D rank skill, which covers basic operating techniques but excludes advanced surgical methods. The system notes that he requires 50 more experience points to achieve his next level. This requirement doesn't discourage him, as he knows raising his level will unlock superior abilities. Eventually, he will transform into an incredible healer, earning the honor and respect of everyone who once doubted him. But as he steps up to the sickbed, he is instantly hit by a foul, nauseating odor emanating from the infected wound. The stench is nearly suffocating, triggering a sudden wave of panic as his mind struggles to find a starting point. His thoughts briefly freeze, but he quickly regains his composure and activates his class skill, Heart of Steel. While currently weak, this skill scales with his level, granting the user absolute composure and an unwavering focus under pressure. Instantly, his racing heart slows down, allowing him to analyze the infected site with cold precision. The mother points out the massive, angry abscess on her husband's hip, which has been expanding non-stop. The patient is burning up, his fever escalating by the minute, leaving him entirely bedridden. To assess the situation properly, Raymond begins by taking the patient's vitals. He confirms that the infection has not yet progressed to lethal septic shock, meaning there is still time to intervene. Upon closer inspection, he diagnoses a localized hip abscess. Though recovery will take time, the treatment itself is relatively simple. The anxious mother looks at him and asks if her husband can truly be saved. Although a professional healer would normally resolve this with magic, he calmly assures her that his methods will work. Raymond then requests some freshly boiled water left to cool, along with a sterile, razor-sharp knife heated directly over a flame. These bizarre requests baffle the mother, and she begins to question what kind of strange therapy this is. The young healer looks at her and flatly explains that this is a surgery. As Dr. Ray prepares his instruments, the mother and daughter whisper nervously, completely clueless as to what surgery actually means. Moments later, the novice healer puts on a protective mask, raising the hot knife to make an incision, but the terrified woman suddenly grabs his arm, halting him. She demands a clear explanation of what he intends to do with a blade to her husband's body. Terrified by the sight of the glittering blade, she begs him to use traditional healing magic instead of cutting. Ray gently reassures her, begging her to trust him just this once and let him restore her family's happiness. Though hesitant, she slowly releases her grip on his wrist, realizing she has absolutely no other options left. With the path clear, Raymond locks in, his mind entering a state of absolute focus. He is fully aware that even a minor slip of the hand could prove fatal. Failure is not an option. He must save this life at all costs. Suddenly, a vivid memory of a high-stakes operating room flashes in his mind, where he authoritatively directed staff to clamp a bleeding artery to prevent cardiac arrest. This state of mind, cool logic combined with a passionate resolve, as outlined in his medical texts, is precisely what he channels now. Armed with that simulated experience, draining a simple localized infection feels remarkably straightforward. In truth, it is such a basic procedure that it hardly qualifies as real surgery. The apprentice healer makes a precise incision into the swollen flesh, allowing the infected, foul liquid to drain safely. His hands tremble slightly, but he quickly steadies his grip, channeling the professionalism of a veteran surgeon. Moving to the next phase, he uses sterile cloth to thoroughly clean the wound until all traces of infection are cleared. He then carefully debrides the wound, slicing away dead, necrotic tissue section by section with his blade. Concentrating entirely, Raymond completes the cleanup, allowing the healthy tissue underneath to finally heal. To finalize the treatment, he applies a herbal infusion possessing strong natural antibiotic properties to the clean wound. Completing his task, Ray stands tall and announces with confidence that the procedure was a success. Relief washes over the mother and daughter, and they rush to the bed with wide smiles. Checking the patient once more, the apprentice resident notes that the fever has completely broken. He reassures the ecstatic family that the man will be back on his feet within a matter of days. The grateful wife bows deeply, thanking Ray for showing compassion when every other healer turned them away. She explains how they visited multiple clinics, only to be rejected because they couldn't afford the exorbitant fees, with no healer even bothering to examine him. Overcome with emotion, she praises the boy, commonly called a dirty outcast, as a true saint sent to save their family. Her words touch his heart deeply, but he is completely caught off guard when the little girl suddenly leaps forward and wraps her arms around him. For the first time in his difficult life, Raymond hears genuine words of gratitude, discovering the absolute fulfillment of saving another human being. When Raymond returns to report his success, Master Lance completely dismisses his claims, treating him as a pathetic, lying fraud. Raymond understands his skepticism. After all, such a feat seems impossible for someone officially ranked as an F- apprentice. Previously, he lacked the ability to save anyone at all. But the truth is, healing magic isn't a magical cure-all that instantly eradicates every disease upon physical contact. In this realm, healing magic operates simply by accelerating and amplifying the patient's natural vitality. While boosting vitality can speed up recovery for basic ailments, it is entirely ineffective against specific localized conditions. Take Raymond's first patient, for example, who suffered from a deep-seated abscess. Simply enhancing his life force would do nothing to clear the active bacterial infection trapped under his skin. This shows that the traditional medical practices of Lepantina suffer from massive structural flaws. They relied entirely on raw magic power, completely ignoring the mechanical aspects of physical treatment and surgery. Annoyed by Raymond's confidence, Lance decides to visit the patient and verify the claims personally. He warns that if Raymond is indeed fabricating this story, he will face severe consequences. With a sharp bang, he slams the door right in Raymond's face. Raymond stays calm, confident in his work, and knowing he performed a flawless procedure. Right then, a blue system window blinks before his eyes, granting him 10 skill points as a quest reward. He achieves a level up, noting that his tier will advance from novice resident to skilled resident once he reaches level 40. Raymond realizes that, as he climbs the ranks, he can eventually become a specialist and ultimately a chief professor. Additionally, he receives a unique bonus, but he remains unsure about the purpose of the bonus stat points he gains with each level. He deduces that the attunement attribute aids in precision surgeries, though the exact function of the other stats remains a mystery. Upon careful examination, he reasons that strength governs physical stamina, while attunement controls delicate, precise motor movements. Intelligence allows him to apply medical theory with peak efficiency, while one final mystery stat remains locked until he meets special requirements. Thinking back to how badly his hands were shaking while cleaning that nasty abscess, he considers putting his extra points into attunement. Ray is absolutely buzzing with excitement, starting to believe that he might actually have a shot at becoming a legendary healer after all. Even an F- bottom-tier rookie like him can climb the ranks and eventually conquer the entire healing world of Lepantina. Right on cue, Lancer bursts into the room, muttering that the patient probably healed by pure luck, and dumps a new challenge on Raymond to test his skills at the almshouse. He's convinced that Raymond's luck is about to run out. But Raymond isn't discouraged by the threat at all. Honestly, he views the almshouse as the ultimate training ground to grind and level up his skills. It essentially operates like a chaotic ER, but there is one major catch. As soon as he arrives, the other apprentices start throwing shade, treating him like some prestigious piece of garbage. At this rate, Raymond worries he won't even be allowed near a single patient. If he fails to treat at least one person in the next 14 days, his apprenticeship is history. He needs to come up with a backup plan, and he needs it now. Knowing he has a mere 2 weeks to secure his spot, Raymond is well aware that Lance is just counting down the minutes until he trips up. He won't be able to rely on simple good fortune this go-round. To make matters worse, the clinic is complete chaos, with healers treating their duties like a boring corporate shift and processing patients on an assembly line. If things keep going like this, he'd be lucky to get a patient once a year, let alone within 2 weeks. With the clock ticking, he realizes he has to create his own luck. Scanning the room, his gaze locks onto Hansen. Hansen is a run-of-the-mill Grade C apprentice who is currently stuck with sweeping duty. Wasting no time, Dr. Ray snatches the broom, activates his ultimate nice guy persona, and cheerfully tells Hansen to go take a well-deserved break. Even if his patience for other trainees is usually paper-thin, Raymond eagerly takes over the chores just to win Hansen over. And surprisingly, Hansen is incredibly touched by the helping hand. Ray even goes the extra mile, offering to take care of all the tedious tasks like sorting bandages and prepping herbs. However, Hansen suddenly gets nervous, realizing that if Ray tries to treat someone, it might seriously trigger the other healers. Noticing his hesitation, Raymond busts out his best puppy dog eyes and promises him that there's nothing to worry about. He points out that the other healers rarely leave their offices unless a fresh patient arrives, meaning they won't even notice a thing. Even so, Hansen still sounds a little unsure about the whole setup. To seal the deal, Raymond plays his ultimate victim card, acting deeply hurt and offering to give the broom back like a rejected child. Hansen quickly backtracks, refusing to pass up such a sweet deal. And honestly, who can blame him? Sweeping this place is a total nightmare, and getting out of it is a massive win. While Raymond is happy to help, he keeps his secret quest for experience points completely to himself. There's absolutely no reason to let Hansen in on his system secrets. A short while later, Ray finally gets his hands on a patient to dress their wounds, instantly bagging some sweet EXP. With every single patient he treats, his experience bar slowly creeps up. These minor tasks are clearly paying off, and before he knows it, 3 days have flown by. Raymond finally reaches level 4 and immediately dumps his skill points into attunement to refine his precision for future operations. Day in and day out, he continues assisting patients, daydreaming about the glorious future where he reigns as the world's supreme healer. He pictures his ultimate rags to riches life. A massive 5-story marble mansion, endless feasts of juicy steak, and drinking premium wine every single night. Despite being the offspring of the most powerful figure in the empire, his life inside the palace had been more miserable than that of a low-ranking servant. Back then, his days were consumed by jealousy for everyone around him. Suddenly, a patient snaps him out of his daydream, telling him he's free to go, which catches Dr. Ray completely off guard. Regaining his composure, he quickly reassures the patient that the medicine is applied and they'll be feeling much better shortly. The elderly lady thinks Raymond is incredibly charming and gentle, especially when compared to the arrogant healers she usually encounters. Raymond offers a warm smile, replying that a patient dealing with physical pain shouldn't have to suffer from a healer's cold attitude as well. This pain hits close to home, reminding him of how his own mother used to suffer from severe back issues when he was young. The old woman adds that while Lance might be talented, his terrible personality has always left a bad taste in her mouth. But today, thanks to our hero, she is leaving the clinic with a genuinely happy smile and a comforted heart. Right on cue, his status screen flashes, unlocking the friendly healer title for his compassion, which rewards him with 5 skill points and a sweet reputation boost. Realizing these skill points are directly tied to his dedication, he wishes the elderly lady well and immediately dives back into his cleaning duties. With no other tasks available, he returns to scrubbing, realizing the foul odor lingering in the air desperately requires some deep cleaning. He notes to himself that the people of Lepentina have never prioritized basic hygiene. Even Hansen's attempts at sweeping were pretty subpar. Raymond facepalms, knowing that a dirty medical facility is a breeding ground for infections and dangerous for patients. After all, keeping things sterile is one of the absolute golden rules of medicine. To keep himself going, he visualizes his future as a ridiculously rich physician. With that motivation, he begins scrubbing the floors like his entire future depends on it. He practically transforms the dingy room into a sparkling sanctuary, promising himself that he'll hire a maid the second he strikes it rich. As his back and joints scream in pain, he wonders if he should put some points into his strength stat. Suddenly, multiple blue notification screens flash, revealing he's unlocked Squeaky Clean, a feat that grants him 20 skill points, extra bonuses, and bumps him up to level 5. Now sitting on a comfortable stash of 40 skill points, Raymond can finally unlock powerful new traits and even find ways to make chores a breeze. With various general and class skills available, Ray gets a first-time buyer discount and can even afford a high-tier unique skill for exactly 40 points. His choices are limited to 3 incredibly rare options: Muscles of Steel, Surgeon's Finesse, and Wise Eyes, none of which are easy to come by. It's a difficult choice, but before he can weigh his options, Hansen bursts in, dragging a patient who is in critical condition and violently vomiting blood. With a single look, Dr. Ray immediately recognizes that this patient desperately needs a grade A healer's intervention. Standard healing magic might help clot the blood, but for a severe case like this, it won't be nearly enough. Unfortunately, the Belland Infirmary's sole grade A healer, Director Bucks, is currently away on a house call for a wealthy noble. The man is literally on his deathbed, and only immediate surgical intervention can save his life. Raymond searches his medical database and finds a viable procedure, though it's typically a highly advanced method reserved for elite healers. As Hansen frantically calls for backup, Lance arrives on the scene to inspect the dying man. He coldly dismisses the patient as a lost cause, stating there's absolutely no point in wasting time on him. Raymond steps forward, visibly angry, questioning how a medical professional can throw in the towel without even attempting to help. He pleads with Lance, reminding him that as a grade B healer, he actually has the skills to pull off a miracle. But Lance has had it with Ray, snapping at him for having the audacity to lecture others after being a useless failure for half a decade. Lance mockingly tells him that if he's such a genius, he should go ahead and perform the treatment himself. Raymond knows the odds are heavily stacked against him, but without action, the patient is doomed regardless. If he steps in and fails, he will take all the blame and get kicked out of the guild permanently. At that critical moment, the system window flashes, unlocking the passion of the healer trait, allowing Raymond to bypass his limits and treat high-level cases through sheer determination. He even secures a double level up on the spot, along with 30 bonus skill points. With a brand new medical quest active, Dr. Ray knows that a single mistake will cost him everything. But as the patient clutches his sleeve, pleading for survival, Raymond knows that doing nothing is a death sentence for the poor man. The dying patient is desperately pleading for a miracle, and Raymond knows that a hands-off approach means certain death for the man and an instant eviction for himself. However, this surgery is light years beyond his current capabilities, and a failed attempt might lead to the exact same tragic outcome. Logically, it would be much safer to stick to easy chores for the next 2 weeks. Yet, looking at the suffering man coughing up blood, his conscience refuses to let him walk away. He prays for a steady hand, and suddenly, Heart of Steel activates, clearing his panic. With a resolved mind, the Shadow Prince vows to practice medicine to save lives, no matter the cost. He refuses to let fear and hesitation dictate whether a patient lives or dies. He marches over to Lance, demanding permission to take charge of the treatment. Lance scoffs, calling him a lunatic, but backs off anyway to see if Raymond's ridiculous luck can pull off another miracle. The rest of the staff clear out as well, leaving Raymond entirely in charge of the operation. As he preps his tools, reality hits him. Surgery is never a solo job, and he can't do this entirely alone. Thankfully, Hansen steps forward, quietly offering to assist him in any way he can. He confesses that he couldn't live with the guilt of watching a man die without putting up a fight. Raymond accepts the help with relief, though Hansen remains terrified, wondering how two low-ranking apprentices are going to survive this ordeal. The Shadow Prince explains that healing magic is off the table, and with time running short, they need to act now and talk later. From here on out, he instructs Hansen to follow his every command without question. Without hesitation, Hansen boils clean water, sterilizes a blade over an open flame, and gathers clean linens for the patient. Despite his nerves, Hansen keeps peppering him with questions, but Ray focuses entirely on getting the job done first. When Hansen worries that the patient is passing out, he realizes our clever rookie has already sedated him using a natural hallucinogen. Raymond is relieved he prepped some catgut beforehand, a trick he picked up from watching the mages in the tower. Catgut, crafted from animal intestines, is the perfect material for internal stitches because it dissolves naturally over time. To start, Raymond thoroughly sterilizes the area of the incision. When a puzzled Hansen asks what his plan is, Dr. Ray calmly announces that he is starting the surgery. The second the blade slices into the patient's abdomen, Hansen nearly shrieks in horror, calling the act a sin. Raymond understands the anatomy perfectly, but seeing the actual muscle layers and fat tissues exposed in real life is a completely different story. A wave of nausea hits him, and he feels incredibly lightheaded. Fortunately, Heart of Steel triggers once more, and Dr. Ray reminds himself of his grand dream to become the greatest healer of all. Fantasizing about the fame, admiration, and stacks of cash waiting for him gives him the strength to complete the incision. Hansen is still shivering with fear, almost reaching out to pull Ray away. But seeing Ray's absolute focus and remembering his own past helplessness, he decides to trust him. Soon, they notice yellow fluid seeping from the duodenum, confirming it is indeed a ruptured ulcer. Raymond instantly recalls the required steps for this exact emergency. He must constrict the bleeding vessels in that area and seal up the perforation. When Ray suddenly asks Hansen to lift one of the internal organs, the poor guy almost faints on the spot. Even with the entire textbook memorized, Raymond's hand freezes when it comes to making the critical cut. The operation is on the verge of disaster, but Ray takes deep, steady breaths to regain control. It hits him that despite having high stats, he still hasn't purchased the surgeon's finesse skill, which is exactly what he needs right now. Right on cue, the status screen prompts him to unlock surgeon's finesse, and he buys it without a second thought. His attunement stat gets a nice boost, climbing all the way to 16. The second the skill boots up, a massive shift occurs. Raymond's movements transform, becoming incredibly precise, fluid, and confident. Even though he hasn't magically become a grandmaster, his hands are now rock steady. With absolute control over his hands, he calls for the thread to tie off the blood vessel and stitch the tear in the duodenum. Carefully shifting the tissue around the stomach, he patches the hole and snips the vagus nerve to reduce harmful stomach acid. Now, it is time for the cleanup. He uses sterile water to wash away the leaked stomach fluids from the cavity, preparing to stitch the patient back up. And with that, his very first abdominal surgery is complete, unlocking a historic achievement, Father of Surgery, cementing his legacy forever. He scores 10 skill points alongside a massive level-up reward for resolving a high-difficulty case. Additionally, his dedication triggers another upgrade, granting him 30 more skill points and even more levels. Overwhelmed with emotion, Raymond suddenly bursts into tears of joy, which completely terrifies poor Hansen. With a trembling but happy voice, Dr. Ray whispers that they actually pulled it off. The news spreads like wildfire, and Lance is completely dumbfounded when he hears that Raymond successfully treated the dying man. The messenger admits he has no idea how it's possible, but the patient is up and recovering beautifully. Refusing to believe an F- loser could pull off such a feat, Lance storms over to check for himself. He kicks the door open, only to find Raymond and the patient chatting away like old buddies. Lance stands there, completely clueless about the medical miracle that just took place. The patient expresses his deep gratitude, but Ray reminds him to rest up since he's still recovering. Suddenly, Lance barges into the room, shouting and asking if Director Bucks was the one who performed the cure. The sudden loud intrusion startles Raymond. Lance demands to know the truth, yelling that there is absolutely no way a failure like Raymond could have done this. With a calm shrug, our hero admits that he was indeed the one responsible. Lance's temper flares, convinced that Raymond is lying straight to his face. But then, Raymond drops a massive bombshell. He reveals that he didn't use a single drop of magic to cure him. This revelation leaves Lance absolutely speechless. Aware that he needs a believable cover story, the Shadow Prince explains that he utilized an ancient discipline known as medical science. He quickly concocts a wild tale about falling off a northern cliff and discovering a hidden archive detailing this lost art. Naturally, Lance doesn't believe a word of his story and begins ranting, until the patient gets fed up and barks at him to shut his mouth. The patient then pulls up his shirt to reveal the neat surgical stitches as undeniable proof, leaving Lance frozen in shock. To make things worse, the man recognizes Lance as the heartless healer who was ready to let him die just moments ago. And now, here is Lance, disrespecting the very doctor who worked tirelessly to save him. Raymond tries to hold the patient down, warning him not to move with fresh stitches, but the furious man grabs the nearest chamber pot and chucks it right at Lance. As luck would have it, Lance gets hit dead on with a pot full of urine, freezing in sheer horror and disgust. The patient yells at him, threatening to throw a bucket of waste next if Lance doesn't clear out immediately. Lance immediately runs for his life, while the patient sighs, wondering how such an arrogant prick ever became a doctor. The patient apologizes for creating a scene, though Raymond is secretly worried about the mess left behind. Still, Raymond knows the outcome was worth every bit of trouble. Raymond expresses his gratitude to the patient for defending him. Soon after, whispers and rumors begin circulating everywhere. People claim Raymond just got lucky with the bleeding and that his medical science is nothing but complete nonsense. Hearing the gossip, Raymond doesn't feel surprised in the slightest. He fully expected this reaction, knowing one successful case wouldn't instantly fix his terrible reputation in the city. As he goes back to mopping the floors, Hansen stands nearby, watching him in silence. Out of nowhere, Hansen approaches our hero, admitting he's had a change of perspective. He takes the broom from Raymond's hands to finish the cleaning, leaving Ray completely surprised. He can clearly tell that Hansen now views him with deep respect. Suddenly, Lance emerges from the shadows, quietly stalking closer. Ray feels a sudden shiver run down his spine, sensing eyes on him. Turning around, he meets Lance's glare, which is filled with pure resentment. Ever since that surgery, Lance's demeanor towards him has shifted drastically. Those typical condescending glares have transformed into something genuinely menacing. While such hostility would have crushed him in the past, Raymond now brushes it off without a second thought. Lance is practically boiling with silent rage, but Raymond remains completely unfazed. He is already lost in his own dreams, imagining his rise to becoming the country's ultimate healer. In his wildest fantasies, he is swimming in piles of gold coins while imagining a future where every single noble bows before him. Right in the middle of this glorious daydream, a sudden, cold shiver runs down his back. His instincts warn him that something creepy is nearby, and indeed, Master Lance is already whispering right next to his ear. Raymond looks back with a forced, anxious grin, fully aware that trouble is brewing. With a cunning smirk, Lance delivers the shocking news that Dr. Ray has been selected to attend the upcoming Royal Name Day event. This was the last thing Raymond ever wanted to hear, and the mere mention of it fills him with absolute dread. Lance shouts the announcement right into his ear, leaving the poor doctor utterly stunned. The realization hits him instantly. Lance clearly plotted this move to ruin his unconventional practice by forcing him into the royal spotlight, hoping he would fail spectacularly before the entire country. Yet there Lance stands, pretending as though he's offering him the opportunity of a lifetime. The Name Day Feast is an annual royal palace banquet celebrating the birth of the first king, attended by every noble in the land. Due to the massive gathering of VIPs, the castle's medical staff gets overwhelmed, requiring reinforcements from outside. Every medical facility is required to dispatch one of their own healers to the event. Being selected is proof that your talents are formally acknowledged, making it a prestigious achievement for any healer. Even so, the Shadow Prince remains deeply suspicious, while Lance keeps boasting that only the top apprentice deserves such a rare privilege. As Lance endlessly praises the Shadow Prince for saving an internal bleeding victim to justify his decision, Raymond can only sit in the corner, thoroughly annoyed. He whispers under his breath, calling Lance a monster, fully aware that this is merely a trap designed to mock him. For him, that palace represents pure trauma, and painful memories from his last visit immediately rush back into his mind. He recalls how people kicked him around like an unwanted stray, telling him he shouldn't even exist, as if his very life was an insult to them. Next to that absolute dump, this small clinic has felt like a peaceful sanctuary. The royal court had offered him nothing but physical abuse, constant failures, and endless disrespect. They constantly ridiculed him, accusing him of dragging his father's reputation through the mud. They labeled him the Shadow Prince, a cruel title that continues to hurt to this day. His own father abandoned him, since the proud kingdom of Houston had absolutely no place for an illegitimate son. The king's past indiscretion became Raymond's lifelong burden, leaving him labeled as a shameful stain on the royal lineage. And yet, Lance has the audacity to force him right back into that lion's den for the celebration. Interrupting the quiet, Raymond asks if his presence is truly mandatory, suggesting they send someone else instead. Lance questions his reluctance to accept such an incredible chance, subtly reminding Raymond that he holds the power over his graduation. This threat strikes a nerve, forcing Raymond to desperately reconsider his position. He deeply desires to smack the arrogant look off Lance's face, his fists shaking with suppressed rage. Suddenly, a system notification appears, presenting Raymond with his next mission, Savior of the Banquet. His primary goal is to ensure that the entire event concludes with absolutely zero fatalities. Rated as a high-difficulty half-scalpel quest, the requirement remains straightforward. Survive the event until the very end and keep everyone breathing. Success promises massive rewards, triple experience points, 30 skill points, a major reputation boost, and a chance to win a powerful ally's favor. The sheer scale of these rewards makes him suspicious, leaving him puzzled as to why the payout is thrice as large as his previous task. The extreme difficulty level worries him, hinting that some major catastrophe might be waiting to strike during the banquet. Though this realization makes him incredibly nervous, he still decides to seize the opportunity. However, he has no intention of doing this without getting something out of it. As a condition, he demands to be allowed to take the official healing certification exam right after the celebration. To be fair, his primary goal for joining this clinic was always that certificate, and he certainly wouldn't risk returning to the palace without a proper trade-off. Lance recoils slightly, hesitant to allow an F- rookie to even participate in such a professional test. Raymond quickly counters, pointing out that Lance himself declared him talented enough for the prestigious royal palace duty. That argument definitely leaves Lance speechless. Quickly recovering, Lance formulates a counter-proposal and issues a strict challenge. Raymond will get his exam, but only if he handles every situation at the feast perfectly. Hearing this, Raymond realizes he's just secured his ticket to success, taking a huge step toward his ultimate objective. He is absolutely ecstatic, eager to demonstrate his competence and earn his shot at the certification. The moment he secures that license, he plans to vanish from this place without leaving a trace. Most importantly, he won't ever have to look at Lance's irritating face again. That glorious thought alone gives him all the motivation he needs. Shortly after, Raymond departs for the very castle he despises with every fiber of his being. 5 long years have passed since he walked away from those gates, never once looking behind him. Simply seeing the structure again revives all the dark memories, making him want to scream in frustration. Panic begins to set in, and he genuinely contemplates making a run for it before he crosses the threshold. Even so, he reasons that Lance wouldn't dare dismiss him after he successfully treated that severe internal bleeding case. Lance would surely complain, but after everything Raymond has survived, a scolding from his boss is nothing. Adding to his self-doubt, he worries his current abilities aren't good enough to make a difference at the royal court. With the kingdom's finest healers attending, he assumes he will just end up blending into the background. Suddenly, a critical possibility occurs to him. If a patient suffers from an illness that traditional healers cannot cure, they might actually perish. This realization spurs him forward, and almost instinctively, his legs carry him closer to the entrance. Despite the fact that the castle's residents once viewed him as absolute garbage, a change occurs deep within him. Dr. Ray resolves to stop fleeing from his past, reminding himself that he bears no guilt and has no reason to hide anymore. After all, he had absolutely no say in being born as an illegitimate prince. The responsibility lies solely with the king, his father, while Dr. Ray is merely the innocent victim of his choices. While the old Raymond would have fled, his duty as a doctor now refuses to let him abandon patients who might need his unique skills. He keeps his focus clear. His role is to save lives, not to cater to the royals or the court. Immediately, a system notification alerts him that his heart of steel has temporarily jumped to grade A, activated by his resolve to face his fears for his patients. A comforting warmth spreads through him, instantly soothing his racing heartbeat. He can feel the stabilizing power of the high-level ability taking hold as his breathing returns to normal. Thinking logically now, he realizes that saving a wealthy noble could yield a massive payout, giving him the perfect incentive to get excited. To give himself an extra edge, Raymond decides to purchase a new capability from the system. Accessing the shop's bonus category, he is stunned to discover that skill points can be exchanged to master magical spells. The thrilling prospect of eventually outclassing professional sorcerers with his unique setup makes his heart thump with anticipation. Shifting his attention, he continues inspecting the available general traits. He spots options like Friendly Doctor, Efficient Records, and Confronting the Rude among the basic selections. Assuming his current rank restricts access to high-tier skills, he selects the one best suited for dealing with the obnoxious aristocrats he's about to face. After purchasing Facing the Boars, Raymond finds himself with 30 skill points. This capability allows him to handle obnoxious or difficult individuals with supreme tact, making it ideal for the upcoming event. Fully prepared, our rookie doctor is finally ready to make his move. Over at the Houston Palace, attendees are singing the monarch's praises, celebrating his efficient and peaceful reign. They whisper that without his strong leadership, the entire nation would have collapsed long ago. He is revered as a veteran warrior, a tactical military genius, a benevolent ruler, and a leader who commands absolute loyalty from the aristocracy. With such an immaculate reputation, none of the elites would ever dare speak ill of him. Instead, they projected all of their frustration onto Raymond, using him as a scapegoat to keep the king's record pristine. For a long time, Raymond was subjected to constant cruelty, blamed for bringing dishonor to an otherwise perfect dynasty. This unbearable treatment is what drove the Shadow Prince to flee the royal court half a decade ago. His departure was celebrated by the court, who viewed it as a nuisance finally resolving itself. None of them wanted to see an illegitimate disgrace living alongside high society. The wealthy elites whisper maliciously about the outcast prince who failed at medicine and remains a lowly apprentice. Standing nearby, Raymond catches every whisper, and soon enough, someone in the gathering spots him. The insults begin immediately, but armed with his temporary grade A heart of steel, Raymond remains entirely unfazed. If anything, he actually feels exceptionally good looking this evening. As he checks himself out, he makes a mental note to find a way to make this psychological defense upgrade permanent. Suddenly, he notices Princess Sophia staring at him with the same old look of utter disgust, as if she's looking at an insect. Dismissing her attitude as standard teenage petulance, he reasons she either lacked a motive to bully him back then or simply lacked the power. Apparently, Sophia inherited her late mother's fragile constitution, and her health clearly hasn't improved over the years. His skin crawls when a mockingly familiar voice addresses him by a degrading nickname. It is none other than Settle, the fourth prince, who seems genuinely amused to find him wandering the hall. Instinctive fear grips Raymond as he recalls the brutal beatings and endless torments Settle used to inflict on him. The mental scars of that childhood trauma linger to this day. He feels entirely trapped, much like a defenseless mouse in front of a predator. Settle mocks his silence, questioning if the outcast has suddenly developed enough arrogance to ignore royalty. He aggressively grips Raymond's chin, pulling him forward to make a public spectacle of him. Raymond's instincts scream as panic-inducing flashbacks flash before his eyes. Before panic can take over, he manually triggers his heart of steel, instantly washing away his fear and bringing a serene calm. The system recognizes Settle's highly obnoxious behavior, immediately activating his newly acquired Confronting the Rude skill. In a smooth motion, Raymond offers a polite bow, leaving the hostile prince utterly bewildered. This sudden demonstration of confidence and respect confuses Settle, who expects trembling fear instead. He is thoroughly unsettled by Raymond's composure, recalling how the boy used to tremble uncontrollably at his mere presence. The red-haired prince simply stands there, completely lost for words. Right as Settle considers splashing his drink in anger, Raymond looks up with wide, innocent eyes and asks if the prince is suffering from some hidden illness. The prince halts instantly, completely dumbfounded by the bizarre question. Raymond politely points out that since Settle entered his professional space, he assumed the royal needed medical assistance. Though Settle angrily claims he's perfectly healthy, he can't shaking the feeling that Raymond has completely changed. Remaining perfectly professional, Raymond graciously advises him to return to the festivities and enjoy the banquet. This polite dismissal infuriates Settle further, especially when Raymond immediately turns his attention to an elderly guest nearby struggling with dizziness. Stepping in, Raymond carefully assists the old man, promising to resolve whatever ailment is ruining his evening. All the while, Settle remains frozen, completely ignored. A brief look back from Raymond only fuels Settle's rage, realizing this nuisance is trying to dismiss him. Determined to break him, Settle decides to play along and pretends to be sick. Raymond calmly invites him to explain his symptoms so he can perform a diagnosis. Settle complains of generic fatigue and low energy, believing there's no way the doctor can prove he's lying. This setup fuels Settle's malicious desire to utterly embarrass him once he fails to diagnose him. Sighing softly, Dr. Ray immediately diagnoses him with chronic alcohol abuse. Confronting his terrible sibling doesn't rattle his confident demeanor in the slightest. He points out that Settle's daily drinking habit damages his internal organs, which naturally explains his sluggishness. He suggests cutting back on the alcohol and politely wishes him good health. This precise breakdown completely stuns Settle, who has no logical way to argue against the diagnosis. Wishing him a pleasant night, Raymond dismisses the prince. Settle is left utterly confused by this incredibly confident version of his brother. In the meantime, the system rewards him with 5 skill points. Raymond feels a surge of pride for handling that obnoxious jerk so smoothly, appreciating the utility of his new skill. Reflecting on it, he finds it hilarious that he once feared a guy who can barely form a coherent thought. As a final send-off, Raymond raises a middle finger to Settle's retreating back. Shortly after, Princess Sophia approaches him, commenting on how much his demeanor has changed since they last met. She bluntly confesses that she used to consider him completely worthless. Listening to her, Raymond reflects on their history and wonders if she's actually developed some respect for him. Flashing a polite smile, he offers a backhanded compliment, noting that she hasn't changed at all. When she dryly asks if he's referring to her sharp attitude, Raymond quickly saves face by saying he meant she remains exceptionally beautiful. Sophia then admits she isn't feeling well and decides to take a brief break to recover. When he inquires further, she explains that she has an upcoming address to deliver, limiting her downtime. Noticing her pale complexion, Raymond advises her to rest regardless, but she dismisses him, claiming a mere apprentice cannot help her anyway. As she departs, Raymond realizes her irritable attitude isn't personal. Soon, the scheduled address begins, and Sophia walks up to welcome the assembled guests. The presentation goes smoothly until Raymond spots a worrying symptom. She begins to gasp for breath, her chest visibly racing with distress. Suddenly, she loses her footing and faints, sending a wave of panic through the crowd. As a team of medical staff swarms her, Raymond realizes that Sophia's condition is directly tied to his current system quest. Immediately, the royal guards summon every available physician to assist her. An expert steps up to cast high-tier healing magic, but the spell fails to yield any results. Fear grips Raymond as he witnesses even a top-ranking healer fail to stabilize her. He begins to doubt his own skills, wondering if he has any right to interfere. The overwhelming weight of the situation makes him tremble, fearing the severe penalty of a failed attempt. He briefly contemplates ignoring the situation entirely, recalling that their relationship was never pleasant to begin with. Just as his medical career is beginning to flourish, risking his future for her seems highly illogical. Purse-lipped, he remembers her recent acknowledgement of his transformation. Though it wasn't a formal apology, it was enough to spark his resolve. Raymond clenches his jaw. He refuses to let her pass away before she formally begs for his forgiveness. After that, she is free to do whatever she wants. Wasting no more time, Dr. Ray steps out of the crowd and declares his intention to treat her, drawing everyone's attention. The royal physicians mockingly order the mere apprentice to step away, claiming the emergency is far beyond his amateur capabilities, but Raymond ignores them. He pushes forward through the crowd to reach her side. At that exact instant, his heart of steel levels up again, triggered by his heroic choice to save a critical patient. Despite the attempts of several medical staff to block his path, Raymond breaches the perimeter to reach her. She looks up weakly, gasping that she will surely die if he doesn't save her. Raymond instantly checks her neck pulse, confirming she has gone into cardiac arrest. All that's left now is to kickstart her heart and get the blood pumping through her veins once more. Without wasting a second, he locks his hands together, places them over her chest, and begins delivering powerful chest compressions. The onlookers immediately go wild with anger, shocked that anyone would dare touch a princess this way, but Ray yells back that he's doing this to save her life. Before the royal healers can rush forward and push him aside, the king himself enters the room, and his sheer authority instantly silences the crowd. Watching Ray desperately compress Sophia's chest, the king turns to his healers and demands to know if any of their traditional spells can actually bring her back. Faced with their silent hesitation, the king loses his temper and barks at the useless doctors to stand back and let Raymond do his job. All the while, our young healer is starting to sweat, desperately wondering why her heart refuses to start beating again. Beads of sweat pour down his face as he frantically searches for an alternative, fully aware that he is running out of time. Though he pushes on with the CPR, anxiety begins to overwhelm him, especially as the crowd starts whispering and glaring at him like he's committing a crime. With wide, panicked eyes and gritted teeth, Raymond gasps for air while forcing himself to maintain the grueling rhythm of the compressions. He's fully aware that if this fails, he's absolutely done for. A moment of sheer panic grips him, but he quickly regains his composure, remembering that if manual chest compressions fail, the next logical step is an electric shock. What he really needs is a defibrillator, but tracking down that kind of medical gear in a fantasy world like Lepentina is practically impossible. Seeing no other option, he quickly pulls up his status window, navigates to the skill shop, and drops 80 skill points on a handy bonus spell called Electricus Magic. Wasting no time, he positions one hand right below Sophia's collarbone and the other near her left underarm, sending a direct jolt of electrical current coursing through her chest. But right in the middle of his spell, some guy wielding a broom violently shoves him away, breaking his magical connection. The furious attacker looks ready to execute Raymond on the spot, screaming that he is physically assaulting the princess while she's fighting for her life. Shaking like a leaf, Dr. Ray tries to defend himself, stammering that he wasn't trying to harm her, but was actually using lightning magic to revive her. At that very moment, the king intervenes, commanding his royal physicians to check on his daughter. One of the healers quickly feels her pulse and, with eyes wide in shock, announces that her heart has started beating again. A collective gasp of shock ripples through the entire room, while they struggle to comprehend this miracle. Given that Raymond didn't use any recognizable healing spells, our protagonist lets out a massive sigh of relief, glad that he won't be executed today. Still, the king is completely intrigued and demands an immediate explanation of the strange technique Raymond just used. This sudden question completely throws him for a loop. The king stands there, waiting for some kind of logical justification for these unorthodox actions. Bowing deeply, Raymond respectfully explains that Sophia's dire state required an unconventional approach to bypass standard healing limits. The king remains quiet for a moment, processing this bizarre explanation. Without another word, the king brushes past him and loudly declares that the banquet has officially ended. But before leaving, he casts a stern look at the Shadow Prince, commanding him to stay behind until further notice. This only fuels Raymond's anxiety, leaving him utterly clueless about what his father wants, especially since they haven't spoken a word to each other in 5 years. Looking back, Raymond's very first memory of his father dates back to the days right after his mother's death. He was starving and helpless inside a ruined, run-down shack when the front door slowly creaked open. The royal physician had just checked Raymond's mother and confirmed that she had already passed away. The king realized right then that without immediate, top-tier medical care, the young boy wouldn't last much longer either. Without a moment's hesitation, he gathered the frail Raymond into his arms, rushed him back to the palace, and ordered his healers to save the boy by any means necessary. The story spread like wildfire, with the king making it absolutely clear to the entire court that the boy's survival was of the utmost importance. Tragically, that was the very last time Raymond ever heard a warm, caring tone from his father. His life was preserved, But from that day forward, they shared nothing but cold silence. Being branded an illegitimate child, his mere presence in the palace was treated as an embarrassment. Even today, the scars of the physical and mental torment remain deep, making him wish his father had just let him perish in that old shack. The phantom ache of his old arm injury, along with the memory of warm blood dripping down, still feels incredibly real. Suddenly, a glowing status window breaks his train of thought, announcing that he has successfully cleared the quest Savior of the Banquet and earned 30 skill points. With all the life and death drama going on, Raymond had totally forgotten about the quest rewards waiting for him. To make things even sweeter, he gains 4 whole levels and accumulates a grand total of 60 skill points. As a bonus, his reputation stats shoot up significantly, and he unlocks a special achievement for saving a high-profile figure. Our boy is absolutely thrilled, instantly deciding that all the stress and danger he faced was completely worth it. Prancing around in delight, he dismissively refers to the king as His Majesty instead of father, showing just how little he values their family connection. Raymond wears a satisfied, smug grin, thoroughly enjoying the fact that he literally snatched Princess Sophia from the clutches of the Grim Reaper. He makes up his mind to demand the grandest, most extravagant reward possible for pulling off this miracle. Shortly after, our rookie healer is called into the royal chambers, where he bows deeply and offers his formal greetings to the sovereign. The king gets straight to the point, inquiring if Raymond employed some unconventional school of healing. Taking his cue, Raymond puts on an act and reveals that he practiced medical science, an ancient, forgotten discipline he allegedly discovered in some ancient ruins. It was incredibly smart of him to prepare this perfect cover story beforehand, just in case some nosy high-ups started asking too many questions. Moreover, the land of Lepentina is littered with ancient historical sites, making it very common for adventurers to dig up lost, mysterious secrets. Since their ancient civilization possessed far more advanced technology than the present era, Raymond's fake explanation actually sounds incredibly convincing. Unearthing forgotten wisdom in a place like Lepentina makes complete sense, given its rich lore and the ancient ruins dotting the landscape. Accepting this explanation, the king acknowledges that this medical science has indeed saved his daughter's life, and declares that Raymond is highly deserving of a royal reward. Raymond's eyes turn into dollar signs as he practically drools, imagining a massive payout that could set him up for life. The king leans forward and asks him what his heart desires, promising a fortune so grand he'll never have to work another day in his life. Raymond stands frozen in deep thought, highly tempted to just blurt out a demand for raw cash. After all, he could easily secure enough wealth to live like royalty. However, he realizes there is something far more precious than gold, something that only the sovereign has the power to bestow. With a smooth, noble smile, he puts on his best selfless healer persona and declares that his only passion is the well-being of his patients. He proudly states that he has no use for gold or silver, leaving the surrounding nobles completely speechless. A murmur of admiration sweeps through the hall as people marvel at his incredible selflessness, shocked that anyone would decline such riches for the greater good. Even the head royal physician is stunned, unable to believe such noble words came from an illegitimate son. Of course, deep down, Raymond loves money more than anything, but he knows playing the saint right now will pay off even better. With every eye glued to him, he makes his actual request: the king's official endorsement, granting his medical practice royal approval so he can treat people without interference. A profound silence falls over the chamber, everyone deeply moved by the apparent purity of his intentions. The king interprets this dramatic plea as a sincere desire from the young man to have his new healing method formally validated by the crown. In reality, Dr. Ray is terrified that the Mainstream Healing Association will target him for practicing unlicensed, weird medicine. They could easily accuse him of performing dark magic and lobby the Tower of Healing to ban his practice permanently. To dodge that absolute disaster, getting the king's royal decree is the strongest shield he can possibly secure. Recognizing the practical value of this request, and grateful that this very method saved his daughter, the king formally decrees medical science as a legally recognized branch of medicine. Just like that, Raymond ticks off one major goal, though he isn't finished with his demands just yet. Turning back to the monarch with an innocent face, he humbly adds that there is just one tiny extra favor he requires. Once more, Raymond reiterates that he isn't asking for any material wealth or bags of coins. However, as a dedicated physician, he admits he wouldn't mind a little bit of official recognition and prestige. Taking a steady breath, he asks the king to grant him the prestigious Bringer Award instead. The Bringer Award is a legendary honor, bestowed by the crown only for acts of extraordinary heroism and historical significance. The nobles in the back begin whispering, pointing out that this award carries massive prestige but absolutely no monetary value. They are stunned that someone would choose empty honor over actual gold after pulling off such a monumental rescue. They certainly didn't expect such high-minded nobility from someone they dismissed as a bastard child. But one thing is undeniable: Raymond is truly a remarkable healer. Suddenly, his system notification flashes, showing that his speech has deeply moved the crowd, giving his reputation points a massive boost. Quietly, Raymond chuckles to himself, amused by how completely they've misread his motives. What these fools don't realize is that the Bringer Award qualifies him for an honorary knighthood, which serves as his crucial stepping stone into the noble class. He is absolutely desperate to secure this title, viewing it as the ultimate jackpot. When the king offers him one final chance to ask for more, Raymond acts humble, declaring that as a simple servant of medicine, it would be greedy to ask for anything else. This brilliant display of humility sends his reputation stats skyrocketing, leaving the king with no choice but to bestow the Bringer Award upon him. As the ceremony concludes, Raymond proudly walks out of the hall under the silent, watchful gaze of the king and the head physician. The royal healer finds himself reminiscing about the day he first laid eyes on a tiny, starving Raymond, who was on the absolute brink of death. Looking at him now, that frail, pathetic child had transformed into a confident man standing tall with undeniable purpose. Years ago, he had questioned the king's intentions when the ruler first scooped the dying boy into his embrace. The king had simply replied that he was taking him back to the palace to ensure he received care from the finest healers in the land. The physician had cautioned him that rumors would spread instantly, and everyone would label the boy as the king's illegitimate son. Raymond's mother had run away the moment she discovered his true identity, never once contacting the palace until her final breath. At the time, the healer argued that it was better to let the boy perish rather than bring shame upon the royal family and the king's reputation. Despite the warnings, the king remained resolute, bringing the young boy into the royal household regardless of the backlash. Yet, the king knew that the only way to shield his crown while keeping the child alive was to treat him with complete coldness and apathy. This strategy worked like a charm, diverting all the court's hostility away from the king and directly onto the defenseless Raymond instead. The physician quietly wished Raymond had just been the illegitimate child of some minor countryside lord to avoid all this political drama. Even so, Raymond internally offers his gratitude to the heavens for granting him the knowledge of medical science, giving him a real shot at changing his fate. He estimates that this path will easily yield results on par with a mid-tier healer, which is more than enough to live a comfortable life. For an outcast like him, even that modest outcome is a massive victory. The king remains tight-lipped, offering no thoughts on the matter. Meanwhile, Raymond heads back to the Bellin Clinic, where the staff welcomes him with open arms, completely shocked that he secured the legendary Bringer Award. The locals have even stopped calling him by his actual name, affectionately referring to him as Almond instead. A few of his former tormentors are visibly jealous and keep their distance, feeling awkward about how badly they used to treat him. Absolutely no one, especially not Lance, ever dreamed that Raymond would rise this high and achieve such immense success. These days, even Lance is extra careful around him, practically walking on eggshells. Raymond seizes the moment, smugly asking Lance if he still plans on blocking his certification exam. Lance visibly flinches at the confrontation, nervously stuttering out "sir" with absolute awkwardness. Of course, Dr. Ray has no intention of letting him off the hook so easily. He repeatedly prompts Lance to address him properly, enjoying every second of teasing his former bully. Losing his patience, Lance finally snaps and blurts out the name, his voice dripping with pure frustration. Raymond simply smirks, jokingly asking if that's the kind of attitude they teach in royal etiquette classes these days. Trembling with anxiety, Lance immediately bows his head and offers a formal apology. Raymond praises him for the newfound respect, playfully forcing Master Lance to bow deeply before him. Raymond feels absolutely invincible, believing the perfect opportunity has arrived to get revenge for years of mistreatment. However, he tempers his excitement, realizing that an honorary title holds no real political clout, and moving too fast could ruin everything. Instead of starting a fight, Raymond politely asks if he can take over the care of the current patient, secretly plotting to siphon off all their clients and build up his own reputation. While the staff expected Raymond to become an arrogant snob after his big win, he actually surprised everyone by being even more compassionate and dedicated. Watching from a distance, Hansen smiles warmly, genuinely proud of how much the young man has matured. Meanwhile, Raymond's XP continues to climb steadily as his warm patient care drives his reputation stats through the roof. He currently sits at level 15 as a novice resident, holding 25 out of the 50 XP required for his next milestone. Looking at his progress, he is thrilled to realize he only needs to hit level 40 to unlock his next class upgrade. Suddenly, the doors burst open as a wooden cart crashes in, carrying a critically injured patient with a deep stab wound in his stomach. An instant jolt of panic hits Raymond as he assesses the severity of the injury. He estimates that while a rank B healer could manage to patch this up, it would still be a highly tedious task. He expects Lance to step up and handle the grueling treatment, but instead, Raymond watches in disbelief as Lance barely glances at the dying man with total indifference. He acts completely unbothered, ignoring the fact that this is a critical, life-or-death situation. Clutching his bleeding stomach, the wounded man mutters under his breath, wondering who could have betrayed him. A few days prior, at Count August's estate, rumors had already spread about the Shadow Prince's dramatic stunt at the banquet that earned him the Bringer Award. The Count muses that while the kid clearly possesses unique talents, the royal title of prince is far too good for him. He then considers the ongoing succession crisis in the Kingdom of Houston, where the struggle for the throne is turning incredibly vicious. His attendant chimes in, asking if the August family is still backing the third prince in this conflict. The second prince is named Karen, while the third candidate is Remerton. Believing Karen is the most formidable contender, the Count decides to dispatch Clyon on a highly critical mission. He commands Clyon to deliver this vital intelligence directly to the third prince as quickly as possible. To evade the second prince's network of spies, Clyon is ordered to wear a clever disguise and make his way secretly to their designated meeting spot. Unfortunately, the second prince's assassin caught up with him, stabbing Clyon and leaving him for dead. Though he was bleeding out rapidly, Clyon somehow managed to slip away and escape. Fortunately, the Bellin Clinic was close by, and he hoped that Director Bucks, a legendary rank A healer, could save his life. Stumbling in from severe blood loss, Clyon crawled into the clinic, determined not to let his story end here. However, upon his arrival, Master Lance showed absolutely zero interest in offering aid. He rudely asked why a filthy beggar was allowed inside, declaring that they don't treat poor bums, especially for wounds that would require days of healing magic. Without missing a beat, Lance commanded his assistants to drag the dying man to the charity ward, where the penniless peasants are dumped. Clyon desperately tried to reveal his noble identity, but his failing lungs cut him off, leaving him choking on his own blood. Before Lance could spit out another nasty insult, Raymond suddenly intervened. He pointed out that the charity ward didn't have a single healer qualified to treat a fatal stab wound like this. Leaving him, there was basically signing his death warrant. With a wicked smirk, Lance turned to our celebrated master healer and mockingly suggested he take the case himself. Since Raymond is the legendary savior of Princess Sophia, surely a tiny stab wound would be child's play for him. The onlookers begin murmuring, gossiping about how the Shadow Prince has been hoarding all the patients lately, so he might as well take this one too. A few of them mockingly whisper that his hyped medical science probably only works on minor, easy-to-fix cases anyway. A wave of nervous tension washes over Raymond. He knows a severe abdominal trauma like this is way beyond the pay grade of a novice resident. He is simply not equipped to tackle a high-risk surgery yet. Seizing the opportunity to corner him, Lance sneers and challenges Raymond to prove his legendary compassion, either by treating the beggar himself or dragging him out of the clinic. Raymond instantly snaps back, questioning how Lance can call himself a master healer and feel no shame leaving a dying man behind. However, Lance refuses to back down even a little. He bluntly states that he has no intention of wasting his talents on a penniless beggar who can't afford his services. Hearing this makes Raymond's blood boil, sending the tension in the room through the roof. Honestly, if you look at Raymond's actual path, his main objective has always been straightforward. He simply wants to become the most renowned healer in the kingdom and enjoy a wealthy lifestyle. With such a money-focused dream, getting involved in a charity case like this seems like a highly impractical choice. The most logical thing for him to do is simply mind his own business. Yet, his deep-seated ethics kick in, refusing to let him abandon a dying person as a true medical practitioner. As a result, he steps forward and takes charge of the patient's treatment on his own. This sudden surge of bravery triggers his passive skill, Heart of Steel. Predictably, Lance scoffs and warns him that any mistake here will prove his rescue of the princess was nothing but a fluke. To make matters worse, Lance exaggerates that failure could lead to charges of dark magic and deceiving the royalty. With one final warning that this mistake could ruin his life, Lance walks away, leaving him to deal with Clyon. As Raymond processes the risk, Hansen approaches and offers to assist, noting that he shouldn't attempt this alone like before. Sensing his colleague's slight hesitation, Raymond firmly shakes his hand and expresses his gratitude for his ongoing support. Knowing Hansen has some experience now gives Raymond a massive wave of confidence, making the daunting task feel manageable. Wasting no time, he orders sterilized water, a surgical blade, and a heated needle, immediately prepping and disinfecting the site. Once they suit up with their surgical masks, Raymond realizes a blood transfusion is critical, but since they lack the tools, he decides to maintain stability using a saline drip instead. He triggers his surgeon's finesse skill, enhancing his focus and giving him incredibly steady hands for the procedure. He makes the first cut, feeling much more in control now that his stats have significantly improved since his previous operation. The moment blood begins to pool, Hansen recoils in shock, having never witnessed such heavy bleeding before. While Hansen anxiously questions if this level of bleeding is fatal, Raymond is busy searching for the damaged vessel beneath the heavy flow. The intensity of the situation overwhelms Hansen, and even Raymond feels the pressure as a slight tremor starts in his hands. Hansen's voice breaks the tension, snap-calling Raymond back to reality and helping him regain his concentration. Nodding in agreement, Raymond instructs him to clear away the excess blood with a sterilized cloth. With the field cleared, the exact source of the internal damage is finally revealed to him. The blade had torn through the mesentery, causing multiple ruptured vessels to bleed out simultaneously. Repairing a single vessel would be simple, but suturing this many damaged areas is highly impractical. The The ultimate solution is immediate cauterization, but he lacks a crucial piece of medical gear, a cautery pen. As he racks his brain searching for a workaround, a sudden spark of inspiration strikes him. He could use magic. He immediately spends 80 skill points to unlock aqua magic, even though it doesn't typically deal with heat. His idea is to use high water pressure and hot steam to seal the bleeding tissue. Even so, apprehension starts creeping back into his mind. The possibility of inflicting severe burns on the patient looms large. Or worse, what if his control slips and the magic spreads too wide? Though incredibly risky, he realizes he has no other viable options left. Right at that moment, a system prompt appears, informing him that his high intelligence stat will enhance his magical precision. Feeling reassured, he regains his composure, glad he invested in raising his stats earlier. He conjures a tiny flame, leaving Hansen completely stunned since he never knew Raymond possessed magical abilities. Using the localized heat, Raymond halts the bleeding and securely binds the main ruptured vessel. As Hansen assists with the surgical thread, Raymond carefully stitches the remaining wounds, smiling in relief as the bleeding stops. When questioned about his magical skills, Raymond casually claims it's just a hobby, fabricating a tale about a lost ruin that collapsed right after he found it. Hansen decides to leave it at that. He understands that people naturally prefer to keep their special advantages to themselves. Focusing back on the task, Raymond points out that they only need to patch up the supportive tissue to finish up. Had the blade penetrated slightly further, the damage would have been irreversible. Hansen, who initially wrote Raymond off as a failure, now holds him in high regard after his success with the princess and the bringer recognition. It proves that medicine can successfully treat injuries where traditional magic fails. Hansen begins to wonder about these unique surgical methods and whether he could ever master them himself. He quietly hopes Raymond might be open to mentoring him if he brings it up. Once Clyon is stable, Raymond receives a system alert granting extra experience points for saving someone far above his level. When Hansen confirms the completion, Raymond beams with joy, thanking his assistant for helping him secure another successful recovery. He frankly admits that the operation wouldn't have succeeded without Hansen's presence. Shortly after, Clyon regains consciousness and weakly inquires if he has ended up in the White Infirmary. With Hansen and Raymond attending him, Raymond clarifies that his critical state required immediate action, which is why they treated him right here. As Clyon remembers Lance trying to throw him out, Count August bursts into the room, desperately searching for his son. Hansen is left speechless upon realizing Clyon is the heir to one of the most powerful southern nobles. He reflects that Belland, despite its high costs, was indeed the safest place for him to be treated. Eager to compensate the savior, Count August asks if the master healer Lance or his associate was responsible. Hansen proudly steps forward to set the record straight, credit going entirely to Sir Raymond. Clyon connects the dots, recognizing his savior as the same famed doctor who rescued royalty. Hansen chimes in, explaining that while Lance refused to help, Raymond took on all the risk to perform the surgery. This revelation infuriates Count August, who immediately demands answers regarding how his son was treated. Hansen clarifies that Clyon's shabby appearance made him look like a commoner, fuel to the fire for the noble's anger. Meanwhile, Lance's subordinates finally arrive with the update, completely unaware that the situation has resolved. Lance is shocked to learn a prominent noble is at the clinic, quickly rushing to greet him to present himself as the head physician. He remains thoroughly confused as to why such a high-status individual would visit a place that rarely caters to nobility. Upon entering, Lance begins offering a grand, sycophantic greeting to curry favor with the Count. However, the Count cuts him off with a chilling gaze, demanding to know if he was the coward who abandoned his son. Lance stutters in panic, claiming there must be some mistake and that he would never neglect someone of royal lineage. But the furious glares from both August and Clyon make it clear they aren't buying his excuses. Feeling the cold dread settle in, Lance suddenly puts the pieces together. The destitute beggar he ordered to be thrown out was none other than the Count's own heir. Desperately backtracking, he lies that he purposely assigned his top assistant, Raymond, to ensure the patient received excellent care. Nobody in the room is fooled by his obvious, desperate attempt to save face. Clyon cuts him off, stating he remembers every single word Lance spoke during his rejection. He quotes Lance directly about refusing beggars and recalls how the healer mocked him for even daring to step inside. Hearing how his son was both neglected and insulted causes August's rage to boil over, especially with Lance bold enough to lie to his face. Cornered, Lance drops to his knees, pleading for mercy and claiming it was a genuine error due to the disguise. August rejects the excuse, absolutely disgusted by the implication. He demands to know if Lance believes it is acceptable to let commoners die simply because they lack status. He finds it repulsive that someone so indifferent to human life could hold the title of Master Healer. Without a moment's delay, the Count demands an immediate arrest warrant for the disgraced healer, facing severe charges for insulting a noble of the realm. As Lance continues to beg, August coldly asks if he ever extended that same compassion to the destitute. He vows that Lance's medical career is finished, banning him from practicing across the entire empire. As guards drag him away, screaming, Raymond and Hansen watch silently, agreeing that justice was served. Turning around, Count August offers a respectful bow to Raymond, catching the young doctor completely by surprise. Though Raymond insists he was merely performing his basic duties, August remains adamant that he owes him an immeasurable debt for preserving his legacy. Sensing a massive payout, Raymond's mind briefly drifts into a fantasy of being showered in gold coins. But August recalls Raymond's noble speech from the royal banquet, assuming a man of such high virtue cares nothing for worldly riches. While the Count struggles to find a fitting reward, Raymond is internally screaming, wishing he could just ask for cold, hard cash. The Count officially declares Raymond a trusted ally of his house, explaining that while accolades lack political sway, his family's influence will protect him. The strategic value of this offer quickly dawns on Raymond. Having a major noble family as his shield means no one can easily push him around anymore. Accepting the honor, Raymond still politely requests payment for his services, citing clinic regulations. He presents the invoice, absolutely certain that a noble of this stature will clear the debt immediately. An awkward silence falls over both the Count and his son. Clyan eventually speaks up, wondering why Raymond risked so much, given that his death would have fueled the second prince's political plot. Such a tragedy would have plunged the third prince and House August into crisis, making any medical bill look like pocket change. He warns Raymond that the impending struggle for the crown will only become more ruthless, and questions whether Raymond is ready to survive the political crossfire. Even though Raymond's lineage prevents him from claiming the throne directly, August knows his rising fame is impossible to ignore. He compares Raymond to a sharp blade that cannot be hidden, warning that his extraordinary skills will inevitably draw the wrath of the royal brothers. His rise will naturally invite jealousy, bringing a host of rivals eager to ruin him. He has become far too prominent to be swept aside quietly. Wishing only for Raymond to flourish in his medical endeavors, August hopes his family's status can act as a protective shield for the time being. Meanwhile, news travels to the second prince, Chiron, informing him that Raymond managed to save Clyon's life. The failed assassin desperately begs for mercy, defending that Clyon shouldn't have survived since Belen normally turns away commoners. They couldn't possibly have anticipated his recovery, particularly since Raymond's medical expertise was completely unknown. The prince is incredulous that despite all his precautions, Raymond somehow managed to disrupt his operations yet again. Recognizing the threat, he commands his subordinates to place Raymond under constant surveillance. It seems their underestimated half-brother has picked up some surprisingly effective skills. Meanwhile, our young doctor is on cloud 9, celebrating the arrival of the healer licensing exam after 5 long years of grueling apprenticeship. Word quickly spreads that Lance was banished from the clinic entirely due to Raymond's actions. Even after curing both royalty and high nobility, skeptics continue to dismiss his achievements as mere coincidence. However, a certain blonde classmate finds the concept of repeated luck highly implausible. He begins to suspect that this non-magical medical science might actually possess legitimate, formidable power. His peers glare at him, scoffing at medicine as nothing more than a crude and primitive practice. Though he argues the king officially endorsed it, they counter that the monarch was simply acting out of bias for his own family. Excitedly anticipating Raymond's upcoming test, they believe his performance will expose him as a fraud. As the crowd begins placing bets, Hansen silently observes the chaotic scene unfolding. Taking his seat, Raymond is filled with nervous excitement that his 5-year wait is finally over. The moment of truth, his official licensing test. The other test takers quickly notice the F-rank genius, secretly hoping he fails spectacularly to embarrass the royal court. Hearing the whispers around him, Raymond feels a familiar dread return, fearing the consequences of a failure. Failing means he would lose his only shot and be dismissed as a useless failure once more. Noticing his anxiety, Hansen tries to distract him by asking about his future plans once he qualifies. Surely, after half a decade of training, he has a grand dream he wants to fulfill. Raymond's mind immediately wanders to visions of gourmet steaks and luxurious feasts, causing him to practically salivate. However, he knows that isn't the inspiring answer Hansen is hoping for. Reflecting on his past struggles, he recalls that his fundamental desire has always been to treat those in pain. With genuine sincerity, he tells Hansen he plans to dedicate his life to healing people. Deep down, he truly enjoys the fulfillment of seeing his patients recover. He simply wants to experience that sense of accomplishment as often as possible. These selfless thoughts trigger his heart of steel passive, washing away his anxiety and giving him a deeper understanding of his ability. Simply aligning his mindset with his healer duties is enough to activate it at will. As Hansen silently cheers him on, the blonde youth notes Raymond's calm, confident demeanor from across the room. Soon, Raymond is summoned by the testing board, who look down on his official F-rank status. When asked to demonstrate his healing magic, Raymond showcases his skills, though the response is utterly underwhelming. The panel bursts into laughter, mocking his weak magic as completely useless for medical purposes. An examiner bluntly questions why he even bothered showing up given his lack of talent. Raymond begins to explain, but is rudely interrupted and told to stop wasting their valuable time. Fortunately, Raymond had anticipated this exact reaction. He activates his newly purchased eloquence skill from the system shop, instantly boosting his charisma and speech. With newfound confidence, Raymond's voice rings out, boldly asking if the organization intends to openly defy the king's direct decree. He acknowledges his lack of standard magic, but highlights that his medical practice is fully authorized by King Odin. The crown has officially recognized his surgical practices as a valid medical path. The panel shifts uncomfortably when he asks if this local branch plans to disregard royal law. The red-haired proctor is taken aback by Raymond's logic, realizing that the tower's status relies entirely on imperial law. By rejecting a method the king approved, they would essentially be declaring treason against the throne. Raymond drives the argument home. If this chapter truly respects their sovereign, they have no choice but to comply. Reluctant to cross the crown, a senior judge concedes, granting Raymond a real patient to test his medical sciences. His excitement is short-lived, however, dissolving the moment he lays eyes on his designated patient. It turns out the red-haired examiner had intentionally selected this near-impossible case specifically for him. An elder proctor notes that even Trass, a highly skilled B-rank healer, had previously failed to cure this person. Though some feel the difficulty is unfair, the red-haired examiner counters that a genius of medical science should easily handle it. This guy literally used electric shocks on a princess just to keep her alive, and he's the same dude who once sliced a patient open only to stitch him right back up. The real concern at this point is whether they'll actually let someone they consider a total savage practice medicine. It looks like that red-haired guy is already cooking up a plan to make sure Raymond completely bombs his exam. Another examiner is getting nervous, thinking Count August is going to be absolutely furious if he finds out about this plot. However, the redhead dismisses it easily, claiming the test is entirely under his control and Count August doesn't have any authority over the Tower of Healing. He honestly can't stand the thought of an illegitimate child having the audacity to even sign up for the test. To make matters worse, his cousin, who happens to be the mother of the fourth prince, also wants to make sure this kid fails. Seeing this, one of the other judges immediately puts two and two together and realizes Count Linson has already made up his mind to sabotage Raymond. Once the assignments are handed out, Raymond gets his patient, and honestly, it's like winning the lottery because the guy is just suffering from bed sores. Linson is completely baffled by Raymond's relaxed and cheerful attitude, especially since even a decent grade B healer struggled to treat these painful ulcers. Raymond offers a respectful thank you to the judges and wastes no time getting straight to his task. Linson begins to think Raymond has either lost his mind under the pressure or is just too clueless to see the trap ahead. A bit later, Raymond sits down with the patient's son, explaining that a proper checkup is necessary before he can predict how recovery will go. The moment he steps into the room, a sharp, bitter odor hits Raymond right in the face. Although the son quickly says sorry for the awful smell, Raymond reassures him, joking that he wasn't expecting a room full of flowers anyway. When Raymond notices right away that the father is suffering, the son is shocked because previous healers wouldn't even look at his dad out of pure disgust. Raymond then gathers the patient's medical background, confirming that the old man has been stuck in bed for a very long time. Upon inspecting the wounds, he notices they look pretty nasty, but thankfully, they haven't exposed any bone yet, making the treatment fairly straightforward. When the son asks for details, our future legendary healer explains that they just need to clear away the dead, decaying flesh so fresh skin can take its place. The son points out that earlier healers tried doing the exact same thing, but the painful sores just kept returning. This piece of information surprises Raymond, helping him pinpoint what the actual underlying problem is. These types of sores develop when a bedridden person is left in the same position for too long without any rotation or care. Still, Raymond suspects there might be a different culprit at play, but he goes ahead with carefully cutting away the infected tissue anyway. He informs the worried son that this process requires a minor surgical procedure and asks him to place his trust in his skills. Once Ray suits up, he notices his attunement stat has climbed to 18, which is incredibly impressive for a rookie resident. At this level, slicing away the decaying flesh is going to be absolute child's play for him. He smoothly excises the dead tissue and drains the fluid, while the terrified son watches from behind, sweating as Raymond cuts away at his dad with total casualness. To wrap things up, Raymond cleanses the area using special herbs known for their powerful natural antibiotic properties. When the son asks how it went, Raymond explains that the initial phase is done, but he is going to need some assistance for the next step. The father's lying position needs to be systematically adjusted throughout the day by turning him over. Seeing the son's confused expression, Raymond explains in simpler terms that constantly shifting positions is the key to preventing pressure sores. Additionally, he mentions that the infection requires close monitoring, so he plans to stay by the patient's side until things stabilize. After sticking to this strict routine for a while, Raymond finally announces that the elderly man is fully out of danger and won't be dealing with recurring sores anymore. At that moment, both father and son express their deep, heartfelt gratitude to Raymond, especially knowing that even a high-ranking B-grade healer had completely failed to help them. It turns out they lacked the money to hire an expensive healer, making Raymond's compassionate treatment mean the world to them. Raymond finishes up his work by reminding them one last time to keep shifting the patient's position so the sores never return. News of this successful treatment quickly gets back to Count Linson, who is left utterly speechless. The geeky examiner points out that he personally witnessed the recovery, and the growth of healthy new skin is undeniable. With such results, they no longer have any legitimate reason to fail Raymond in his exam. Linson begins to panic, wondering how on earth he's going to explain this failure to the fourth prince. To make matters worse, there is no logical way to grade an F-rank apprentice who successfully cured an illness that typically requires a B-rank specialist. When the nerdy evaluator proposes awarding Raymond a B+ or even an A grade, Linson instantly rejects the idea. He is absolutely determined to prevent Raymond from getting a high rank. Count Linson is completely losing his cool because all his carefully laid schemes have just evaporated. He argues that even if Raymond's strange, ancient method cured a tough case, his baseline rank remains at a measly F. No matter how much bonus credit they factor in, giving him anything above a grade D is totally out of the question. Still, the other judges feel it's extremely unfair to slap him with a D grade when he successfully managed a B+ level illness. Although Count August will certainly be displeased, Linson points out that August has zero authority over the internal business of the tower. At that point, the geeky examiner notes that both the king and princess might intervene if they discover the boy who cured an A-rank royal illness was given a mere D grade. Linson squeezes his fists tight, caught in a stressful dilemma over how to keep the fourth prince's mother happy without making an enemy of the king. He decides to send a formal request to the head tower in the capital to get their take on the situation. For context, the United Empire of the Cross consists of 10 kingdoms, with the emperor ruling from the capital, which serves as the ultimate authority for healers. When it comes down to it, even the King of Houston is powerless to override a ruling handed down by the head tower. With everyone on board, they dispatch their official inquiry to the main headquarters. It doesn't take long for the head tower's reply to arrive, and Linson eagerly tears the envelope open. A single glance at the contents is all it takes to leave Linson completely wide-eyed with disbelief. Surprisingly, the main headquarters has assigned Raymond a grade U. This marks the very first time this mysterious and unprecedented rank has ever been handed out. They figure the U stands for undetermined, since even the ultimate experts at headquarters struggled to reach a consensus on Raymond's unique case. At least Linson can rest easy, knowing neither the king nor the fourth prince's mother can complain about a decision from the head tower itself. Even though Raymond gets his official license, his unconventional medical science still won't be validated as a legitimate medical treatment. Consequently, the whole situation wraps up perfectly in Linson's favor. And just like that, the world's inaugural grade U rank was established, with Raymond as its sole pioneer. Even so, his fellow apprentices kept bullying and teasing him over this bizarre rank, claiming he only got results through some sort of black magic. In their eyes, such a weird rating was fitting for an outcast like him, and the letter U became tied to his identity from that moment forward. However, as years went by, the perception of grade U shifted completely, with people viewing it as untouchable or ultimate. It came to represent something way beyond triple S rank, eclipsing even the legendary grade X, making grade U the absolute pinnacle of ranking systems. While that legendary future is still a long way off, back in the present, Raymond is shedding tears of absolute happiness for officially becoming a licensed healer. He is thrilled to say goodbye to his days as a low-level apprentice eating cheap vegetable broth and hard bread, because now he can finally afford to eat steak. Grinning like a madman, he strikes a match and announces he's leaving the miserable Belland infirmary behind, even joking about setting the whole dump on fire. Right as he is preparing to make his exit, Hansen suddenly walks up and catches him in the act. Startled half to death, Raymond quickly tries to play it cool, stammering that he was just trying to warm up the place since it felt chilly. Hansen just stares at him and dryly points out that they are in the middle of summer. Moving on, Hansen shares the news that he managed to secure a grade C certification. Hearing this, Raymond asks him what he intends to do now that he's officially qualified. Hansen sheepishly admits he isn't completely certain yet, though he did get an offer from the Maple Infirmary. Raymond is genuinely excited for him, since Maple is one of the top 3 major clinics in the capital, pretty much controlling healthcare for the general public there. Raymond gives him a warm congratulations, but Hansen quickly turns the question back on him to ask what his next move is. Sidestepping the question, Raymond suggests they celebrate instead and offers to buy him a nice dinner. Hansen is skeptical, wondering how a broke apprentice like Raymond could possibly afford a treat. Raymond sheepishly confesses that he actually took out a loan from Healer Lending right after passing his exam. Horrified by this, Hansen demands to know what kind of madness drove Raymond to do something so risky. With a cheeky grin, Raymond replies that he has his own strategy, but right now, getting food in their bellies is the top priority. A bit later, the 2 freshly minted healers start drinking and spend the rest of the night getting absolutely wasted. Noticing Raymond is in an incredibly good mood, Hansen decides this is the ideal opportunity to bring up a question that's been bugging him. Stealing his courage, he asks directly where Raymond managed to find the ancient medical science artifact, even if it's just a damaged fragment. Hansen explains he only wants to take a look to study it, and promises he won't tell a single soul. However, a very drunk Raymond immediately ruins the mystery by blabbing that there actually is no relic at all. He claims he literally just woke up with all this medical knowledge in his head one afternoon while sweeping. Hansen is annoyed by this ridiculous explanation, feeling like Raymond is just messing with him. He doesn't believe a single word of that story. Even so, Hansen sighs and says he understands. Given how tough things have been for Raymond, maybe he's just keeping his secrets close to his chest. Even with that in mind, he admits he had hoped Raymond trusted him enough to tell him the truth. Although Raymond tries to convince him, he's telling the absolute truth. A visibly upset Hansen simply walks away without saying anything else. A few days later, while working at the Maple Clinic, Hansen hears that the prestigious Lore Infirmary made an offer to Raymond. It's one of the most elite clinics in the city, second only to the Helian Infirmary, which caters strictly to royalty and high nobility. He realizes with a sigh that the Shadow Prince is already leaving him in the dust. But then he catches some colleagues whispering that Raymond actually turned down the prestigious offer. This piece of news leaves Hansen absolutely shocked. Furious and confused, Hansen bursts straight into Raymond's room, wakes him up by shaking him, and demands to know why on earth he rejected Lore's proposal. He tries to talk sense into him, emphasizing that Lore is infinitely superior to Maple Infirmary in every possible metric. But Raymond, rubbing his sleepy eyes, simply reveals his true motive. He intends to establish his very own medical clinic. Raymond points out that this was the exact reason why he took out that loan earlier. Hansen gets even angrier, asking how a complete beginner expects to manage such a massive undertaking. He is incredibly frustrated, feeling like Raymond is treating a serious business venture like a game. He speaks plainly without sugarcoating anything. Raymond needs to gain some actual clinic experience before diving into the deep end. But Raymond remains stubborn, insisting that opening his own clinic has been his goal since day one of his healing path. He admits he's still a rookie who needs to practice to get stronger, but that is precisely his reasoning. He avoided the big-name Lore Clinic because he didn't want to spend his days just spectating senior healers instead of treating patients himself. And since the official tower laughs at his medical science, he is highly motivated to create a space of his own to prove them wrong. He wants to demonstrate that his medical knowledge is a perfectly valid and independent form of healing. Hansen, still desperately trying to be reasonable, points out that the entire city is dominated by major clinics, leaving him nowhere to set up shop. At that exact moment, Raymond points right at a specific map location, revealing a rundown slum district he has chosen. Hansen immediately objects, saying he'll never make a single penny in such an impoverished neighborhood. But Raymond is completely unbothered by that, because getting rich isn't his main goal right now. He simply wants a constant flow of sick people to treat so he can level up his skills and eventually become the ultimate healer. Although Hansen is taken aback by this crazy dream, he slowly begins to understand his friend's perspective. Meanwhile, Prince Remerton receives word that Raymond rejected the offer from Lore and is opening his own private clinic instead. He was completely certain that Raymond would jump at the opportunity, so the refusal takes him by surprise. As it happens, Remerton himself had secretly set up that job offer behind the scenes. He wanted to reward the Shadow Prince for rescuing Count August's son. Remerton had even met with Count August, commending Raymond for safeguarding their vital information. His ultimate goal was to let Raymond develop his skills at Lore, then recruit him as a powerful ally for his own faction. If only the idiot hadn't gone and ruined everything by saying no. When his subordinate asks if he truly trusts this weird medical science, Remerton responds that he doesn't care about the methods. As long as it keeps people breathing, the details don't matter to him. Since Raymond foolishly tossed aside such a massive opportunity, Remerton accepts that their paths will likely never cross again. He still considers Raymond's choices to be incredibly foolish. Soon after, he receives news that Raymond is establishing his clinic in the infamous Vey Quarter. Remerton is utterly dumbfounded. That crazy guy actually chose a dangerous, poverty-stricken slum on the northwestern edge of the city. It's a trashy district that no respectable aristocrat would ever step foot in. 100 years back, Houston suffered a major defeat against the Droughton Kingdom, losing a massive portion of their southern territory. The displaced refugees were shoved to the far outskirts of the capital city, which eventually grew into the massive slums of Vey. Since the nation was devastated by the war, they had no resources left to offer any real aid to those struggling refugees. A century later, the Vey Quarter is basically a giant headache that the entire Kingdom of Houston simply chooses to ignore. Despite this, the King of Houston once promised that anyone who could resolve the chaos in Vey would receive whatever reward they desired. Yet, despite trying their best, all three royal princes, Chiron, Remerton, and Settle, alongside the fourth prince, completely failed to bring order to the slums. Eventually, Remerton decided that the district was a lost cause and beyond saving. He believed the only real solution was to level the entire place to the ground. Even though the rest of the court ignored the slums, their father, the king, remained deeply concerned, viewing them as true citizens of Houston. Now, with everyone else having given up, Remerton watches as the Shadow Prince steps up to try his hand. Over at Belland Infirmary, The other healers are mocking Raymond's decision to move to such a trashy area. They sneeringly claim that a low-born guy like him belongs in a garbage dump anyway. When departure day arrives, some of his old patients try to convince Raymond not to venture into such a dangerous slum. However, their warnings do absolutely nothing to change Raymond's mind. He confidently promises them he'll build a highly successful clinic so they can all come visit him there soon. Suddenly, Hansen interrupts him, mentioning that a mysterious letter has arrived addressed to him. After saying his final goodbyes, Dr. Raymond invites Hansen to accompany him on his journey. As it turns out, the letter is from Princess Sophia, who is pleading with him to stay away from Vey, warning him that he'll only find misery there. Without a moment's hesitation, Raymond crumples the princess's warning into a ball and tosses it aside, while Hansen tries to warn him about the real dangers. He reminds Raymond that the slums are incredibly dangerous and not a place a rookie should wander into unprepared. Raymond quickly shuts down his concerns by revealing that he actually grew up in those exact slums. Hansen is left speechless as he suddenly remembers Raymond's impoverished background before he was brought to the palace. Raymond quietly shares that his own mother passed away in those slums before his life changed. Still, Raymond notes that the residents there are just regular human beings trying to get by. And truth be told, he prefers the vibe of the slums over the stuffy palace or the toxic Belland clinic. He confesses that it has been his lifelong dream to build a clinic and treat the people in that specific neighborhood. He reassures Hansen that there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Instantly, Hansen declares he is coming along, shocking Raymond since Hansen already has a great position lined up at Maple. Venting his annoyance, Hansen reveals that the administrators at Maple are even more money-hungry than the ones at Belland. A bit sheepishly, Raymond admits that while he loves money too, his absolute main focus is gaining clinical experience. Hansen sees right through him and knows his real character. He knows Raymond genuinely cares about saving people, and that's the real reason he wants to partner up with him. Mentally, Raymond jokingly compares himself to a greedy little puppy chasing after both cash and skill points. But then, Hansen reveals his true underlying motive. He wants a front row seat to study this mysterious medical science up close. This makes Raymond incredibly anxious, wondering how a rookie like himself is supposed to mentor someone else. As Hansen begins to worry that Raymond is rejecting him, a glowing system prompt suddenly appears, displaying Hansen's request and unlocking the Faust Disciple mode, asking Raymond for his confirmation. This apprentice feature is completely foreign to Raymond, and he has zero clue what it actually does at first glance. However, he soon discovers it's a brand new system mechanism that allows him to farm skill points through teaching. Every time Hansen sharpens his medical skills, Raymond is the one who reaps the rewards. Whenever his new student successfully treats someone, a chunk of those experience points goes straight to Raymond. This absolutely shocks him, making him feel as if he's hit a massive jackpot. Considering he needs a hefty 200 experience points to level up past level 20, this passive bonus is an absolute lifesaver. However, the system still imposes a few limitations when it comes to mentoring his student. On the other side, Hansen is incredibly nervous, silently begging the Shadow Prince to accept his request. Eventually, Raymond gives his approval, putting forward a condition that Hansen must put in double the effort. Filled with gratitude, Hansen instantly bows to his new mentor, which triggers a notification confirming Raymond has gained his very first disciple. This milestone rewards him with 5 skill points and a D-rank ability called Slapdash Schooling, which is on par with a basic residence level. Raymond senses that this path won't be easy, but he understands that true mastery takes time. As Hansen keeps leveling up, Raymond is confident he'll hit his personal targets in record time. Just like that, the foundation was laid for a medical institution destined for greatness, starting with its single pupil. Before they make their way to the Vey Quarter, Hansen arrives dressed as if he's ready for a full-scale battle. Raymond playfully comments that they are just starting a clinic, not heading to a battlefield, but Hansen quickly corrects him, highlighting how incredibly unsafe their destination is. Staring intensely at the young doctor, Hansen suspects that even Raymond is wearing protective chainmail beneath his robes. After a brief pause, Raymond confesses, explaining that safeguarding his physical health is his top priority, and extra caution never hurts. Hansen wonders aloud if the doctor isn't feeling at least a bit anxious about what lies ahead. In truth, Raymond is trembling inside as they approach, but he manages to maintain an exterior of absolute calm to reassure Hansen. Hansen then offers him a heavy wooden club, advising him to keep that precious temple of a body safe. The moment Raymond holds the weapon, a prompt for self-defense skill acquisition pops up, though his current attributes are still too weak to unlock any techniques. It turns out the system was tailored specifically to keep medical practitioners safe while operating in hostile territories. Stunned by his incredible fortune in both magic and combat, Raymond briefly imagines himself becoming some sort of legendary spellcasting warrior. Seeing Raymond staring blankly into space, Hansen snaps him out of his daydream. Shaking off the distraction, Raymond regains his composure, feeling highly motivated to step into the slum district with newfound determination. Despite their brave faces, a lingering anxiety hangs heavily over both of them. Crossing the threshold into the slums, they repeatedly reassure themselves that things will turn out all right. Raymond is absolutely terrified inside, but he does his absolute best to put on a brave front. He glances nervously at the sketchy figures, watching them from the dark alleys, their expressions dripping with hostility. Attempting to ease the tension, Raymond jokes that these are simply the familiar faces he used to survive alongside in his earlier days. The hostile stares from the locals only amplify their dread, sending a cold shiver down their backs. Raymond advises that they make a beeline for the clinic instead of lingering in these unsettling streets. Upon reaching their destination, they are shocked to discover the place is entirely deserted, with absolutely no patients in sight. Raymond shrugs it off, noting that a slow start is normal on opening day, but as the hours tick away, the silence remains unbroken. The quiet pattern repeats itself the following day, and the day after that as well. This lack of activity quickly turns tedious, leaving Raymond feeling rather discouraged. Hansen offers some comfort, suggesting that the local residents of Vey simply aren't aware of their medical services yet. Raymond exclaims in frustration, arguing that's highly unlikely given the massive, prominent medicine symbol he personally painted on the entrance. Besides, he is well aware that rumors and updates spread like wildfire in areas like these slums. In the middle of his complaint, a sudden rock crashes through their clinic window, showering them with broken glass. This sudden act of violence leaves both of them completely startled. Hansen rushes out to investigate and urgently calls for Raymond to join him. He points to a hostile warning scrawled on the clinic wall, telling them that this is no place for children and warning them to leave immediately or face death. Fearing for their safety, Hansen insists that they pack up and abandon the clinic right away. Acknowledging the clear danger, Raymond admits that lingering there would put them in extreme jeopardy. Even so, the crushing weight of his financial liabilities prevents him from simply walking away. He struggles to maintain an outward calm while battling a storm of anxiety within himself. He is fully aware that backing out now would render all his previous efforts completely pointless. Worse yet, he has poured his entire savings into purchasing and upgrading this facility, and a failure here means complete financial ruin. Even if he attempted to resell the property, recouping his investment would be nearly impossible. To make matters worse, there is still a mountain of interest accumulating on his debt. The sheer reality of his financial predicament is enough to make him shudder with dread. Knowing how ruthless the moneylenders in the Healing Guild can be, Raymond realizes he is backed into a dangerous corner. He must turn this clinic into a success and clear his dues or face catastrophic consequences. At that critical moment, a fresh quest appears, tasking him with winning over the hearts of the slum dwellers, who have suffered years of abandonment and abuse from the kingdom. The objective requires a true community healer, someone capable of earning the locals' trust and building genuine connections rather than just offering medical treatments. Completing this challenging mission promises an incredible bounty of 30 skill points. Even with debts mounting and threats closing in, this unexpected opportunity could be his ultimate salvation. One thing is absolutely certain: failing is not an option under these hazardous circumstances. Choosing to stand his ground, Raymond still gives Hansen the freedom to walk away if he fears the danger. Hansen looks at Raymond with profound admiration, deeply moved by the young doctor's apparent compassion for the underprivileged. In reality, Raymond is single-mindedly focused on clearing his massive financial burden. Inspired by this seemingly selfless stance, Hansen declares he will remain, feeling it would be cowardly to abandon his mentor. Though Raymond knows his student has totally misread the situation, he keeps quiet and shifts his focus toward handling their immediate crisis. And at that very moment, a clever plan strikes Raymond. Arriving at the crowded slum plaza, Hansen begins to tremble with anxiety, prompting Raymond to soothe him by pointing out the protective chainmail hidden under his robes. For Raymond, a bustling crowd is far better than a desolate, quiet alleyway. Stepping up, the rookie doctor initiates contact, attempting to engage a couple of bystanders in conversation. He identifies himself as Raymond and friendly inquires about how they have been faring. The locals are stunned to realize that the kid who left for the royal court years ago is standing right before them. Eager to establish a connection, Raymond decides to stir up some old childhood memories. With dramatic warmth, he expresses his joy at returning to Vey, calling it a long overdue homecoming. He brings up a painful memory of being thoroughly thrashed by Mr. Bob and Mr. Toms as a child, hoping this shared history will soften their attitude. However, their icy, unimpressed expressions send a wave of dread through Raymond, making him doubt his approach. The men react harshly, demanding to know why a newly minted noble with a prestigious title has bothered to return to their slums. They bluntly warn him that their community is not a playground for rich aristocrats looking for amusement. It hurts to realize that the locals no longer consider him one of them, viewing him instead as just another privileged outsider. To be fair, he can understand why they feel that way. After all, a decade and a half has passed since he last walked these streets. Since sweet memories aren't working, Raymond decides he must address their resentment directly. At that moment, his heart of steel trait activates, fueled by his sincere desire to help the people of Vey. He counters their bitter assumptions, firmly declaring that he doesn't view their home as some trivial novelty. Wasting no words, he gets straight to the point. He is there solely to heal those who are suffering. Suddenly, A system notification unlocks his eloquence skill, amplifying the passion and sincerity behind his words. His newfound eloquence and heart of steel blend seamlessly to make his speech incredibly persuasive. Raymond firmly points out that despite being royalty with the entire kingdom open to him, he made a conscious choice to return to this specific spot. He senses a change in the atmosphere as whispers begin to spread among the crowd, wondering about his true motives. His strategy is working exactly as intended. He shares his heartfelt belief that sickness strikes the impoverished just as harshly, yet they are always left without proper care. He then shares a personal tragedy, revealing that his own mother passed away in these very slums because medical help was denied to her. Hearing this tragic revelation strikes a deep chord with Hansen, moving him immensely. His voice resonates across the plaza as Raymond passionately declares his sole purpose is to provide medical aid to the community. He asserts that poverty and low social standing should never bar anyone from receiving treatment, which is precisely why he established his clinic here. Even though he knows skeptics will doubt his words, Raymond extends an invitation to heal those residing in the notorious Kristen Street. Hansen panics at the mention of that location, while the crowd whispers in disbelief that a doctor would willingly visit a zone they all shun. As it happens, Christian Street is the most dangerous neighborhood in Vey, widely referred to as the entertainment district. It serves as a home for individuals labeled as cursed, and average citizens stay far away from it. Raymond confidently declares that he intends to cure and liberate every single one of those affected by this so-called divine punishment. While walking over, a worried Hansen questions whether this mysterious curse might actually be a highly contagious illness. If it is, both of their lives are in serious danger. He argues that those outcasts live in isolation for a reason, likely to prevent spreading whatever they have. Undeterred, Raymond calmly advises his assistant that he can simply wait outside if he feels too anxious. Embarrassed by his own fear, Hansen quickly decides to tag along anyway. He adds that his passion for medical science drives him to stay close and learn as much as possible. Raymond feels a bit awkward being addressed so formally, but before they can debate it, they step inside and face an unexpected sight. They immediately run into a woman whose pale, exhausted appearance makes her look like a restless spirit. When Raymond announces his intention to cure them, she bursts out laughing, deeply amused by the offer. Showing him her skin, which is covered in angry red lesions, she mockingly challenges him to rid her of this divine curse. While Hansen panics about contagion, Raymond steps closer to inspect the marks, catching the woman completely off guard. After all, ordinary people would never dare to approach them so closely. After analyzing the rash and minor ulcerations, Raymond quickly realizes that this is no curse, but a straightforward skin condition. He politely requests permission to check other affected individuals and examine their symptoms more thoroughly. The ladies agree to let him examine them, though they dryly caution him not to hold them responsible if he catches the curse. He gently reassures them that the ailment isn't transmitted through casual physical contact, so there is nothing to fear. He goes on to explain the medical reality, assuring them that their condition is entirely natural and highly curable. As they whisper among themselves, Raymond calmly diagnoses the illness as syphilis. Addressing their questions about a cure, the doctor details how the marks will fade as the infection enters a dormant phase. While early detection allowed some to recover privately, those in advanced stages of the disease were cruelly ostracized as divinely punished. Hansen enthusiastically notes down every bit of this rare medical information as if he's uncovered a gold mine. Raymond recalls that the fundamental treatment protocol remains consistent for all variations of the disease. Immediately, he requests some moldy, stale bread, intending to manufacture a specialized medicine. Though completely baffled by his master's request, Hansen simply smiles and eagerly assists him. What he calls a magic pellet is none other than penicillin, the revolutionary antibiotic that transformed medicine. Usually, Lepentina's special herbs would suffice for treating syphilis without resorting to complex brewing. The catch is that those specific rare herbs are far beyond his budget, which is incredibly frustrating. Raymond laments his current lack of funds, promising himself that massive wealth will soon be within his reach. Since stale bread costs next to nothing compared to rare herbs, he chooses to harvest penicillin directly from the mold. Shortly after, Raymond successfully formulates the penicillin extract and tests it against the bacteria harvested from the patient's skin. Watching the solution obliterate the microbes, he secures Lepentina's first true antibiotic batch, earning the legendary title of creator of penicillin. This monumental feat grants him 100 skill points and 2 level ups. Additionally, he unlocks the alchemy skill, though his raw extraction capabilities are still in their infancy. With basic alchemy active, a wave of pharmaceutical insights fills his mind, teaching him how to isolate active compounds from plants efficiently. This knowledge allows him to optimize his resources, significantly slashing his production costs. It's a perfect setup. Cost-efficient medicine production and the promise of endless wealth on the horizon. Moving on to the actual treatment, he instructs the ladies from the entertainment district to apply the newly made salve thoroughly. The long process completely exhausts the duo, leaving them longing for a much-needed break. A few days later, the women are astounded to find their skin completely clear and healthy once again. Convinced that the divine curse has finally been broken, they shower the young doctor with endless gratitude. Feeling deeply indebted, they worry about how to compensate him for such costly medical treatment. Knowing their impoverished circumstances in the slums, Raymond realizes asking for payment is out of the question. However, he isn't bothered by the lack of direct payment, as this acts as the perfect marketing campaign for his clinic. He politely explains that healing the sick is his life's purpose, and seeing them healthy is reward enough. Secretly, he is well aware that once word gets out, patients will flood his clinic and make him incredibly rich. Before departing, he encourages them to send anyone suffering from similar ailments to his clinic, bringing immense relief to the community. Inwardly, he celebrates, confident that these ladies will spread glowing reviews and secure his medical reputation. The residents are in awe of his generosity, having only ever encountered greedy, untrustworthy healers in the past. As for Hansen, he is completely exhausted and ready to collapse from fatigue. Sure enough, news of the miraculous recoveries on Kristen Street spreads throughout Vey, cementing the Shadow Prince's reputation. As locals learn about Prince Raymond's clinic, their perception shifts, and they no longer view him as a spoiled royal. Some are even talking about bringing their elderly relatives to consult with him. With that, Raymond completes the slum outreach quest and unlocks the Helper of the Common Folk accolade. This success grants him 30 skill points and greatly boosts his reputation among the citizens of Vey. Overwhelmed by this significant milestone, Raymond is deeply moved. The following morning, a vast line of patients forms outside his clinic, all waiting to see him. With the clinic completely full, Raymond is overjoyed, seeing his dreams of financial success finally materializing. Stepping up, Raymond organizes the crowd into an orderly queue, treating each patient while steadily accumulating valuable skill points and experience. Hansen is also thoroughly enjoying his role as an assistant under his master's guidance. Raymond is highly pleased with the shared experience points he receives from Hansen's work, which accelerates his own progression. He genuinely congratulates himself on his brilliant decision to take the young man as his apprentice. An elderly woman praises Raymond's gentle manner, contrasting his kindness with the harsh treatment she received from other practitioners. Her son repeatedly expresses his gratitude to the prince, and the sincere appreciation brings a warm smile to Raymond's face. Sometime later, Hansen inquires with great interest about how Raymond managed to discover the treatment for the disease. Raymond begins to claim he learned it from a historic artifact, but rapidly catches himself to hide the system's existence. Hansen isn't falling for it at all and instantly grills him, asking if all this medical knowledge just magically fell out of the sky. Under pressure, Raymond finally snaps and blurts out a loud confession, yelling that it's true and there's nothing they can do to change it. Hearing this, Hansen simply lets it go and decides to roll with it. Out of nowhere, a desperate woman rushes in, throwing herself at the Shadow Prince while weeping and pleading for him to save her ailing mother. While the woman describes her mother's severe stomach aches, Hansen silently reflects on Raymond's relentless drive to help those in need, regardless of the situation. He realizes that Raymond has always possessed this selfless nature. Back in Belland, despite having absolutely no modern medical resources, Raymond would still prioritize his patients over everything else. Hansen vividly remembers seeing him pull all-nighters, studying relentlessly to sharpen his skills. This makes him think that perhaps Raymond was gifted this bizarre power because he's one of the rare souls who actually care about people. Shortly after, Raymond snaps Hansen back to reality to help prepare for surgery, and the hours just blur together. Once night falls, Raymond wraps up with the last of his patients and finally takes a breather after a chaotic shift. With a smug smile, he turns to Hansen and asks if he's ready to count up their earnings for the day. However, the second Hansen takes a look at the books, he is left utterly speechless. The cash box is basically empty, and they've actually spent more money than they brought in. Raymond calmly points out that he treated the poorest patients for free, joking that it's just a clever promotional stunt for their clinic. Even so, the ever-anxious Hansen was definitely not prepared for this kind of financial setback. Deep down, though, he knows Raymond is incapable of turning away a suffering patient just because their pockets are empty. Both of them agree to give their clinic some time to build momentum, and Hansen reluctantly agrees to keep working without pay for a bit. They view this dry spell as an investment in their reputation and growth, hoping that one day, the wealthiest clients will be begging for their services. Believing in this dream, they make a pact to keep pushing forward and wait out the storm. Somewhere in the dark, an unhappy observer is quietly muttering curses at Raymond, furious about his rising popularity. They make up their mind to shut him down and run his little clinic out of town for good. As it happens, the local unlicensed healers are losing their entire customer base because of Ray's free medical services and kind heart. Their entire livelihood depended on shamelessly exploiting the poor villagers, draining both their pockets and their well-being. Now, they're planning to band together and strong-arm Raymond into hiking up his service fees. That way, they can return to leeching off the desperate and vulnerable patients just like the old days. As the brilliant healer and Hansen rack up experience points, they keep treating the locals, kindly advising them to rest and avoid overworking. Right at that moment, the sound of heavy footsteps echoes outside. A rough-looking crowd barges in, demanding to know if they are the newcomers running the clinic. Raymond stands tall with confidence, introducing himself as a certified member of Vei's Healer Alliance. The men immediately start whining that Dr. Ray is ruining the local medical business and disrupting the established system. They order him to increase his rates to a massive 100 pina, threatening to drive him out of Vei if he refuses. Hansen immediately loses his mind, knowing that price is 10 times higher than their current rate, which is completely absurd. Raymond's expression turns cold as he tells them straight to their faces that the common folks of Vei cannot afford such a ridiculous price. The thugs couldn't care less, boasting that their healing abilities are a holy gift, and anyone wanting elite care has to pay a premium price. They make it clear they don't give a single damn whether the poor live or rot in the streets. This ruthless, greedy mentality absolutely rubs Raymond the wrong way. Raymond connects the dots, realizing that Vei is riddled with disease because these parasitic frauds have been bleeding the poor dry with extortionate fees. Their greed has blocked the needy from getting basic medical attention, a harsh reality that hits close to home for him. It brings back painful memories of his own mother's death, who perished because of heartless people just like them. The sudden flashback leaves him feeling incredibly disgusted. He knows how these black market quacks operate after losing their licenses, and he realizes that talking sense into them is a total waste of time. Violence and raw power are the only languages they actually speak. Glaring at them with pure contempt, Raymond locks eyes and calls them out for their disrespectful attitude, reminding them of who they're talking to. With veins popping on his forehead from sheer anger, he tells Hansen to remember exactly how these idiots just insulted a high-ranking noble. To turn up the heat, he drops Count August's name, claiming the Count is his personal backer and wouldn't take kindly to his doctor being blackmailed. Hansen plays along, letting his outrage flare up as he threatens to drag the city guards into this mess immediately. However, the lowlifes simply chuckle, unfazed by the threat. They boast that in this dark corner of town, there are organizations far more terrifying than the Royal Guards. Raymond silently concedes that they actually have a point. The Royal Guards wouldn't bother stepping foot in these slums, no matter how much money was thrown at them. Nevertheless, he doubles down, warning them that Count August's private militia won't hesitate to hunt them down if they dare lay a finger on them. That threat instantly wipes the smug grins off their faces, leaving them visibly shaken by the realization that a powerful count has Raymond's back. Raymond smirks internally, thoroughly enjoying the fact that his little bluff worked flawlessly. He whispers to Hansen that cowards like these only bow to authority, and they won't dare touch them as long as they believe August is protecting them. As Raymond and Hansen return to their medical duties, the black market healers call a panicked emergency meeting to figure out how to deal with Raymond's powerful backer. Since Raymond is technically a noble, messing with him any further could land them in deep, inescapable trouble with the law. Desperate, they look to Lance, a disgraced doctor who lost his entire livelihood at Belland Infirmary because of Raymond's actions. Lance is still baffled as to why a genius like Raymond would choose to set up shop in a garbage dump like Vei. Stripped of his medical license due to fraud, Lance was forced to flee to Vei, living like a low-life street doctor just to survive. Seeing Raymond succeed here as well makes his blood boil with pure jealousy. He devises a scheme to destroy his rival, suggesting they spread nasty rumors that Raymond's medical skills are just elaborate tricks and fake magic. He smugly notes that it only takes a tiny bribe of 10 pina to convince the gullible slums dwellers of whatever they want. Once the fake news catches fire, the angry mob will chase Raymond out of town themselves. The group loves the devious idea and immediately sets the gears in motion, eager to watch Lance get his sweet payback. Suddenly, one of their henchmen stumbles into the room, covered in bruises and cuts. He whimpers that the guy he tried to bribe for the rumors ended up beating him to a pulp instead. It seems the locals have finally opened their eyes to how these fraudulent healers have been exploiting them for years. Previously, they had no choice but to rely on these scammers, but now that they have a real alternative, things have changed. Now, the angry townsfolk are looking to serve some vigilante justice to these fake doctors. Realizing they're in deep trouble, Lance shocks everyone by suggesting they recruit the powerful Blue Moon Guild. Unlike the typical greedy factions, the Blue Moon Guild acts as a neighborhood watch, defending the weak citizens from exploitation. Even though they hate fake healers, the henchmen explain that the guild is currently just as furious and proactive as the local citizens. Lance acts like a mastermind among fools, boasting that he knows exactly how to manipulate them. He points out that the Blue Moon Guild was created to defend the town against the Dark Blade, a ruthless gang that used to mug the locals. Today, rich merchants pay them handsomely for protection, boosting the guild's local power and influence. Their leader, Kanseer, is an incredibly strong and honorable fighter, but he possesses one critical weakness. He is incredibly easy to fool. Lance meets with Kanseer, poisoning his mind with fabrications about Dr. Ray harboring a sinister plot against the citizens. He even goes as far as claiming to be Raymond's former mentor from his days at the Belland Clinic. To top off his massive web of lies, he claims Raymond is using the innocent people of Vei as lab rats for dangerous experiments. Kanseer's anger flares, but he pauses, recalling the positive rumors about Dr. Ray curing people without taking a dime. Lance convinces him that this charity is just a facade to test unverified medical theories, warns him that failures will simply be buried. He details the horrific potential side effects of these methods, pleading that Cancer is Vei's only hope to stop this madness. After mulling it over, Cancer vows to banish Raymond, sending Lance into a silent fit of joy as he envisions Raymond getting thoroughly thrashed. The following day, Cancer barges in, and the system immediately flags a hostile visitor, absolutely terrifying poor Hansen. Raymond is utterly bewildered, trying to understand why this massive, angry beast of a man has invaded his clinic. Instantly, Cancer barks threats at the duo, warning them to shut down their clinic or suffer the consequences of his anger. All Raymond can focus on is how his grand plans of making a quick fortune are suddenly going up in smoke. Right then, a local patient intervenes, asking Cancer why he is throwing such a massive tantrum in a clinic. Without hesitation, Cancer bellows that Raymond is treating the locals as lab rats for dangerous medical trials. Raymond is left momentarily stunned, as the gathered patients look on with wide-eyed disbelief. Cancer yells that the healer's techniques are fake, and the zero-charge treatment is merely bait to lure unsuspecting victims. He orders everyone to vacate the clinic immediately, but Raymond finds his voice and barks back, denying the accusations. Out of nowhere, the system alerts him that his dealing with crazies and heart of steel skills have been triggered. He is assigned a sudden bonus quest that challenges him to effectively cure an obnoxious patient. It seems that if he treats them with absolute sincerity, he can completely win over even the most hostile individuals. The quest rewards are incredibly tempting. 10 skill points, an instant level up, and earning the absolute loyalty of this troublesome patient. Instantaneously, Raymond's anxiety vanishes as his mind locks into a state of absolute focus and peace. He reasons that if someone is behaving this badly, they must be suffering from some agonizing underlying condition. Wasting no time, Raymond dresses the part, smoothly explaining that his qualifications are personally recognized by the king and certified by the Tower of Healing. He alerts Cancer that the city's corrupt practitioners are simply trying to smear his name because his low prices are ruining their racket. This triggers a realization in Cancer, as he recalls how Lance used to milk the locals dry with extortionate medical rates. That fraudster had even swindled members of his own Blue Moon Guild in the past. Furious at the memory, Cancer declares he needs to verify these facts, promising to return once he gets to the bottom of it. But Raymond blocks his exit, knowing this massive fighter is indeed the VIP patient targeted by the quest. His inner businessman takes over. There is absolutely no way he is letting this powerful client leave without giving him a proper diagnosis. Consequently, he turns up the charm and switches into his most soothing, persuasive tone. Over a warm cup of tea, he smoothly asks Cancer if he has any chronic ailment that other doctors have failed to cure. Blushing slightly with embarrassment, Cancer confesses that he's been dealing with a highly uncomfortable condition involving rectal pain and bleeding. Raymond immediately diagnoses the situation. It is a classic case of hemorrhoids. Without pausing, Raymond offers his services, reassuring him that it is a highly treatable issue. Though hesitant, Cancer recalls how Lance bled him dry financially for the exact same problem, prompting him to take a leap of faith with Raymond. With the surgical tools prepped, Dr. Ray identifies a grade 3 internal hemorrhoid and prepares to excise the swollen tissue with expert precision. His surgical synchronization rating successfully rises to 28. After applying numbing herbs, he carefully extracts the inflamed tissue and ligates the bleeding vessels with thread. Finally, he slices just above the knot and sews up the wound to complete the procedure flawlessly. Instantly, several notification windows flash, granting him 10 valuable skill points along with a level up. Cancer is utterly amazed at how quickly and painlessly the procedure was completed. Raymond calmly advises him that he might feel slight soreness for about 3 days, recommending warm sitz baths to ease the recovery. He then proceeds to explain the exact technique for the therapeutic bath. Ultimately, Cancer is grinning ear to ear, incredibly grateful that Dr. Ray cured a painful ailment he had endured for years. Naturally, Raymond is secretly focusing on the bill, hoping to secure at least 20 or 30 pina for his efforts. However, Cancer insists that such genuine care cannot be fully compensated with mere pocket change. While Raymond loves money, he is absolutely stunned when Cancer vows to serve as his personal shield in Vei, ensuring top-tier security for his establishment. To make things even sweeter, Cancer drops a hefty pile of nearly 300 pina, leaving both Raymond and Hansen completely dumbfounded. With his promise delivered, Cancer storms out to hunt down Lance and teach him a lesson. Raymond couldn't care less about Lance's fate. His mind is occupied by much better things. He is far too thrilled planning a delicious beef dinner with all his new wealth. Meanwhile, Cancer is on a rampage, determined to smash Lance for swindling both him and the vulnerable townsfolk for so long. Back at the clinic, Raymond is still amazed that Lance had the audacity to smear the name of a saintly doctor like him. Cornered, the syndicate of fake doctors bands together to confess their wrongdoings, begging Cancer for mercy. Unmoved, Cancer dishes out a brutal beating, knocking out their teeth and delivering a stern warning. He warns that anyone foolish enough to remain in Vey will be eating through a straw for the rest of their days. The terrified scammers flee the city and are never heard from again. Following the drama, Raymond's clinic flourishes like never before, and his experience points rocket up, pushing him to level 28. He is highly motivated to hit level 40 as quickly as possible. Realizing the endless wave of patients is exhausting his stamina, he resolves to prioritize upgrading his physical strength first. Once his physical power is secured, he intends to pump his remaining points into his intelligence stat. Before long, his solo grind is set to make him the most legendary medical practitioner the world has ever witnessed. One afternoon, Kanseer rushes back into the clinic carrying incredibly grim news. A devastating epidemic is heading their way, and he urges Raymond to pack up and evacuate immediately. He warns that anyone who chooses to remain in the area will catch the disease and perish. Hansen loses his cool entirely, terrified to see such a massive, fearless warrior look so deeply shaken. Raymond identifies the threat as smallpox, realizing its death rate is over 30%, making it as lethal as the legendary Black Death. He feels he could perhaps save a few patients, but there is no magic cure that can guarantee survival for all. Consequently, Raymond is caught in a moral dilemma over whether to flee or stand his ground. In this world, smallpox is known as the Cursed Mist or Black Death, serving as Vey's absolute Grim Reaper. According to the Tower of Healing's crisis protocols, everyone is legally mandated to evacuate the infected zone immediately. Raymond is fully aware that in medical history, smallpox has always been one of the greatest killers of humanity. He has no desire to become a casualty statistic, especially when the standard protocol for containment is burning the infected to ashes. Yet, he wonders if this outbreak is truly the unstoppable Cursed Mist, or simply another curable disease that he can diagnose with his medical expertise. It has been decades since the last recorded smallpox case in this region of Justo, making this sudden reappearance highly suspicious. Raymond begins to analyze the details, asking Kanseer to describe the patient's actual physical symptoms. Kanseer details the extreme fevers and gruesome body blisters, adding that survivors of past plagues believe the symptoms match perfectly. A spark of hope ignites in Raymond, as these symptoms can point to multiple conditions, meaning the disease might actually be curable. He decides he must examine the infected patients firsthand to verify if this is truly the dreaded smallpox. Hansen, meanwhile, is just waiting for the signal so they can pack their bags and flee the city. Raymond points out that if they don't intervene, the panic-stricken mob will burn these poor patients alive, even if they are suffering from a common illness. Hansen starts whining again, arguing that staying behind will only doom them to catch the plague and die right alongside the patients. Raymond realizes he needs to rely heavily on his advanced medical knowledge to solve this crisis safely. Right on cue, a system window pops up, presenting him with a medium difficulty quest to rescue the innocent townsfolk from a wrongful death. The quest challenges him to deploy his intellect to stop an unjust tragedy, offering a bounty of 20 skill points and an extra level up. Spurred by the quest, Raymond decides he cannot abandon Vey, confident that he can resolve the crisis if the disease is anything but smallpox. He recalls that most respiratory diseases, including smallpox, are highly contagious through airborne droplets. A sick individual's saliva or nasal discharge can easily infect others whenever they cough or sneeze. To work safely, Raymond must devise a physical barrier to block these contaminated droplets from entering their respiratory systems. He instructs Hansen to gather dense fabric to fashion makeshift face masks, gloves, and protective gowns, determined to examine the sick firsthand. Soon, chaos erupts in the streets with victims wailing in agony, as terrified parents beg the angry mob to spare their innocent children. Undeterred by the pleas, the fearful citizens march forward with torches, ready to burn the infected families alive. Suddenly, Ray steps into the room completely wrapped up in a cloak like a mummy, giving everyone else a massive fright. To ease their panic, Raymond introduces himself and explains that the family inside has allegedly caught the Grim Reaper's plague, which is why the locals are preparing to burn the place down. Raymond then questions them, asking how they managed to reach such a professional medical diagnosis. After a brief hesitation, they explain that the severe fever and nasty blisters are clear proof of the Grim Reaper's curse. Raymond counters by noting that common conditions like measles and shingles share the exact same symptoms, meaning the disease hasn't been properly identified yet. Showing great courage, he decides to step forward and examine the illness himself. While the onlookers gasp in horror, he opens up his system screen to grab some extra defense points, just to be on the safe side. Without hesitating, he spends 100 skill points on Shield, a supportive magic ability designed to block physical harm. Since his mana pool is pretty shallow, the defensive barrier will only remain active for a brief moment. With the shield running, he steps inside, completely unbothered by airborne droplets. At least for the time being. Hansen is absolutely flabbergasted the second he spots Ray using actual shield magic. Once inside, he finds a mother huddled with her 3 young kids, desperately pleading for their lives. Seeing Ray arrive to treat them, they mistake the young healer for a noble prince who has come to rescue them. Ray calmly tells them that he needs to conduct an examination before doing anything else. At a glance, the physical symptoms resemble smallpox, but it is definitely not the deadly Grim Reaper plague. It turns out to be nothing more than chickenpox. The biggest giveaway is the complete absence of any spots on their hands and soles. Those pale spots on their skin are strictly superficial. He comforts the family, explaining that the virus will clear up naturally and there is absolutely no reason to panic. The mother is utterly stunned, completely blown away by Dr. Ray's swift and reassuring diagnosis. Shortly after, he steps back outside to break the news to the angry mob, successfully convincing them to put out their torches. A few days down the road, the grateful mother offers prayers of thanks to the Shadow Prince for saving them, noting her kids are back to full health. Even the Flame Warriors, who almost burned the house down, express their gratitude to him for preventing an innocent family's demise. Just like that, his quest registers as complete, unlocking the People's Caretaker achievement, which rewards him with 20 skill points and several levels. With his popularity soaring, he also earns a significant boost in reputation and community favor. Raymond feels a heartwarming sense of satisfaction, genuinely glad to see the town of Vey finding some peace at last. Everyone is in high spirits, anticipating a brighter and healthier future. On the political front, the king is stressed about Vey turning into a massive liability, especially with Droton threatening to start a war. Linzen agrees with the third prince's stance, arguing that Vey needs to be dismantled. Ultimately, the final call is left entirely up to the king. Back at his home, Raymond's kitchen smells incredible, filled with the rich scent of cooking meat. Hansen is busy preparing a wonderful meal using the meat gifted to them by the chickenpox-recovered family as a token of thanks. Salivating at the sight, Raymond mentions that beef is great for building immunity, as Hansen happily dishes out the plates. As they dig in, Raymond feels proud of reaching level 29 and gaining the town's trust. Following so much drama, they are finally getting to enjoy a moment of tranquility. Raymond is certain that hitting level 40 will mark the end of his amateur era, paving the way for a much smoother medical career. Suddenly, Hansen pipes up, questioning whether Raymond actually cast a magic shield at the infected house. Raymond naturally flinches and tries to spin a lie, but quickly decides it is better to tell the truth. Once he explains how he did it, Hansen is actually quite impressed by the whole thing. However, the aspiring doctor downplays it, explaining that the barrier only lasts a few seconds and isn't all that impressive. Hansen points out that this restriction is likely because of Raymond's tiny mana pool, the essential resource for magic, healing, and combat auras. While healers focus on restoration, mages harness spells, and knights infuse mana into their weapons and auras. Even though Raymond has a bit of mana as a healer, his actual stat is practically flatlining at 1. Hansen notes that boosting his mana reserves would go a long way in making him a much better healer. True, everyone draws from the same energy, but the exact application varies wildly among knights, spellcasters, and medical experts. Knights develop their abilities by condensing lower ki below the navel area. Sorcerers concentrate on intellect to gather middle ki within their chests, while healers must develop upper ki in the mind, letting it circulate throughout their entire system. Among the classes, healers struggle the most to store mana, which is why naturally gifted geniuses excel while an F-rank underachiever like the old Raymond is left in the dust. This bottleneck explains why he was never able to develop his talents in the past. Even so, he still hasn't identified the exact source of energy fueling his current modern medicine skills. Since he isn't storing energy in his chest yet, can still cast spells, he deduces that the system is handling the heavy lifting, prompting him to plan some research on the matter. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes outside, sending both Raymond and Hansen rushing out to assist a worker who fell from a nearby roof. Noticing the man has stopped breathing, Raymond instantly orders Hansen to begin performing CPR. In the meantime, the king has arrived in Vey to assess the citizens, though his attendant Garmin is highly stressed given how dangerous the town proved to be for Prince Remerton. King Houston dismisses the concern, reminding Garmin of his own status as an elite swordmaster. Wanting to get a genuine sense of the local vibe, the king suggests checking out a tavern. While sipping their drinks inside, the royal party overhears some rowdy patrons gossiping about a patient who recently passed away at the young doctor's clinic. Rumors have it that despite Raymond tirelessly performing CPR for nearly an hour, he couldn't save the victim. While some respect his low prices, others whisper rumors of human experimentation, comparing him to the other princes who treat citizens as simple tools of power in Toila. Just then, a woman fiercely defends Ray, arguing that any other doctor would have abandoned the patient instantly, yet Ray and Hansen fought for him for a whole hour. She adds that the young healer actually wept over the body when he realized the man was gone. While modern medicine teaches doctors to learn and mature from loss, Raymond was so devastated, telling the widow and child that he kept sobbing and begging for forgiveness. It is an agonizing experience he never wishes to repeat. The woman fiercely advocates for him, calling him a divine angel and a true prince sent to care for the common folk. Her passionate speech inspires others to share their own stories of how the Shadow Prince aided their loved ones for cheap, unlike other greedy healers. With that, the tavern patrons proudly crown him the Prince of Slums. Back at his office, Raymond is notified that he has unlocked the Helper of the Poor title, causing his reputation in Vey to skyrocket. This new title grants him a special perk, identifying him as a champion of the needy who commands immense sway over Vei's population. Along with the status boost, he nets a cool 20 skill points and an extra level. Raymond grins from ear to ear, already fantasizing about the massive wealth he will amass very soon. In the meantime, the king and Garmin come to terms with the fact that Dr. Ray's popularity has reached unimaginable heights. Garmin had expected the outcast to struggle just to get by, but before he can elaborate, the king suffers a sudden, severe coughing fit that seems to deteriorate rapidly. Deciding to cut their trip short, they head back to the castle, only to spot a group of thugs harassing a distressed woman on the street. Eager to mete out some swift justice, the king unsheathes his blade, which hums with a menacing sword aura. Leaping into action, he swiftly dispatches the ruffians and reassures the rescued woman that she is out of danger. However, the moment he drops his defense, the woman reveals her true colors. She is actually an assassin lying in wait. Wearing a sinister smirk, she pulls out a dagger infused with lethal energy and strikes directly at him. Odin barely deflects the blow from the very woman he just saved, left reeling by the shocking revelation that this was a coordinated setup. He counters with a swift slash to her shoulder, but before he can land a decisive blow, she conjures a smokescreen spell. Initially, Odin believes she is simply using the cover to slip away undetected. But as the heavy fog rolls in, he notices a highly unusual irritation scratching at his throat. He grows suspicious that the smoke was toxic, possibly tailored to exploit his pre-existing lung condition. She suddenly ambushes him from his blind spot, but Odin's lightning-fast reflexes ensure her blade only nicks his arm before he spins and runs her through the chest. With a dull thud, her lifeless body falls to the floor. Within seconds, Garmin races to his side, asking if his lord is unharmed. Although Odin tries to brush it off, Garmin points out that the skin surrounding the cut is rapidly turning a deep shade of purple, realizing that the weapon was laced with a potent toxin. Odin tries to downplay the issue, but Garmin insists on immediate treatment before the infection spreads and forces an amputation. Odin suggests their elite royal healer, Helion, can easily cure him at the castle, but Garmin warns that they might not make it back in time. Though keeping a brave face for his loyal servant, Odin quietly observes the necrotic spreading and fears he might actually lose the limb. With options running low, Garmin urges him to seek emergency aid at Raymond's clinic, and Odin reluctantly consents. Disguised in thick hoods and masks, the pair arrives at the young healer's modest clinic. Spotting the bloodstains on their masks, Raymond immediately panics, suspecting they might be violent guild members fresh from a turf war. Masking his anxiety, he ushers them inside to look at the arm, as Garmin urgently clarifies that it's a critical case of poisoning. Though Raymond suspects they are outlaws, his professional duty takes over, and he prepares to treat the patient. Peering closely at the worsening wound, he asks if the patient is suffering from any other complications. Odin describes a sensation of dizziness and an erratic pulse, while the sound of his voice triggers a faint memory in Raymond. After evaluating their explanation, Dr. Ray diagnoses the poison as a toxic combination of hemolysin and a neurotoxin. Skeptical of Ray's expertise, Odin asks the doctor to merely halt the venom's spread so he can travel to a proper clinic. But Raymond confidently assures them he can cure it with white snake antivenom, identifying the toxin as a blend of alpenrose extract and triple white snake venom. Extremely impressed, Garmin asks how he identified the mixture so rapidly, since diagnostic tests typically take much longer. Raymond coolly replies that he studied these toxins during his training, boasting an S grade in herbology. Analyzing the situation further, Raymond adds that standard treatment won't suffice because the compound is exceptionally concentrated. To counteract this, he prepares to use a highly potent delivery method, even though it might make them uncomfortable. When asked for details, the Shadow Prince explains that he must inject the cure straight into Odin's veins instead of letting him drink it. Garmin immediately objects, calling the method reckless and flatly refusing to permit it. His intense reaction makes sense, given that medical syringes are completely unheard of in Lepentina. As Garmin tries to bully him by hinting at Odin's high status, Odin steps in and directly asks Raymond about the rumors of human trials at the clinic. Closing the distance, Odin drops a heavy warning, stating he will show no mercy if those rumors prove correct. Raymond staggers back under the crushing weight of Odin's aura, instantly suspecting the man is a legendary swordmaster. Fortunately, his Heart of Steel passive triggers, neutralizing his panic and leaving Garmin thoroughly baffled by Raymond's sudden composure. Meanwhile, Raymond inwardly sneers, thinking these two are completely unhinged. Standing firm, Raymond explains that this injection method is actually a highly effective, forgotten art from ancient eras. He takes Odin's hand, swearing on his mother's family name of Pennon to prove his honest intentions. Pondering the request, Odin eventually gives his consent, prompting Raymond to prepare the needle. When Odin looks at the tool skeptically, the young doctor explains it's a dwarven invention made to channel medicine straight into the bloodstream. Warning him about a brief prick, Raymond carefully pushes the needle in. The second the dose is delivered, Garmin hovers over Odin in deep concern. Before Odin can speak, he experiences a sudden wave of lightheadedness, which immediately terrifies Raymond, who worries his first ever injection was a failure. To their immense relief, Odin looks up with a clear expression, declaring that his headache and dizziness have completely vanished. He is amazed by how quickly the cure took effect, noting that normal treatments are never this fast. Raymond lets out a huge sigh of relief, already dreaming of the steak feast he'll enjoy tomorrow. When Odin asks about his arm, Dr. Ray assures him the decay has stopped and his skin will recover naturally without leaving any nasty scars. Odin acknowledges that seeking help from the Shadow Prince was a stroke of genius. Otherwise, he would have definitely lost his arm. Remembering how Raymond had previously saved Princess Sophia, he resolves to offer him a grand reward. Hansen walks back into the clinic, surprised to find two unexpected guests getting treated. Appreciating the excellent treatment, Odin asks Raymond what he desires in return. Without a moment's hesitation, Dr. Ray flatly requests cash, catching Odin off guard. Raymond quickly adds a noble spin, stating that helping patients is his duty and they only need to cover the medical bill. In reality, the greedy doctor is scheming to charge a massive sum, guessing from Odin's powerful aura that he must be a wealthy guild leader. After repeating that he only wants payment, Raymond warns them that the fee is going to be rather steep. Garmin asks if he's absolutely sure, hinting that they possess the influence to grant him virtually any favor. Adopting a saintly demeanor, Dr. Ray insists that his only interest is fulfilling his duty to those under his care. Meanwhile, his mind is busy calculating an exorbitant bill that will make their wallets cry. Impressed by his apparent honesty, Garmin looks on as Odin casually requests the total figure. The Shadow Prince confidently demands 500 pesos, an unprecedented fee for his humble clinic. Garmin is taken aback, while Hansen quickly whispers that 500 pesos is practically a half-year salary for locals in Vey. Since Raymond refuses to budge, Hansen sighs and advises him to at least ask for hard cash over a bank check. Raymond worries he might have overpriced the treatment, but Odin is actually relieved by how cheap it is. Odin remarks that any other healer would have charged at least 2,000, praising Raymond for his generosity. Odin then inquires why a doctor of his talent is working in a slum when he could easily open a massive practice in a wealthy city. Relieved they didn't push back on the pricing, Raymond flashes a warm smile and claims he has a loftier ambition. Deeply moved, Garmin assumes Ray is dedicating his entire life to altruistic healing. He marvels at how noble and selfless the young prince has become. Just as Odin stands up, he mentions he doesn't carry cash, giving Raymond a minor heart attack as he fears he just got scammed. Instead, Odin slides a glittering ring off his finger and hands it over. Raymond's eyes immediately sparkle when he inspects the expensive jewelry. When Hansen examines it closely, he identifies the gem as a genuine mermaid's tear pearl, valued at over 10,000 pina. Before departing, Odin mentions the ring is merely a down payment and promises that the clinic will be highly prosperous when he returns. After their guests leave, the duo stares at the priceless ring in disbelief, quickly celebrating the fact that beef is definitely back on the menu tonight. Garmin reflects on how Odin's secret son has achieved feats that the other princes could never manage. Odin instructs him to launch a private investigation into the hit, convinced there is a traitor hidden inside the palace. Word reaches the conspirator that Odin survived the encounter unscathed, leaving him baffled given the extreme potency of the poison. He vows to try a different tactic next time, while desperately wondering who this mysterious, talented healer could be. A glowing orb he is communicating with suggests eliminating the doctor, but the mastermind declines, stating their ultimate scheme is unstoppable anyway. With another month left to prepare his forces, he resolves to utterly destroy the kingdom of Houston. Back at the clinic, Hansen and Ray savor their delicious beef stew, joking about their immunity levels rising with every bite. Their peaceful meal is suddenly interrupted by aggressive knocking at the entrance. Opening the door, Raymond is confronted by towering, burly guards demanding to verify his name. Raymond wonders why on earth a shady underworld guild has found their way to his clinic, questioning their business. Pushing past the guards, a merchant named Toms from Langtrom steps forward and introduces himself. It doesn't take Raymond long to realize that this guy is a powerful boss from the entertainment district and the leader of the notorious Dark Blade Guild. Toms acts polite at first, claiming he's only there to pass on a message, and asks if he can step indoors. Once inside with his thugs, Toms spots the meat they are eating and scoffs, calling it cheap garbage fit only for animals. With just a light press of his finger, he shatters the plate into tiny shards, completely stunning both Raymond and Hansen. Hansen leans in and quietly warns Raymond that Toms used to be a legendary knight and the most powerful mana user in the area. Toms commands his lackeys to toss the cheap food out, and they immediately begin trashing the place. Raymond is completely baffled by Tom's sudden visit, which triggers his automatic facing the boars skill. Choosing to play along with their aggressive attitude, he confronts them directly and demands to know the reason for Tom's visit. Tom senses Raymond's calm confidence and is surprised to see that the doctor doesn't seem afraid of him at all. Toms claims he merely wanted to welcome Vey's hardworking healer and mentions he even brought a small gift. At his signal, one of the henchmen walks up and presents Raymond with a small pouch filled with gold. Hansen quickly guesses there are about 1,000 gold coins inside, while a stunned Raymond asks why they are giving him so much money. With a sly grin, Toms calls it a token of appreciation for his healing work before casually adding that he has a tiny favor to ask. Raymond instantly knows this favor is the sole reason Toms showed up, so he asks what it is. Using a commanding, threatening tone, Toms orders Raymond never to treat or heal anyone who is an enemy of the Darkblade Guild. Raymond is shocked that he's being told to deny medical care, but Toms points out how Raymond's healing has indirectly hurt his guild's interests and states he won't tolerate his enemies getting patched up. As soon as Raymond attempts to reason with him, Toms whips out a dagger and hurls it, pinning it into the wall just inches from Raymond's throat. In a bone-chilling tone, Toms warns him that even the king's forces can't offer protection in Vey, then backs Raymond against the wall while drawing his sword. With the blade practically touching him, Toms makes it clear that obeying his orders is the only way Raymond keeps his life and his future. Pulling his sword back, Toms bids Raymond farewell with a chilling smile, saying he looks forward to their next friendly chat. Once the thugs depart, Raymond is left completely frozen in fear, prompting Hansen to rush over and check on him. While Raymond tries to tidy up the room, Hansen panics, wondering how on earth they can survive against a monster who could easily kill them if they don't comply. Thinking he needs some basic protection, Raymond brings up his status screen to learn a self-defense skill, only to find he's 2 points short of the required 15 strength stat. He realizes that even if he gets the skill, it won't be enough against a master swordsman and mana expert like Toms, leaving him feeling utterly defenseless. Just as he's stressing over his duty as a doctor, a system window pops up with a new quest: resist the threat and continue treating all patients without bias. While they are both drowning in anxiety, a loud, frantic pounding suddenly rattles their front door. Sprinting to open it, they find 2 panicked men carrying a heavily injured friend who desperately needs help. When Raymond asks what happened, they reveal that Toms, the Darkblade boss, beat their friend half to death simply because they missed the protection money deadline. Hearing that Toms was the attacker leaves them cold. Treating this man means directly disobeying the warning and inviting Tom's deadly wrath. The men quickly lay the bleeding patient down, begging Raymond to save his life. Raymond quickly checks the patient over, realizing he has fractured ribs and a dangerously punctured lung. Just as Raymond prepares to step in, a trembling Hansen whispers to him about Tom's deadly warning. But when the patient begins coughing up mouthfuls of blood, Raymond pushes the fear aside and decides to ignore the threat to save the man. A closer look reveals a weakening heartbeat and severe internal bleeding, making it critical to drain the blood pooling in his chest first. He barks at Hansen to bring the surgical tools, but Hansen hesitates, once again warning him of the consequences. Losing his patience, Raymond snaps at him, emphasizing how close the patient is to dying, and orders him to get the tools immediately. After a tense procedure, Raymond steps out of the room and reassures the waiting friends that the patient is out of danger. As the men break down in tears of relief, Hansen pulls Raymond aside for a private, serious chat. He anxiously asks how they will handle Tom's wrath and suggests reaching out to Cancier and the Blue Moon Guild for protection. Raymond admits even the Blue Moon Guild might not be able to stop Toms. He briefly considers running away, but the massive debts hanging over his head quickly ruin that plan. Right in the middle of his panic, the system chimes with a quest completion notification, promising him a massive reward. The system grants him a special hidden reward: the ability to temporarily boost any single skill to A grade for 24 hours. Considering all his current skills are barely lingering at D grade, this is a massive upgrade. But before he can celebrate, the system drops 2 brand new quests on him. The first is to continue treating his patients, while the second, terrifyingly, is to dismantle the entire Darkblade Guild. He finds it absurd that a simple healer like himself is being asked to wage war on a powerful guild. Escape isn't an option either. If he flees, the loan sharks will hunt him down and sell him into slavery. Trapped between a rock and a hard place, Raymond wonders if upgrading his magic skill is the answer, since A-grade magic is reserved for elite sorcerers. With that kind of firepower, he might actually have a shot at surviving an encounter with Toms. Unfortunately, there's a catch. Even if his spellcasting gets boosted, his mana reserves are so low he can barely cast a basic D-grade spell. Realizing magic won't work, he begins searching for another skill that could somehow get him out of this nightmare. Suddenly, inspiration strikes. He rushes to the desk and begins scribbling furiously on a piece of paper. He calls Hansen over, asking him to deliver this note to Cancier immediately. A bewildered Hansen watches him write, demanding to know what crazy plan he is cooking up now. When Raymond declares he isn't fleeing, Hansen is stunned and instantly tries to talk some sense into him, warning him that Toms is a ruthless psychopath. Yet, Raymond remains perfectly calm, assuring him that he is fully aware of the danger but is staying put anyway. Hansen argues back, pointing out that while treating the sick is noble, it isn't worth getting them both killed. Raymond seals the letter in an envelope, looks Hansen in the eye, and tells him to simply have faith. He assures Hansen that he has a solid plan in mind. Handing over the envelope, He emphasizes that everything depends on Hansen getting this message to Kansier without fail. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Hansen nods silently, tucks the letter away, and slips out. With Hansen gone, Raymond focuses on his system screen and uses his temporary upgrade on his Heart of Steel skill. As soon as the skill activates, his willpower hits the roof and a massive wave of confidence surges through his veins. In an instant, every ounce of dread and anxiety vanishes. Fueled by this fearless mindset, Raymond marches directly into the headquarters of the Darkblade Guild. Toms immediately tries to assert his dominance, smugly noting that he was just planning to pay the healer another visit. Raymond isn't foolish. He knows visiting meant putting an end to his life. Toms was undoubtedly going to execute him for defying the order and treating that injured man. Yet, with his fear suppressed, Raymond doesn't feel even a flicker of panic. Standing tall and looking Toms in the eye, he calmly requests a moment to speak. Once Toms gestures for him to speak, Raymond suddenly bows deeply and offers a humble apology, catching everyone off guard. Amused, Toms asks why he acted foolishly in the first place, to which Raymond pledges his absolute loyalty, promising never to step out of line again. Feigning enthusiasm, Raymond highlights how incredibly useful it would be to have a king-recognized healer serving their guild. Toms scoffs, questioning why a doctor who supposedly cared so much for the poor of Vey would suddenly sell out to him. Glancing warily at the surrounding guards, Raymond steps closer and whispers that his only real goal is to get rich. He explains that a lack of better options forced him to practice in Vey, but now he has no interest in wasting his talents on peasants when he could work for someone powerful. 23 years of survival had made Raymond an expert at playing the subservient fool, and with his A-grade skill active, his acting is absolutely flawless. He continues to butter Toms up, even offering a complimentary full-body checkup as a gesture of goodwill. He claims that through an ancient medical method, he can foresee and prevent potential illnesses before they even manifest. Once Toms takes the bait and agrees, Raymond requests that the guards be dismissed to keep the procedure confidential. Toms casually dismisses his henchman and gets comfortable on a nearby sofa. Raymond begins his examination, gently pressing on Tom's stomach before working his way up to the chest. When Toms looks curiously at the dwarf-made stethoscope Raymond produces, the healer quickly explains its function to keep him calm. As he listens to the chest, Raymond lets out a concerned gasp, claiming he detected an irregularity in Tom's heartbeat and unbuttons his shirt. Finding his opening, Raymond places his hand directly over Tom's bare chest and unleashes a powerful burst of lightning magic. Backed by his high intelligence stat, the electric shock delivers maximum damage, instantly knocking Toms unconscious. The moment the boss goes limp, the system rewards pop up, filling Raymond with a sudden sense of accomplishment. He chuckles, realizing his submissive bowing earlier was the perfect setup to lower Tom's guard. The most feared tyrant of Vey had been defeated by a single well-placed shock to his chest. Raymond grabs a rope from his bag, binds Toms securely, and decides to wait quietly until Kansier arrives with backup. Peeking through a crack in the door, he realizes that with their terrifying leader neutralized, dismantling the rest of the guild will be a breeze. Tom's immense mana and reputation were the only things keeping the guild together, so defeating him meant Raymond held all the cards. Scanning the room once more, a curious thought strikes him. There has to be a hidden vault or safe somewhere in here. He suspects this sharp intuition is a side effect of his temporarily upgraded A-grade Heart of Steel skill. Rummaging through Tom's pockets, he uncovers a keyring and starts searching the office for any secret compartments. After some digging, he uncovers a small, hidden chest, sending a thrill of excitement through him. Thinking his debt worries are over, he pops the lock, only to be disappointed to find stacks of documents instead of gold. As he flips through the pages, he realizes these are highly confidential logs of Tom's crimes and his transactions with corrupt nobles. While Raymond is engrossed in the files, Tom suddenly regains consciousness, glaring at him with pure hatred and demanding to know how he dared trick him. Though firmly bound, Toms remains highly aggressive, trembling with fury. Annoyed by how quickly knights recover, a fearless Raymond tells him to shut up, relying on the sturdy ropes and his active skill to keep him brave. To Raymond's absolute horror, Toms channels mana into his hands, forming sharp blades that easily shred the ropes to pieces. Getting up from the sofa, the guildmaster slowly advances on Raymond, looking ready to tear him apart. Panicking, Raymond tries to claim the ropes were just an advanced diagnostic test, but Toms roars at him to shut up, declaring his death is imminent. Desperate for any advantage, Raymond opens his character screen and spots a few unused stat points from his recent level up. He instantly dumps 2 points into strength to hit the required 15 and unlocks the self-defense skill. The skill temporarily raises his strength to 25, but even with this sudden boost, he knows he's still outmatched by a seasoned knight. Confronting the strongest warrior in the territory, it seems Raymond's luck has finally run out. As Toms lunges forward to strike, Raymond closes his eyes, thinking of all the wealth and luxury he has yet to enjoy. But giving up isn't in his nature. Drawing courage from his heart of steel, he snatches a nearby wooden staff. He swings it wildly at Toms, who scoffs at the flimsy weapon. until it connects and knocks the mighty guildmaster flat on his back. Raymond stands there, utterly dumbfounded by his own success. System notifications begin to flood in, rewarding his sheer courage with a special passive trait that boosts his strength when facing stronger opponents. Seeing the system confirm his victory, he finally relaxes, knowing Toms is completely unconscious. While he tries to decide if he should bind Toms again, a massive commotion erupts from the streets below. Hoping it's Cancier, he looks out the window only to see a massive army from the Blue Moon Guild, with the crowd chanting slogans and calling Raymond their prince. Baffled by the sudden adoration, he glances at his status screen and notices he's been awarded a new title, Helper of the Poor. As it turned out, an hour prior, Hansen felt guilty about merely delivering a message while leaving Raymond to face death alone. Remembering how much the healer had done for Vey, Hansen gathered the townspeople and loudly declared that Raymond had gone to face the Darkblade monsters all by himself. Deeply concerned for their beloved doctor, the townspeople rallied together, marching en masse to save him. Hansen stood among the crowd, watching the chaos unfold and wondering if they were already too late. The people around him patted his back, celebrating that they had arrived in time to protect their savior. Back in the office, Raymond's curiosity gets the better of him, and he accidentally hurts his hand while snooping around. Nursing his minor injury, he hears the shouting outside and calls out from the window, announcing that Toms has been completely defeated. The announcement leaves the entire crowd, especially Hansen, utterly speechless, unable to comprehend how a simple healer pulled off such a miracle. Seeing the relief wash over the crowd, Raymond drags the unconscious boss closer to the window as the first cheers of victory echo through the streets. The initial cheers spark a massive celebration, with hundreds of voices praising his incredible bravery. When Raymond leans out to speak, the crowd mistakes his gestures for a royal wave, erupting into ecstatic cheers for Prince Raymond. A few skeptics whisper about whether it's appropriate to call him a prince given his common background, but they are quickly drowned out by the worshipful crowd. As the cheers echo, a flurry of system screens pop up, notifying him of his successful quest completion, a massive reputation boost, and exactly enough XP to level up. Deep within the royal palace, a shocked noble demands to know how a mere healer managed to defeat the most powerful boss in Vey and win the hearts of the masses. He remains utterly baffled by how such an impossible feat was achieved. The lady reporting to him explains that Raymond's brilliant strategy completely neutralized Toms, turning the healer into a legendary symbol of freedom. She points out that Toms, despite being the region's top mana user and an absolute powerhouse, was brought down entirely by Raymond. Hearing this, the noble's skepticism turns into deep admiration. She adds that despite his own exhausted state and lack of support, Raymond selflessly put his life on the line for the weak. Realizing he had completely underestimated Raymond, the noble declares that such selflessness deserves a grand royal reward. She then delivers the real shocker. During his raid, Raymond uncovered a ledger detailing the corrupt dealings of several high-ranking nobles. The noble gasps as she reveals the book names, elite figures who collaborated with dark guilds and accepted bribes to commit heinous crimes. Trembling, he asks for verification, and she confirms it, noting that even high-level local administrators are listed inside. Terrified, he gasps that if these secrets get leaked, it could trigger a massive political collapse. Meanwhile, deep in the dark palace dungeons, Tom sits in absolute misery, cursing his fate for being outsmarted and beaten by a mere doctor. He swears that the next encounter won't end so well for Raymond, promising a much harsher payback. While he sits there boiling with anger, 3 fully armored men suddenly walk into his prison cell. Tom initially smiles, assuming some wealthy nobles have come to break him out, but his expression instantly drops when he spots the royal insignia of the palace interrogation squad. In a fit of panic, Tom blusters that the high nobility won't stand for this treatment, only for a guard to casually break the news that those very nobles are already locked up and singing to the interrogators. It doesn't take much pressure for Tom to completely fall apart, spilling every dirty secret about his ties to the Dark Guild and the corrupt aristocracy's schemes. Thanks to his detailed confession, the authorities finally shut down the Dark Guild for good. This massive victory cements Raymond's status as the true protector of the slums, driving his power levels and regional influence through the roof. Taking a quiet moment, he marvels at his journey from a nobody to a celebrated hero in the eyes of the public. Sometime later, Hansen drops by with a plate of home-cooked beef, praising the Shadow Prince for constantly putting his life on the line to keep everyone safe. Raymond playfully teases him to make sure the meat is actually done this time, though Hansen insists that serving a savior deserves nothing less than his absolute best. Yet, Ray can't help but sense a growing barrier between them, as if his rising status is making Hansen feel a bit hesitant and distant. When asked about the meal, Ray beams and assures him it tastes fantastic, happily digging in to put his friend at ease. It strikes him how wild it is that travelers from far-off lands are now making journeys just to catch a glimpse of him. Hansen queries what reward he plans to ask from the crown, and without missing a beat, Raymond declares that cold, hard cash is his only target. Bright and early the following day, the famous healer and his companions climb into a carriage bound for the royal palace. He realizes his life has truly shifted when even the palace attendants address him with deep, unforced deference. As they pull up to the gates, they find the courtyard overflowing with crowds chanting his name in celebration. The adoring public waves enthusiastically, hailing him as Sir Ray and trusting him to rid their nation of corrupt leaders. Just as he is waving back and preparing to move inside, a jarring sight in the crowd stops him dead in his tracks. He spots a mother dressed in tattered rags sitting on the dirt, cradling a severely ill infant in her arms. The baby is visibly emaciated from starvation, sending a wave of sorrow through the young doctor. Fighting back his emotions, he is hit with the painful reality of how limited his medical skills are against the crushing weight of systemic poverty. He looks at the mother with heavy sympathy, bitter that the ruling class hoards all the wealth while the citizens of the lower wards are left to rot without clean water or food. Sitting in the carriage, he squeezes his hands into tight fists as a wave of sheer anger and impotence takes over. Right at that heavy moment, a holographic system notification pops up, offering him a bonus quest with a difficulty rating of absolutely 0. Inside the grand halls, the atmosphere shifts as Raymond catches the quiet, nasty gossip of the court nobles. They sneer and call him a low-born bastard, mocking the absurdity of an illegitimate child receiving royal recognition. To them, a stray from the slums has no business walking the polished marble floors of the elite. Though his blood boils, Raymond keeps his composure and silently swears to rise so high as a doctor that they will never be able to look down on him again. Once he reaches the pinnacle, he will face these snobs and force them to swallow their insults. Continuing down the hallway, he spots 2 young aristocrats bowing deeply in front of Princess Sophia. He stops to appreciate her striking presence, but her warm aura vanishes the instant she addresses her subordinates with cold authority. She gives the 2 a harsh dressing down, demanding to know why they are wasting time instead of meeting their quotas. Cowering under her intense gaze, the pair quickly bow and scramble away as fast as their legs can carry them. Raymond steps forward once the path is clear, offering her a respectful, formal greeting. Sophia quickly brushes it off as a coincidence, claiming she was simply taking a stroll in the area. He can't help but smile internally at how defensive she sounds about this supposedly accidental crossing of paths. Right before they head in opposite directions, she stops and inquires what kind of prize he intends to ask the king for during the upcoming ceremony. Raymond scratches his neck and admits he hasn't really finalized his request just yet. Leaving him with a serious look, she warns him to think very carefully about his decision before she departs. Burdened by her words and feeling a sudden weight of expectations, Ray makes his way to the private audience chamber where the Prime Minister and the royal princes are waiting. Walking in, he inwardly panics, kicking himself for not realizing he was stepping into a den of high-ranking royalty. Swallowing his nerves, he bows low to offer his formal respects to the assembled VIPs. The 2 princes stare back with icy expressions, giving him absolutely nothing but a cold shoulder. Inside, the 3rd prince, Remerton, is absolutely seething with envy over how this upstart shadow prince effortlessly gained the loyalty of the poor, a feat the royal family couldn't buy with years of effort. His jaw clenches hard as he glares at the young healer standing before them. Cairn, the 2nd prince, chuckles and quietens Remerton, asking why he is letting a low-born commoner get under his skin. The royal siblings whisper insults about his illegitimate background, snickering that he's just a cute little pet dog they can train and exploit down the line. They keep giggling in the corner, thoroughly convinced that this simple doctor is nothing more than a tool they can easily control. The chatter halts as the king's booming voice calls the Shadow Prince to step before the throne. Raymond immediately complies, taking a few paces forward into the spotlight. The monarch looks down and poses the crucial question: what boon does he desire for risking his life to bring home this victory? In that instant, a flurry of thoughts rushes through Raymond's head. He knows his default answer has always been a fat bag of gold. Wealth was his ticket to security and power in a society that had spent his entire life treating him like garbage. But in a sudden flash, his perspective undergoes a dramatic change. Princess Sophia's warning about choosing his reward carefully echoes in his ears. That brief warning links with the haunting image of the malnourished mother and her frail baby, representing all the helpless souls he swore to save. Suddenly, he sees the golden opportunity lying right in front of him. This is his moment to actually rewrite the rules and change lives. With newfound resolve in his eyes, he looks up, prepared to request something far greater than personal wealth, a path to transform the destiny of the slums. Before the words leave his mouth, he visualizes the mud-caked streets, the constant misery, and the deep despair of his daily routine. He feels a pang of regret for all the times he stood by, unable to lift those people out of their suffering. Steering his resolve, he meets the king's gaze and delivers his request with unwavering confidence. Instantly, a golden system prompt chimes in, announcing he has unlocked the prestigious True Healer achievement. The screen notes that while ordinary physicians heal bodies, true doctors reshape the world to heal their patients' lives. He quietly wonders if a cynical guy like himself actually deserves to be called a savior. Casting his hesitation aside, he asks that the gold seized from the Dark Guild be funneled directly into rebuilding the poverty-stricken Bay region. The monarch frowns in confusion at the highly unusual request, exhaling a quiet sigh. The princes sneer, whispering that, of course, a peasant-born brat wouldn't know how to ask for proper noble favors, settling for basic charity money instead. Raymond glances down at his clenched fists, mentally preparing his next move. He raises his voice to clarify that not a single coin from this fund will enter his personal pocket. It is entirely for the slum development. He already has a master blueprint mapped out in his head. By uplifting his neighbors, he plans to secure his own legacy and craft a brand new path for his future. He is fully aware that high society won't get it, but the desperate souls down in the mud certainly will. After all, a rock-solid reputation is the ultimate marketing tool, and in the slums, loyalty is more valuable than gold. The system chimes in agreement, approving his clever strategic thinking. A satisfied grin plays on his lips, knowing he has played his cards perfectly. Once Raymond quietens down, the king leans forward to grill him further. Though a bead of sweat rolls down his neck, Raymond stands his ground and replies. The king demands a breakdown of exactly how this massive sum will rejuvenate the impoverished district. Raymond secretly rolls his eyes, thinking the king is just playing dumb, but he remains professional. He organizes his pitch and delivers a compelling, structured explanation. He outlines plans to overhaul the infrastructure, clean the waste-clogged streets, filter the toxic water, and eradicate the breeding grounds of deadly plagues. Clean surroundings, he argues, are the first step to ensuring a healthy, thriving population. Prime Minister Gallman watches in silence, recalling how the crown had swept the slums under the rug for decades. Not a single prince had ever shown interest or initiative in developing the slums, yet here was the king, listening intently to this young healer's proposals. An intense silence fills the chamber as everyone registers the significance of this conversation. Gallman silently wonders if the king is secretly testing whether Raymond possesses the visionary traits of true royalty. Sensing he's losing ground, the third prince suddenly cuts in, desperately volunteering to oversee the slum project himself. He brings up how he previously tried to champion slum reform, hoping to regain the favor he had lost when his earlier attempts were dismissed. He pitches a few hasty ideas, desperately wanting to paint the royal family as benevolent benefactors to win back the public's loyalty. The older princes exchange irritated glances, visibly annoyed by their brother's shameless bid for attention. Ignoring the prince's interruption, the king turns his full attention back to Raymond, asking him to expand on his plans. Whispers ripple through the onlookers, mocking the idea that a commoner could succeed where the kingdom's brightest noble minds had failed. Raymond takes another step forward, calmly highlighting the critical need for basic environmental upgrades. Seeing the king's face remain unimpressed, Raymond feels a brief pang of anxiety, wondering if he missed the mark. He worries that the monarch wants a grand economic plan rather than basic sanitation. Standing firm, he quickly pivots, explaining that cleaning the grime is just the foundation to build clean, safe roads that will attract merchants and revive trade. With proper infrastructure, the slums can transition from a hazard zone into a bustling commercial district. Gallman chimes in, demanding to know how Raymond can guarantee that merchants would ever set foot in such a notorious area. Raymond explains that the current isolation is the issue, and the solution is constructing a bypass road to link the district directly to major trade highways. By providing a safe, heavily guarded shortcut, merchants will naturally choose the faster route, automatically driving commerce through the district. He points out that Langtrom, a notorious den of thieves and smugglers, could be totally revitalized under this plan. Backed by royal authority, they can sweep out the criminals and completely rebrand the district. Since nobles are always hunting for novel amusement, a cleaned-up district could easily become the next fashionable cultural hub. It wouldn't just cater to nightlife. It would serve as a safe haven for daytime markets, families, and honest merchants. Listening to the pitch, the Prime Minister realizes this brilliant blueprint would not only boost trade, but also build a highly lucrative economic brand. He is certain that the king will be thoroughly impressed by such a calculated, strategic proposal. Pleased with the answer, the king nods in approval and commands Raymond to coordinate these plans with the regional council. Raymond is stunned by how swiftly the monarch greenlit his ambitious proposal without a second thought. It is completely unexpected, leaving him temporarily dazed by the sudden support. Staring up at the throne, an unfamiliar emotional warmth begins to stir deep within him. Overwhelmed by this rare feeling of parental validation, the word father almost slips past his lips. The king then addresses the room, declaring that since Dr. Ray requested absolutely nothing for his own gain, he shall receive a personal bounty. Raymond stands rooted to the spot, completely dumbfounded by the announcement. Descending from the dais, the king raises his ceremonial sword and taps Raymond's shoulders, officially bestowing upon him the rank of baronet. While it represents the entry level of the peerage, it officially elevates him into the ranks of the aristocracy. Deeply moved, Raymond bows low and expresses his heartfelt gratitude to the sovereign. Presenting the hilt of the blade near his face, the king grants him the rare privilege of choosing any house name he wishes to bear. Without a single moment of hesitation, Dr. Ray declares that his house shall be known as Pennon. Nodding gravely, the king swears by Odin's holy name, formally proclaiming him as Baronet Pennon and acknowledging him as a true royal son. By choosing his late mother's maiden name, Raymond immortalizes her memory in the kingdom's official registry of nobility. Far across the continent, a mysterious figure monitors the entire coronation through a glowing, scrying orb. He scoffs in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mere outcast could pull off such an unprecedented climb to power. Yet there it is. As Odin's acknowledged bloodline, Raymond has leaped directly into high-status nobility, shattering the old system. The spy is left completely dumbfounded as he scans Raymond's skyrocketing stats and accomplishments on his screen. His smug demeanor quickly morphs into a grim, venomous scowl. Realizing he has severely underestimated the doctor, he begins adjusting his strategies, noting that Ray is fast becoming an influential icon. He barks orders to his underlings to sweep the area and erase any loose threads that could trace back to them. After all, this little setback is just the prologue to their grand, dark conspiracy. The only real clues were held by the deceased innocents, whose permanent silence keeps their dark secrets safe. A henchman grins wickedly, reassuring his boss that every scrap of evidence was incinerated ages ago. Swirling his wine, he spits with pure venom, venting about how much he loathes Raymond's eyes. That brilliant emerald green, the unmistakable calling card of royal lineage, is a sight he absolutely cannot stand. Back in the lower districts, the slums erupt in joyful celebration, singing the praises of their local savior. The residents proclaim that even the gods themselves couldn't have sent a more perfect protector to heal their lives. To them, he is a literal angel, snatching them from death and rebuilding their broken community from the ground up. Up pops a brand new system notification right in front of Raymond's eyes. It rewards him with a sudden bonus-level upgrade. As his renown spreads like wildfire, his name is on the lips of every peasant and merchant alike. His genuine compassion is so profound that it frequently moves hard-bitten citizens to tears. With his public image soaring, his experience levels shoot up, unlocking even grander honorifics. He is now officially designated as the supreme patron and guardian of the lower wards. A massive, proud smile spreads across Raymond's face as he takes in his new reality. Giddy with excitement, he nudges Hansen and asks him to say his new name out loud. Grinning warmly, Hansen obliges, proudly calling him Baronet Pennon. Raymond prompts him to say it just one more time, absolutely loving the elite ring to it. Beaming with vicarious pride, Hansen declares it once more. Baronet Pennon. Raymond is basically walking on air, unable to wipe the massive grin off his face. He reminds himself that he's officially a noble, a titled aristocrat who can no longer be dismissed as a gutter rat. Checking his status screen, Raymond excitedly shows Hansen how close he is to his next level-up threshold. He knows that with one more decent push, his rank will skyrocket yet again. The duo heads off down the street, with Hansen shouting cheers for Baronet Pennon and Ray feeling absolutely unstoppable. Meanwhile, over at the Prime Minister's administrative manor, a young noble named Raoul Kaplan arrives for a meeting. Raoul is the youngest elite graduate to ever top the Martial Arts Academy, hailing from a legendary noble household of immense fortune and prestige. With unlimited resources at his disposal, there is literally nothing in the world he cannot buy. Seated across from Gallman, he begins detailing his stellar resume with quiet arrogance. The Prime Minister listens patiently before dropping a bombshell piece of advice. He strongly suggests that Raoul consult Dr. Ray, since nobody understands the inner workings of the Bay region better. Raoul is completely taken aback by the suggestion. He is deeply offended, wondering how a golden-blooded elite like him is supposed to consult a lowly, illegitimate child. The idea wounds his pride, but he quickly reins in his bias, trying to stay logical. He mentally reproaches himself, acknowledging that judging a person purely by their birth is beneath a true warrior. He resolves to travel to the docks and verify this famous healer's reputation firsthand. He needs to see who the man behind the myths really is, stripped of noble gossip and rumors. Traveling down in a sleek carriage, he takes a good, long look at the local environment. He recalls how the Bay region was always painted as a lawless, plague-ridden hellhole in high society circles. He is quietly surprised to see that the dark, depressing cloud hanging over the streets has largely lifted. The coachman glances back, offering a polite bow of his head and addressing Raoul as my lord. Raoul smirks with a touch of vanity, playfully asking which prince the driver is referring to. The driver apologizes for the confusion, clarifying that he was talking about Prince Ray, the undisputed champion of the lower wards. Raoul is baffled, wondering how a single illegitimate outcast could have catalyzed such massive reform. The coachman happily lists the numerous crises Raymond resolved, single-handedly breathing new life into their community. Raoul's expression sours as he absorbs this information, feeling a sudden competitive tension. Annoyed by the endless worship, he snaps at the driver to stop and hops out onto the pavement. The driver keeps babbling about Raymond's saintly nature, pushing Raoul past his limit of patience. Scanning the clean streets with critical eyes, he recalls the nauseating praise heaped on this doctor for being some sort of savior to the slums. Raoul sneers internally, convinced that nobody could possibly be this flawless without hiding a dark secret. He is certain that this perfect public image is just a carefully crafted facade. As the driver continues his endless praise, Raoul grows even more convinced that Raymond is putting on a highly calculated act. He is deeply conflicted, thinking that if Raymond actually is this noble, the guy is practically a living legend. Raoul heads over to the clinic and finds Raymond completely buried in his daily patient files. Striking a dominant post in the doorway, Raoul proudly announces himself as the newly appointed administrator of the district. Raymond barely looks up from his work, giving a polite but firm brush-off, stating his patients require his immediate attention. Mentally, Raymond flags Raoul as a typical aristocratic troublemaker looking for a fight he doesn't have time for. He maintains a calm, aloof demeanor, determined not to let this big-shot noble rattle him. Raoul quietly takes a chair, keeping a hawk-like watch as Raymond resumes treating patients. Observing his gentle bedside manner, Raoul notes that Ray seems genuinely warm, unlike the arrogant high-class healers he usually deals with. But when their eyes lock, a sudden, inexplicable chill leaves Raoul utterly stunned. He instantly doubts the warmth, convinced that this sweet-natured doctor is just hiding a cold, calculating monster underneath. Is it the massive fame he craves, or is he quietly building a personal fortune behind this saintly persona? Raymond wraps up his treatment, offering his patient a warm, reassuring smile as they leave. Inwardly, Raymond chuckles, knowing that being super nice is the absolute best way to skyrocket his brand and rake in the cash. Once the administrator finally takes his leave, Raymond breathes a sigh of relief. Later, Rao realizes that because Dr. Ray hasn't actually committed any crimes yet, he has no legal grounds to accuse him. Still, he resolves to monitor the doctor's every move. A short while later, there is a frantic knocking on the door. Hansen hurries to open it, only to find an unconscious man desperately in need of medical attention. Raymond is immediately summoned to help. This stranger had collapsed unexpectedly in an isolated area. The aspiring master healer performs an examination, only to discover the man has slipped into a deep coma with zero brain activity, ultimately passing away. The companion who brought him in bursts into tears, desperately begging the Shadow Prince for a miracle. Sensing an unfamiliar, unsettling feeling, Dr. Ray asks what the patient was doing right before collapsing, hoping to reconstruct the timeline. By channeling his healing perception, he detects severe internal bleeding inside the skull, which was the direct cause of death. 3 days go by before Hansen rushes back to the Shadow Prince with grim news of another sudden death. He explains to Raymond that this female victim passed away under the exact same mysterious circumstances as the man in the alley. Baffled, Dr. Ray struggles to understand how an agent could travel so swiftly through the bloodstream, causing platelets to rupture on contact. It dawns on him that this isn't a typical illness, but a rapidly spreading virus. He begins to worry about the massive panic that will erupt once the public catches wind of it. Sure enough, terror spreads through the slums as residents whisper about the second victim and the shocking amount of blood she lost. Rao spots a perfect opportunity to step forward and address the public. Addressing the crowd, he promises everyone that, in his capacity as the new administrator, he will personally uncover the truth behind these deaths. The onlookers whisper skeptically, openly questioning if someone so young is actually capable of handling such a crisis. Though he attempts to restore order, the noise and shouting only intensify. Suddenly, a voice rings out praising Prince Ray for his fearless actions, and before long, the entire crowd is chanting the prince's name. Back indoors, Raymond grips his head in sheer panic, desperately trying to figure out how to halt this fatal contagion. Just then, a system notification pops up, assigning him a quest to combat the outbreak. After pondering it for a moment, he steps outside, resolved to take matters into his own hands. Naturally, he's also highly motivated by the potential monetary gains and rewards waiting for him. The moment he exits, he runs right into Lao, who is glaring at him with pure disdain. Lao snaps at Raymond, claiming he isn't fooled, and accuses him of doing absolutely nothing while innocent people lose their lives. Declaring that he will take care of the citizens himself, Lao slams the door behind him. Raymond pauses to reflect, thinking maybe he should let Lao deal with it, until he remembers that Lao has zero knowledge of epidemic control, whereas he is the only expert available. Even if his medical background alone isn't a complete solution, Raymond decides to step up and announces to the public that he is taking charge of the crisis. Once outside, Raymond spots Lau drafting public advisories to guide the townspeople on safety measures. Raymond retreats back indoors and calls Hansen over to assist him. He instructs him to gather every medical text on outbreaks he can find, while also tasking him with compiling a list of essential safety protocols for the citizens. Raymond pores over the texts all night long, reading continuously from sunset until the first light of day. Fighting off fatigue, he mutters to himself that none of this information will matter unless he can pinpoint the source of the outbreak. His thoughts immediately turn to the demi-demons residing across the Bay region. Though they appear human, they are actually half-demon entities known for their hostile and aggressive nature. He tries to piece the puzzle together, yet finds no solid evidence to link them to the sickness. Still, he forces himself to push through the exhaustion, determined to find a solution. By the next morning, Raymond is resting at his counter when a loud knock startles him as someone calls out his name. Raymond opens the door, and the visitor addresses him as Baronet Pennon, prompting Raymond to ask if they've met before. In a frantic voice, the messenger explains he is from the Kioplin household, where Lao has just suddenly collapsed. Startled by the news, Raymond jumps up, and the two rush over to Lao's residence. During their run, the household manager explains that the family is drowning in debt, putting immense stress on Lao. Raymond realizes that despite Lao's aristocratic background, the young man was dealing with serious struggles of his own. Upon arrival, Raymond performs a quick diagnosis and reassures the household that Lao has not caught the virus. Given his recent exhausting work with the Bay region locals, it's likely a different ailment altogether. Lao suddenly regains consciousness and, in a fit of pride, throws a pillow at Raymond, rejecting any medical assistance. Slightly embarrassed, Raymond begins to question if he should just leave. Shortly after, the manager pulls Lao aside, informing him that the treatment demands a fee of 2,000 pennas. Without proper medical care, he risks suffering the same fate as the other casualties. Even faced with death, Lao's stubborn pride refuses to back down. He loudly declares that he would rather go untreated than accept help from a fraud like Raymond. Raymond steps in, requesting that they don't discuss compensation in this manner. He explains that he'll be asking for something far different than mere currency. Stepping closer to the bedside, he takes Lao's hand and asks why the young administrator is always looking to start a conflict with him. He asks if Lao truly believes he's just a deceptive quack who only cares about profit. He reassures Lao that there is absolutely no bad blood on his end. As a physician, his patient's well-being is always his absolute priority. Perplexed by this kindness, Lao questions why Raymond cares so deeply about his recovery. Using this display of seemingly selfless dedication, Raymond successfully charms him. The household assistant gently chides Lao, asking why he is acting so hostile towards someone who only wants to help out of genuine kindness. Lao eventually relents, unable to argue with that logic. With the tension settled, the talented young healer walks Lao through the mechanics of the viral infection. He assures him that he has developed a treatment plan and intends to do everything in his power to protect the local population. He then explains that the procedure involves transferring compatible blood into his system. Though Lao initially objects, Raymond firmly tells him there is no alternative cure. To ease his worries, Raymond proposes testing the procedure on himself first. Only after ensuring there are no adverse side effects will he proceed with Lao's treatment. He notes, however, that if the procedure succeeds, they will owe him a high-value favor. When he requests a sample from a healthy donor, the loyal manager immediately volunteers his own blood. The aspiring master healer outlines his plan to transfer the blood, systematically isolating it into tubes, running tests, and working to neutralize any corrupted blood cells. He begins tapping into his magical resources, purchasing upgrade points to boost his stats. Staring down at his hands, he pushes his focus to the absolute limit. With every passing second, new spells unlock as his status and attributes continuously elevate. The system notifications confirm his transition, officially classifying him as a mana holder. As his internal energy surges, he experiences a sudden, profound understanding of mana theory. He triggers his mana pathways, watching in awe as his veins pulse with the raw energy, physically altering his bloodstream. All of his physical senses and inherent abilities instantly become incredibly sharp. He focuses on tracking the flow of energy within his veins, sensing a mounting pressure inside. By allocating points to analyze the mana balance, he observes that his capacity has risen significantly. His entire body feels like it is practically bursting with newfound strength. Unleashing a wind spell, he realizes even a tiny fraction of this power could cause collateral damage, prompting him to carefully contain it to a small surface area. Gradually, he manages to bring the volatile magic under control. He successfully isolates the blood sample into 3 distinct components. Specifically, the white blood cells, the plasma, and the pure red blood cells. He looks at the outcome with a satisfied smile, quietly proud of his breakthrough. With this finalized remedy, he is now ready to heal Lao. Wasting no time, he grabs the prepared blood and heads straight to Lao's room. A few days later, they discuss Lao's remarkably swift recovery, noting that he is completely out of danger. Raymond smirks internally, realizing it is finally time to collect his payment. When Lao bows and offers his gratitude, Dr. Ray playfully teases him, asking him to speak up because he can't hear him properly. Slightly irritated, Lao raises his voice and repeats his thanks. Later, Lao asks Raymond what kind of compensation he expects for his services. Keeping a perfectly straight face, Raymond replies that since Lao used to hold such a grudge, he simply wants Lao to show him the respect due to a superior. He claims that is his only request. Lao stares at him in annoyance, wondering if this ridiculous demand is actually his true motive. Before Lao can protest, Raymond cuts in, stating that as a simple healer, he would never accept monetary payments from his patients anyway. Raymond looks back at him with the most innocent, earnest expression he can muster. Lao finds himself questioning if the healer is genuinely this selfless. Could he actually be some sort of modern saint? Meanwhile, Raymond is secretly celebrating, thinking that he has Lao right where he wants him to help elevate his status. With the backing of influential leaders like Lao, his standing will grow exponentially. Yet, Lao struggles to buy the act completely, wondering if this innocence is just a clever front to manipulate people. Observing the exchange, Hansen asks him if he truly intends to walk away without any physical reward for saving Lao's life. Lao eventually gives in, fully convinced that Raymond is indeed a remarkably compassionate healer. He bows deeply once more, apologizing for all his previous hostility. Healer Ray secretly celebrates, knowing he has successfully won Lao over. With his progress accelerating, he senses he is on the verge of making medical history. A few days later, utilizing Lao's administrative influence, the healer and his companions successfully treat the entire Bay region. The wave of sudden fatalities finally comes to an end. As they execute the blood transfusions, Raymond's medical mastery flourishes alongside his growing reputation. Meanwhile, the shadowy cult responsible for the outbreak gathers in secret, enraged that their viral scheme was thwarted. This crisis was meant to eliminate Ray, yet he somehow counteracted it by utilizing ancient healing arts. Draped in dark robes, they gather around a glowing crystal ball to curse the healer, arguing whether they need to take direct action to eliminate him once and for all. Back in Houston, while he and Lao tidy up a clinic space for incoming patients, Raymond ponders the transmission mechanics of the virus. He reviews how quickly the disease destroys blood platelets, trying to identify the original source. Suddenly, it hits him that rodents must be the primary carriers. After all, they are notorious vectors for plague-like epidemics. However, Houston has never had a rat population. Rats are native only to Milkia, where the historical plague first originated. He asks Lao where exactly he had been visiting when he first began feeling unwell. Lao recalls spotting a strange rodent featuring black and white stripes along its back. With that clue, Raymond officially solves the mystery. The rodents are indeed the primary vectors. This implies someone deliberately introduced them to the area. Because rats aren't native to Houston, they must have been brought in by a smuggler. Since only a handful of traders travel between these territories, one of them is likely responsible for importing them. Sharing his deduction with Lao, he instructs him to head to the palace to brief the king, hoping the crown will intervene. However, Raymond strictly warns him not to mention his name as the source of this theory. He explains that there are far too many envious figures at court, and his status remains complicated as a wanted individual. He suggests Lao take full credit for the discovery to secure the king's immediate support. Deeply moved by Raymond's apparent selflessness, Lao wonders how he could have ever misjudged such an honorable man. He readily agrees, promising to execute the healer's instructions without fail. A few days later, Lao arrives at the royal court and briefs the king on the events in the Bay region. When the king requests more details, Lao confidentially confirms his claims, quietly thrilled to be speaking directly with the monarch. The court council murmurs in concern, debating the potential threat level to the rest of the kingdom. Considering a full quarantine for the capital, the king inquires about the current death toll. Lao replies that only 2 lives have been lost. The king is taken aback, having assumed the contagion was far more devastating. Lao explains that Baronet Pennon successfully developed a cure, feeling a slight pang of guilt for stealing the credit. Intrigued, the king asks if the baronet was also the one who identified the pathogen. He recalls Pennon's previous achievements and marvels at his knack for rescuing the populace. Lao proudly confirms that Pennon diagnosed the issue and formulated the treatment single-handedly. Prime Minister Gallman quietly pats himself on the back for pairing the 2 young men together. The 4th prince suddenly steps forward to take charge, volunteering to handle the rodent infestation himself. Secretly, his hatred for Ray burns deeply, particularly after Ray dismantled the Dark Guild that involved his associates. Eager to win royal favor, the prince formally requests command of the eradication operation. Though the king grants permission, Gallman skeptically questions if the prince's forces are up to the task. It doesn't take long for the soldiers' incompetence to show. Their slow progress quickly irritates the 4th prince, who begins shouting commands at them. The Bay residents soon complain, pointing out that the soldiers are only causing property damage instead of catching pests. Everyone notices that despite having the proper equipment, the guards haven't caught a single rat. Raymond worries that if this drags on, a rodent population explosion will completely overwhelm his medical facility. Anxious, he heads to his kitchen to prepare a pastime pie, a cheese dish with an odor foul enough to attract any nearby rodent. He carefully blends in the rodenticide, ensuring the bait remains incredibly appetizing to his targets. In the process, his culinary abilities undergo another system upgrade. He is now capable of expert flavor enhancement and gourmet cooking. He sighs, noting how he always seems to end up as the savior of the day. He discreetly approaches the 4th prince, who is holding a pot pie. Raymond spots a rat nearby and questions what Almond is doing in the vicinity. Just as the prince sets his food down, a swarm of rodents rushes out and begins devouring it. Raymond pushes him aside and quickly lays out his own prepared poison bait. Dozens of rats emerge from hiding in plain view of the astonished guards. The local residents view this as a divine intervention, cheering for their prince and thanking him for another rescue. Frustrated, the 4th prince snaps back, demanding they stop chanting his name. The crowd promptly apologizes and shifts their enthusiastic praise to Baronet Pennon. Even the guards defy their superior, showing their respect for Ray's methods. Whispers spread that Sadel's tactics were completely ineffective, indicating that the cult's plan had failed yet again, forcing them to withdraw. A guard reflects on how foolish it was to command elite royal knights to chase down rodents with broadswords. The entire strategy made absolutely no sense. By contrast, Baronet Pennon's approach was straightforward and highly efficient. He continues to observe Ray, curious about his mysterious motives. Secretly, he is impressed to see how the young prince, despite lacking formal martial training, maintains such control over his blade. While his physical form looks amateur, his balance is surprisingly steady. In truth, he carries the subtle aura of a genuine knight. When the guard informs him that a royal reward is being prepared, Raymond's face instantly brightens with anticipation. Later at court, the young healer silently curses Lau for bringing up his name, since he had hoped to remain hidden and avoid any royal complications. He has absolutely no desire for fame or heroic recognition. When the king asks him what he desires as compensation, Raymond decides to play it simple. Recognizing he has no easy escape, the doctor decides to ask for direct financial compensation to conclude the matter quickly. The monarch is taken aback by such a modest demand for saving the city, but Raymond politely insists that simple pay is plenty. He merely performed his essential duties as a medical practitioner. Privately, he knows a grander request would draw unwanted eyes, which he wishes to avoid at all costs. The cash will easily cover his remaining debts, especially since his previous mission only put him further in the red. The senior observer is shocked by this sudden display of humility, wondering if his royal lineage is finally showing. Agreeing to his terms, the king officially awards him the requested funds. Watching this unfold, Garmin is deeply impressed by Ray's apparent lack of greed. However, Garmin suddenly interrupts, suggesting that simple currency is insufficient and proposing they grant him the legendary Staff of Light. This proposal completely stuns Raymond, who never expected to receive such a legendary artifact. The Staff of Light is a century-old healing artifact famously wielded by the legendary predecessor, Alex. This isn't merely an instrument. It represents a healer's ultimate honor, a treasure so prestigious that families hand it down through generations. Only someone who saved the entire capital from a devastating plague deserves a prize of this magnitude. The king is completely on board with this decision. On the flip side, Raymond finds himself feeling quite conflicted. Knowing his own awful healing grade, he questions whether he actually earned such a prize. Fortunately, the king also hands him 10,000 pina, instantly boosting Raymond's mood. While it won't completely clear his massive debt, it is a significant sum that takes a huge weight off his shoulders. At that moment, he reviews his quest achievements and discovers he has officially hit level 40. As he tries to digest this news, the king catches him off guard by asking if there is any other business he wants to bring up. Neither the king nor Garmin can wrap their heads around how a deadly contagion from Michelin managed to penetrate Vey. Raymond senses that the monarch is harboring the exact same suspicions as him. Hoping to state his case and distance himself from any political drama, Raymond speaks openly and shares his suspicion that the virus was deliberately released. He dismisses Garmin's assumption that local merchants orchestrated this, preferring to let the nobility handle the investigation while he sticks to earning money by curing patients. However, the king presses him with a pointed inquiry, acting as though he already knows Raymond is eyeing a particular culprit. Raymond argues that the true mastermind must be someone who stood to gain immensely from the capital falling into complete disarray. He assumes the king shares this logic, that the culprit is a highly influential or cunning individual capable of smuggling a deadly virus across borders unnoticed. Absorbing these points, the king speaks in a steady, resonant tone, declaring that Baronet Pennon's actions have earned the deep gratitude of the entire kingdom of Houston. Stunned to receive such an ultimate tribute, Raymond's eyes widen in disbelief. To get direct praise from the sovereign himself is an incredibly rare occurrence. Offering a low bow of appreciation, he thanks the king, realizing this marks the very first instance of getting recognition from his own father. Once it is over, Raymond struggles to understand why he is getting so choked up. He warns himself not to let these feelings get the better of him. Nevertheless, he immediately budgets 500 pina to treat himself to a high-quality beef dinner. For successfully resolving the mystery outbreak, his completed quest grants him 20 skill points and elevates his level straight to 40. This promotion elevates him to senior resident status, enhancing his surgical expertise, general medical knowledge, and unlocking access to internal medicine. Seeing how logically the king treated Raymond's perspective, Garmin begins to suspect that Dr. Ray possesses talents far beyond medical treatment. While he initially appreciated Ray's suggestions on upgrading Vey, Garmin now views him as more intellectually sharp than typical high-level administrators. Even more shocking is the creeping realization that the king might hold Ray in high regard, viewing him less like a mere commoner and more like his own flesh and blood. When questioned further, Garmin points out that only a single faction possesses the malice and strength required to orchestrate a biological threat against their nation. Just mentioning their name makes him shudder, referring to Houston's mortal enemy, the Kingdom of Droton. With a century-long conflict between them, they are the prime suspects, particularly in light of the recent attempt on the monarch's life. The monarch decrees that this sensitive information must remain confidential until concrete proof is uncovered. Over at the Rim Quarter's Maple Infirmary, gossip spreads rapidly regarding how the Shadow Prince successfully wiped out the outbreak in the capital. Nobody can accept that the same outcast who spent 5 useless years slacking off at Belland Infirmary achieved this and received the legendary Staff of Light. The elite healers at Maple are furious that the legendary artifact of great healer Alex now belongs to someone they view as a talentless fraud. To make matters worse, Vey lies right next door to Maple, meaning their own standing is directly threatened by his success. Lady Christine grows highly annoyed that their official discussions have devolved into petty mudslinging. As the daughter of one of Houston's 3 dukes and boasting a B+ healing rank, Lady Christine Delavan is one of Maple's premier specialists. Tired of listening to mediocre healers trash talk Baronet Pennon, she storms out of the room to attend to her clinical duties. She has zero patience for those complaining colleagues, but her passion for healing is genuine, and she intends to pay him a visit to help her patient. Though the Assembly of Healers at Maple struggles to accept the rise of this young star, the King's endorsement leaves them completely powerless to stop him. But Baron Canton, a C-grade healer who serves as the head of Maple Infirmary, spots a clever loophole. He figures that Raymond's lack of formal credentials could be the ideal weapon to ruin his career. With the mandatory training course for novice healers fast approaching, they begin plotting to ensure Raymond fails the program. The Maple staff knows exactly how Canton, despite being only a C-grade healer, seized the director's chair through dirty political maneuvers and backroom influence. Consequently, anyone foolish enough to oppose him vanished from the Rim Quarter without a trace. Canton thrives on this intimidation, but recognizes that if Raymond's popularity keeps growing, his own position will be in jeopardy. Given that Canton is overseeing this year's mandatory exams, he plans to fail Raymond outright, an idea that delights everyone present. Back at Vey, Lau notices Raymond holding an official summons for the upcoming novice healer examination. He has no way out of this, as attendance is strictly mandatory for any healer ranked below B grade. Hansen suddenly rushes in, desperately urging Raymond to skip the test. He reveals that a source inside Maple confirmed a conspiracy is already underway to rig the results against him. Hearing this immediately angers Lau, who instantly guesses that Baron Canton is the mastermind. Raymond, however, remains remarkably relaxed, pointing out that it is just a basic course and he is hardly an amateur anymore. His unbothered demeanor quickly reassures both of his anxious companions. After all, he is currently a level 40 senior resident boasting 110 experience points, 225 skill points, and a solid mana rating of 7. Furthermore, his medical knowledge is incredibly deep, including Grade C surgery, Grade D internal medicine, Grade B general medicine, Grade S herbology, Grade A pathology, and Grade D alchemy. Achieving senior resident status has drastically enhanced his learning speed and clinical development. His surgeon perk offers a powerful advantage, granting a permanent +3 boost to his abilities during any operation. As he acquires more medical wisdom, his physical and magical statistics climb accordingly. Compared to his sheer accuracy and mastery, minor C and D grade healers are absolutely no match. This is why he remains completely confident about dominating the competition against lower-ranked practitioners. Victory is practically in the bag. The Shadow Prince confidently states his intention to claim the highest grade. Right on cue, his system displays a new challenge, acing the mandatory test. To unlock the bonus level up in 15 skill points, he must secure the top position while convincing the public of modern medicine's worth. In reality, Raymond's drive stems from the 1,000 Pina cash prize waiting for the highest scorer. Lau and Hansen watch in amusement as the Shadow Prince suddenly gets energized by the prospect of buying meat. At the same time, Hansen feels a pang of guilt for having doubted him, believing Raymond is secretly trying to revolutionize medical treatment to save lives. This thought fills Hansen with newfound inspiration as well. Lau assumes Raymond wants to shatter the arrogant traditions of the old-school healing establishment. Lau confesses he once thought of Raymond as a money-hungry opportunist, but now wonders if there is a deeper nobility behind his actions. While that remark hits a little too close to home for Raymond, Lau quickly grabs his hand to apologize for ever calling him greedy. From that point forward, both of them view Raymond as the most righteous person on Earth. Entirely oblivious to their emotional assumptions, Dr. Ray is simply daydreaming about the delicious meals he will buy with the reward money. Hansen is so certain of their success that he is already planning to reserve a table ahead of time. True to his generous nature, Raymond invites Lau along, knowing his friend's low salary rarely permits luxury dining. With their spirits high, his 2 loyal companions offer their warmest encouragement. Later, inside the St. Alex Assembly Hall at the Royal Academy, Baron Canton takes the stage to address the class as this session's head instructor. Looking out at the gathered professionals, Canton is eager to humiliate Raymond publicly, singling him out as an unqualified interloper. Hushed gossip immediately spreads through the hall, painting Raymond as a corrupt cheat. Canton jokingly whispers to his associates about a pest infiltrating their ranks, directly insulting Baronet Pennon. Hansen nearly loses his temper at the arrogant instructor, but Raymond's steel-hard ability keeps him perfectly calm. Ignoring the insults entirely, he quietly activates his composure skill to handle the tedious situation. Stepping forward, he breaks the silence to politely suggest that Canton is merely hallucinating things. He remarks that while he strives to be open-minded, he is quite surprised to witness a famous director like Canton suffering from such odd delusions. He politely inquires if it might be an early symptom of cognitive decline, delivering a devastating insult. Swallowing his anger, Canton quickly dismisses the remark and orders the group to sit down. When a blonde healer named Linden offers Hansen a chair, some thugs pull Linden back, jeering that seats are reserved for legitimate healers rather than street frauds. Despite Linden being humiliated, Raymond steps forward to show his prestigious insignia, reminding them that all healers must honor the emblem of St. Alex. In response, Linden boldly shouts his congratulations to Raymond, catching the entire room off guard. Hansen immediately fires back at the bullies, calling them the real pests for gossiping rather than focusing on medicine. Canton swiftly restores order by declaring the guidelines for the initial examination. He points out that raw healing capability holds 50% of the total grade. Anyone failing to reach a score of 60 will have their license revoked immediately. Furthermore, receiving an F grade results in immediate expulsion. Canton assumes Raymond relied on royal influence to get by, but knows favor won't save him in a practical exam. If Raymond fails to demonstrate adequate magical output, he is finished. Meanwhile, Raymond and Hansen quietly discuss their strategy. Suddenly, Raymond raises his hand to ask if extra points are awarded to anyone who successfully raised their healing grade. Hansen stares at him in sheer bewilderment. Canton grins smugly, amused by what he perceives as a completely foolish inquiry. After all, magical healing energy is an innate trait that can never be expanded through training. Aware of Raymond's terrible academic standing, Canton decides to play along and give him false hope to maximize his public failure. He publicly approves the bonus points rule, looking forward to seeing Raymond fail spectacularly. Instead, Raymond smiles quietly, realizing the old director fell right into his trap. Linden, meanwhile, remains anxious, knowing that increasing one's healing class is virtually impossible. The young man is baffled by how relaxed Raymond appears. Canton proceeds with the evaluation until Linden steps up and scores a D grade. Finally, Raymond is called to step forward. Canton summons Baronet Pennon to display his magical output, and Raymond steps up with absolute poise. Canton grins wickedly, anticipating a deeply embarrassing failure for the young noble. Even so, the Shadow Prince double-checks that the bonus points are secured, which Canton mockingly confirms, assuming it won't matter. Watching closely, Linden detects a strange, heavy presence building around Raymond's hands. Canton loudly reiterates that effort alone cannot alter one's innate magical ranking. Under normal circumstances, Raymond's output would just yield his standard low rank. But this time, he unleashes his mana, tapping into his newly opened fourth core known as the Mana Vein. This activates his mana flux ability, surging magical power through his core pathways from the lower mana hole up to the middle mana heart and upper mana channel. He had unlocked this rare trait unexpectedly after activating his fourth mana core. As a result, Raymond can utilize his internal energy in far more versatile ways than simple magic casting. Fortunately, his total mana value had risen significantly from a measly 1 to 7.5. While it may seem minor, such consistent improvement mounts up over time, much like slow water droplets eventually saturating a dry surface. By focusing his entire reserve into his primary channel, the resulting aura becomes incredibly dense and impossible to miss. The entire room gazes in shock as Baron Canton stares speechlessly at a clear display of C-grade energy. The director is left utterly dumbfounded. Meanwhile, internally, our senior resident is absolutely celebrating his success in reaching C-grade. Naturally, expanding one's innate healing capacity in this manner is virtually unheard of, given that it is supposed to be a fixed birthright. He could hardly explain his level-based stat increases, but channeling his entire reserve outward perfectly simulated a higher tier. The Baron stands frozen, witnessing what appears to be an absolute clinical impossibility. Grinning deviously, Dr. Ray casually attributes the breakthrough to his constant dedication to clinical practice. Despite magical capability being considered a fixed genetic trait, Baronet Pennon had somehow bypassed those limits to elevate his status. As a natural D-rank healer, Linden had always accepted his ceiling, but seeing Raymond now inspires him to dream of exceeding his own limits. As the course progresses, Baronet Pennon comfortably secures the top overall rank at the St. Alex Royal Academy. His relentless study habits earn him perfect marks across the board. Next up are the written tests, anatomy, clinical debates, and herb studies. These were all subjects he had fully memorized long before his medical interface even manifested. Recognizing his limitations in raw magic, Raymond works twice as hard in theoretical knowledge to balance things out. But when it comes to actual medical science, the rest of the class doesn't even compare. Additionally, his intelligence stat had climbed to 23, enabling him to utilize his knowledge with perfect efficiency. Canton struggles to mask his irritation at the results, but Raymond continues to outperform everyone effortlessly. The rest of the class can only watch in stunned silence as Raymond secures consecutive top marks. Many of them suspect some form of cheating is involved. Standing proudly, Raymond flashes a cheeky grin and playfully asks his classmates if they are losing sleep trying to catch up. He delivers a sarcastic remark, mockingly hoping they aren't content with just remaining C rank forever. Seeing Raymond on the cusp of overall victory, the desperate Baron orders a covered cart to be brought in. Now that Ray and Hansen are receiving immense praise, Canton's frustration reaches a boiling point. The bitter director still possesses one final trick, hoping to present a medical crisis Raymond cannot possibly resolve. Wasting no time, he introduces the final hands-on assessment. As he pulls back the curtain, the room gasps at the sight of a massive, bound orc. Hansen completely panics at the sight of the beast. The Baron clarifies that while this creature has injured many, today it will serve as their test patient. He reassures the anxious crowd that the beast is heavily sedated and poses no danger. Smiling darkly, he instructs them to treat the deep laceration on the creature's chest. Because Raymond is scheduled to go first, the Baron decided to deliberately inflict a fatal injury that is impossible to heal. Without warning, he plunges a weapon into the beast, causing the onlookers to gasp in horror. This violent act instantly awakens the monster, leaving the terrified Baron shivering beneath its massive shadow. To make matters worse, the restraints snap, and the enraged beast swings a massive fist directly at the Baron's face. Right off the bat, things go absolutely sideways. An enraged, green-skinned orc decides it's done being restrained and goes full rampage mode. Before anyone can even process what's happening, the beast swings a massive fist, and the unlucky winner of this beatdown is Baron Canton. The impact sends him crashing hard to the floor of the Grand Hall. He's left lying on his back, sweating buckets and grimacing in sheer agony, with blood pooling around his mouth from a severely dislocated joint. Complete panic sweeps through the gathered crowd. A healer wearing a white hat rushes over, desperately trying to stabilize the Baron, but traditional healing magic turns out to be completely useless. Magic is great and all, but it's just too slow and ineffective for a mechanical, structural injury. You can't just spellcast a dislocated bone back into its socket. That's when Raymond steps forward. While everyone else is losing their minds, our boy is looking calm, serious, and ready to work. Observing the Baron's agony and the failed magic, Raymond realizes that a physical dislocation requires a physical solution. He walks right up to the terrified Baron. Canton looks up at him, probably hoping for a soothing spell, but Raymond just grabs him by the chin and delivers a sudden, heavy slap right to his face. It looks unhinged, but it's actually a genius distraction to force the surrounding muscles to relax. Before Canton can even register why he just got slapped, Raymond applies precise traction. Using a highly advanced, non-magical orthopedic technique known as Shin's method, he forcefully manipulates the dislocated bone back to where it belongs. With a loud, satisfying crack, the joint pops right back into place. Canton lets out a sharp gasp, but the agonizing pressure instantly vanishes. He's left lying there, breathing heavily while another healer supports him, completely speechless. The onlookers, especially the young healers and students, are staring in absolute disbelief. The whispers start immediately. This guy just resolved a severe dislocation with his bare hands, without using a single drop of healing magic. Raymond calmly adjusts his clothes with a quiet, confident smile. He didn't just save the Baron, he just gave everyone a masterclass in the undeniable power of practical medical science. Shortly after the exams wrap up, a massive white banner is hung on the front of the training building. It boldly announces the results of the new healer compulsory lesson, and sitting right at the very top is Raymond Pennon. In a quiet moment to himself, Raymond's blue system interface flickers to life, spamming him with notifications and rewarding him for his achievement. As Raymond is heading down the corridors later, he gets cornered by Lady Christine Delavan. The red-haired genius healer is practically burning with curiosity and concern, desperately wanting to know the logic behind his crazy, non-magical stunt. But Raymond is completely exhausted from the day's near-death experiences. Standing near the library, he can only manage a weary, slightly flustered response to her questions. Once he finally makes it back to his private quarters, the immense mental and physical toll of the day completely catches up to him. Raymond collapses face down over his wooden desk, surrounded by towering bookshelves and flickering candles. He just lies there, completely drained, staring blankly at a document on the table that's shimmering with faint magical symbols. But while our boy is getting some well-deserved rest, a much darker threat is starting to take shape. Far away from the training grounds, inside a fancy room of a grand building dominated by a tall clock tower, a very shady figure is hard at work. This guy has long gray hair tied back, a scar on his chin, and a smug, malicious grin. He narrows his eyes as he coordinates his next move with an associate. He couldn't care less about Raymond's rising popularity. He just smiles up into the shadows, finalizing a sinister plot that is about to target the entire kingdom. While Raymond is recovering from his exhausting day, those shady political plots don't just pause for a rest. Deep in some dimly lit room, that gray-haired villain with the goatee is still whispering evil schemes to his accomplice. You can practically see the smug grin on his face. This guy is clearly cooking up something awful for the Kingdom of Houston, and you just know it's going to end up on our boy's plate eventually. But before we can even worry about the kingdom's politics, a much more immediate tragedy hits the streets. Imagine a terrified, brown-haired father running desperately through the dusty town, holding his unconscious little boy tightly against his chest. He's already taken him to the local traditional healers, but they're just standing around with their stethoscopes, looking completely clueless and helpless. Standard healing magic apparently has its limits, and these guys have no idea what to do. The poor dad is literally bowing to the floor, begging anyone to save his son. Luckily, Raymond is on the case. He stands by the kid's bed, looking down at how pale and quiet he is, and you can tell he's genuinely worried. Right on cue, his trusty system interface flashes to life. It drops a high-difficulty emergency quest right in front of him. Save the boy, or else. Our boy doesn't waste any time. He gently presses his hands against the kid's rigid stomach and immediately figures out what's wrong. It's a severe case of intussusception. For those of us without a medical degree, that means one part of the boy's intestine has basically slid inside another, like a telescope. It's completely blocked off his blood flow, and the tissue is already starting to decay and rot inside him. It's a literal ticking time bomb. If they don't fix this right now, the kid isn't going to make it. Raymond instantly calls for an emergency surgery. He, Hansen, and the rest of the assistants scrub in, pulling on their white caps, masks, and sterile blue gowns. When Raymond pins his signature cross brooch to his collar, his entire demeanor shifts. He looks incredibly focused. He knows there is absolutely zero room for error here. Inside their makeshift operating room, the silence is heavy. Hansen is watching nervously from the side as Raymond holds the scalpel over the boy's stomach. Raymond makes the first incision, and sure enough, there's the damaged, discolored part of the intestine. But as the procedure drags on, the mental strain starts catching up to him. Under the flickering lights, with his hands covered in dark stains, Raymond's fingers begin to shake. The sheer weight of holding a child's life in his hands, combined with flashes of his past anxiety, starts to close in on him. He's on the verge of cracking under the pressure. Thankfully, his system has his back. Sensing his panic, a blue holographic notification pops up, activating a precision sensory skill to help him focus. A soothing blue light glows within his chest, instantly calming his nerves and stopping his hands from trembling. Back in the zone, Raymond goes to work with absolute precision. He carefully cuts away the dead, blackened tissue and stitches the healthy ends of the colon back together. One by one, the used instruments and the removed tissue are set aside in the metal trays. It's an incredibly demanding, exhausting procedure, but the hard work pays off. As Raymond finally steps back from the operating table, his green eyes are full of relief. The boy's vital signs are completely stable, marking a massive victory for modern medical science over what used to be a death sentence. The intense surgery is finally over, and a heavy quiet settles over the operating room as the bloody tools and removed tissues are cleared away. Raymond, still wearing his scrubs, takes a moment to look in the mirror and just catch his breath. He almost lost the kid back there, and he knows he needs to expand his toolkit if he's going to keep pulling off these medical miracles. He pulls up his glowing blue system interface and decides to invest his hard-earned skill points into light element magic. Outside the clinic, the results of his exhaustion speak for themselves. The little boy has made a complete recovery, walking around and holding his dad's hand with a bright smile while his mother stands nearby, crying tears of absolute relief. The kid's father happens to be a local bard, complete with stubble and a golden lyre strapped to his shoulder. Desperate to show his gratitude, the father approaches Raymond, clutching a small brown sack containing his meager life savings, and offers it to pay for his son's life-saving treatment. But you already know how our boy rolls. Raymond isn't about to take the last pennies from a struggling family in the slums. He politely waves his hand, clears his throat, and acts like saving a dying child is just another day on the job. To this emotionally overwhelmed father, Raymond doesn't just look like a good doctor. He literally looks like a saint descending from heaven, wrapped in a divine aura of pure selflessness. The bard is so deeply moved that he makes a solemn vow right then and there to play his golden lyre and sing of the miracles of Baronet Pennon for the rest of his life. And the man wastes absolutely no time. He heads straight to the town square, plucking his golden lyre and pouring his heart into a powerful melody. He sings of the brilliant young doctor who bypassed traditional magical boundaries to save a dying child without taking a single coin from a desperate family. The performance is so dramatic that it catches the attention of a local journalist who quickly scribbles down notes from the crowd. Within days, the story is splashed across the front page of the Daily News, featuring a prominent portrait of Raymond and praising his miraculous achievements. Back at his clinic, Raymond sits at the counter holding the fresh newspaper. Reading the glowing review of his work, he can't help but laugh heartily at how far things have gone. Of course, his SSS grade system is absolutely loving the publicity. Blue notifications begin spamming his vision, confirming a massive surge in his reputation points and unlocking a wave of new achievements. But while Raymond is celebrating, the news of his rapidly growing influence finally reaches the upper echelons of the kingdom. Inside a lavishly decorated estate, a young noblewoman with long dark hair and a young man with sharp blue eyes stare at Raymond's printed portrait in the newspaper. They look on with visible worry and distress. The illegitimate prince they once dismissed as an outcast is suddenly winning the absolute loyalty of the common folk, and the delicate political balance of the kingdom is starting to shift. Back in the royal palace, Princess Sophia is sitting in her luxurious quarters, staring silently at the newspaper featuring our boy Raymond's face. Her quiet time gets cut short when her maid enters to get her ready for an upcoming palace gathering. She gets dressed in an elegant off-shoulder blue and white gown, but you can tell the weight of her social duties is already wearing her down before she even steps out the door. And honestly, she has every reason to dread it. The grand gathering is packed with superficial nobles playing political mind games. To make matters worse, her toxic half-brother, fourth Prince Settle, corners her with a smug, menacing grin, looming over her to assert his dominance. Sophia manages to keep her cool, keeping up a polite facade to deflect his hostility, but the suffocating tension of the royal court is too much. Distressed and desperate to escape, she quietly slips away from the crowd. Meanwhile, we cut to the academy, where Raymond is busy doing what he does best. Wearing his formal academy uniform with his blue tie and crest, he's running around treating students and staff. His doctor system is active as always, and it's hilariously scanning the rudeness level of a tired student in a gray tunic, marking it as merely mediocre. Raymond keeps moving through his rounds, kneeling down to treat a student's leg injury. Once the treatment is done, the student is so incredibly grateful that he literally falls to his knees and grabs Raymond's hands in deep appreciation. Our boy just takes the dramatic display of gratitude with his typical humble, slightly embarrassed smile. Later on, Raymond heads into the quiet library and runs into Sophia. She's out of her formal gown and back in her academy uniform, complete with her white shirt, dark vest, and a blue gemstone brooch, but she looks completely exhausted and lost in thought. They start talking, but suddenly, Sophia's condition takes a turn for the worse. Her face goes pale, and she clutches her chest in absolute agony. Right on cue, Raymond's system flares up, triggering a high-priority emergency quest to diagnose and treat her. He activates his advanced medical scanning, and a bunch of intense diagnostic terms flood his screen: arrhythmia, atrial fibrillation, and PSVT. In his mind, a glowing red projection of Sophia's heart appears, surrounded by wild, erratic energy lines showing a dangerous spike in her heart rate. Acting quickly, Raymond steps in, grabs her hand, and presses his fingers firmly to her wrist to monitor her pulse while a jagged red ECG line goes completely haywire in his head. To figure out exactly what's going on, Raymond leans in close, holding her face gently to help steady her breathing and guide her through the panic. But for Sophia, this is overwhelming. Startled by how close he is and how intensely he's focusing on her, she looks up with a mix of confusion and embarrassment, a nervous tear running down her cheek as she clutches her collar. Flustered and completely overwhelmed by both the pain and his touch, she suddenly shoves her hand against Raymond's chest and pushes him away. Raymond is left completely shocked and incredibly stressed, desperately trying to figure out how to stabilize her heart before it's too late. After that intense library struggle, Princess Sophia is left deeply flustered and embarrassed by how close they just were, quickly pushing Raymond away to get some space. To make things even more awkward, two male classmates happen to be standing right out in the hallway. They witness the seemingly intimate encounter and freeze on the spot, sweating bullets in sheer shock. They probably think they just stumbled onto some forbidden royal drama. Raymond, completely unfazed by the audience, calmly adjusts his academy uniform and asks her if she is feeling any better. Sophia glares at him, her face still completely flushed with irritation. But as she presses her hand to her chest, she realizes something incredible. The terrifying tightness and the wild, chaotic racing of her heart are completely gone. Her breathing has actually returned to a steady, normal rhythm. Before she can even process it, Raymond immediately launches into a detailed, highly enthusiastic medical lecture about tachycardia. He explains exactly how his precise physical adjustments triggered a vagal response to reset her heart rate. Sophia just listens with a mix of confusion and disbelief, gently touching her blue gemstone pendant as it finally sinks in that he actually just cured her. But the moment the medical explanation is over, Raymond's gentle doctor persona instantly vanishes. He hits her with a bright, businesslike smile, extends his open hand, and casually requests his standard medical fee, 500 penna. Sophia crosses her arms, completely exasperated by how incredibly shameless he is. Yet, realizing just how brilliant his diagnostic talent actually is, she finds herself more amused than angry. Instead of just handing over a few coins, she catches his sleeve and confidently promises to provide him with major financial backing and resources to support his clinic. Instantly, any worries Raymond had are replaced by mental images of falling gold coins and massive piles of treasure. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the royal palace. In the grand golden hall, a trusted royal official with his light brown hair tied back in a ponytail is delivering a critical defense briefing to King Garmin. They analyze the rising regional tensions and the growing threat from the neighboring kingdom of Droton. Garmin listens with a stern, heavy expression, fully aware of the storm that is brewing. Later, the king travels incognito by carriage, staring silently out the window as he contemplates the dangerous future of the kingdom and the safety of his illegitimate son. Back at the academy, Raymond is working himself to the bone, trying to balance his endless medical cases and his demanding academic duties. Fortunately, the grind finally pays off. As he wraps up his latest treatments, his blue system interface flashes with a triumphant chime to announce that he has officially leveled up. Raymond eagerly opens his glowing status screen to review his enhanced attributes, including his stamina, senses, intelligence, and mana. He carefully distributes his newly acquired stat points to further optimize his medical precision, preparing himself for whatever comes next. But his moment of peace is incredibly short-lived. As Raymond sits slumped at his desk, completely exhausted from the brutal hours, a sudden commotion breaks out. A panicked associate rushes into the room, sweating and carrying a mysterious wooden object in distress. Instantly, Raymond's system flares to life, flashing a high-priority, high-difficulty emergency quest screen. As a brilliant white light bursts from his desk, Raymond can only stare in sheer shock and tension at the massive new crisis unfolding right in front of him. We start in a lavish, gold-trimmed hall where a very shady transaction is wrapping up. A mysterious, gray-haired conspirator is whispering in the shadows, laying out a dark plan to Baron Canton. Canton, looking smug in his green uniform, is casually cutting into a steak, completely unfazed. He is holding a small glass bottle of bubbling green liquid, convinced this specific poison is going to utterly ruin Raymond's reputation. The two men clink their wine glasses together, celebrating a victory they haven't even secured yet, completely blind to the trap that is already closing in on them. Cut to Raymond's clinic in the Vey slums, where the consequences of that toast have already arrived. A panicked woman in a yellow apron is weeping on the wooden floor over an unconscious, dark-haired man. Laying right next to him is the exact same green poison bottle Canton was just gloating over. Raymond does not waste a single second. He rushes to the patient, quickly analyzes the toxic compound, and uses his medical knowledge and system-assisted techniques to administer the correct antidote. He manages to stabilize the man's vitals, saving his life just in the nick of time. With the patient out of danger, Raymond's SSS grade system chimes with a level-up notification. Our boy opens his status screen and distributes his new stat points into stamina, senses, intelligence, and mana. But saving a life is not the only thing Raymond accomplished here. That leftover poison was the final piece of evidence he needed. He actually saw Canton's desperate plot coming from a mile away and had already quietly gathered extensive documentation on the Maple Clinic's illegal activities, sending the whole file directly to the royal authorities. Back at his grand estate, Canton is sitting at his long dining table, still enjoying his imaginary win. But the celebration is cut short when the double doors are violently thrown open. Armored royal guards march straight in, weapons drawn. Canton's smug expression completely shatters into pure terror. Sweating bullets, he gets pinned, handcuffed, and dragged out of his own dining hall. As he is screaming in sheer fury and confusion, he spots Raymond standing calmly in the room, quietly watching the arrest. Canton desperately demands to know who betrayed him, only to face the bitter reality. Raymond, the very guy he tried to destroy, was the informant who orchestrated his downfall. Screaming curses, Canton is dragged away to a cold prison cell, his medical license permanently revoked. Meanwhile, over at the royal palace, King Garmin is literally buried under towering stacks of paperwork. His advisor with the ponytail stands nearby, presenting the finalized files on the Maple Clinic's history of corruption. The documents lay bare everything Canton has been doing: systemic abuse, price gouging, and actually poisoning the citizens of the slums. Reading through this, Garmin is absolutely furious. The Orthodox Healing Guild's corruption has gone unchecked for way too long. Garmin immediately signs the official decrees to dismantle the clinic and seize all its assets. But he knows this is only the tip of the iceberg. Canton was just a puppet for a much larger, more dangerous faction tied to the neighboring kingdom of Droton. With a hardened expression, the king pulls a red royal hood over his head, resolved to personally root out the deep-seated conspiracy threatening his kingdom. With Canton finally behind bars and his corrupt Maple Clinic shut down, peace has returned to the town square of Houston. Up in the palace, King Garmin is feeling pretty good about how everything went down. He signs the final decrees to permanently dismantle the clinic and decides it is time to award Raymond a grand royal reward to honor his role in exposing the corruption. A royal envoy arrives at the academy to hand-deliver this official, gold-embossed decree. Raymond, being the dramatic guy he is, accepts it with an incredibly deep, exaggerated bow, probably imagining the mountain of gold coins he is about to receive. But the moment he opens the envelope, his triumphant smile completely evaporates. See, the Houston Kingdom is historically strapped for cash. Instead of a fat bag of gold, the king decided to reward Raymond with ownership of a historic noble estate. Naturally, Raymond rushes over to check out his brand new mansion, expecting luxury. Instead, he finds a literal dumpster fire of a property. The roof is leaking. The floorboards are completely rotting away. And to make matters worse, this gift comes with astronomical, unpaid maintenance taxes. Bro is absolutely devastated. Raymond starts weeping cartoonish tears of frustration right there on the spot. Meanwhile, Princess Sophia is just standing nearby, holding a stack of linens, staring at him in pure, silent confusion. She has no idea why this newly minted baronet is having a full-on dramatic meltdown over his grand reward. Thankfully, Raymond's SSS grade system is there to comfort him. It chimes with a series of blue holographic notifications. Apparently, officially acquiring a noble estate unlocks a major administrative achievement, handing him a bonus level up and a shiny new title. He quickly dumps his new stat points to calm his shattered nerves, which helps him cope with the fact that he is now technically land rich, but incredibly cash poor. But the universe is not done kicking him while he is down. Back at the clinic, a high-priority letter arrives, sealed with a red wax stamp featuring a triangular crest. Raymond breaks the seal, reads it, and his face instantly loses all color. It turns out this historic estate was tied to a predatory noble cartel. The letter is a formal legal demand for an astronomical debt run up by the previous owners. And the kicker? If Raymond does not pay up immediately, they are threatening to seize all his assets, including his beloved clinic. Raymond gathers his staff around the wooden table to break the bad news. The sheer number of zeros on this debt immediately sends Lyndon, their anxious healer with glasses, into a state of absolute, chest-clutching panic. Bro looks like he is ready to climb into a coffin right then and there, just to escape the stress. Honestly, Raymond is probably terrified too. But as the boss, he knows he cannot let them see him sweat. He suppresses his own panic, stands up, and delivers a rallying speech to his team. He tells them they are not going to let some corrupt debt collectors shut down their hard work or take away the clinic they built from the ground up for the common folk. His unyielding resolve and pure heart completely win over the staff. Hansen is so inspired that he smiles brightly with a single, joyful tear rolling down his cheek. Clenching his fist, Hansen silently vows to stand by his master's side through this entire financial nightmare, ready to protect the clinic and take on whatever trials lie ahead. Hansen is standing there, practically glowing with pure determination, tears in his eyes as he vows to stand by his master and tackle this mountain of debt. It is a beautiful, emotional moment of absolute loyalty. Meanwhile, back at the clinic, Raymond and Princess Sophia are immediately back to their usual sibling bickering. Sophia is looking at him with pure exhaustion, completely done with Raymond's over-the-top, dramatic despair over his finances. The guy holding the lease on Raymond's life is the head of this predatory noble cartel. Picture a smug, calculating loan shark with slick gray hair, round sunglasses, and a purple suit, living it up in a massive, lavish, gothic manner. He hands Raymond a brutal ultimatum: pay back the entire astronomical sum immediately, or lose the clinic. With no realistic way to legally conjure up a mountain of gold on short notice, Raymond decides to take a high-risk gamble. He is going to infiltrate the cartel's main cash cow, a highly exclusive, underground luxury casino. The second he makes this decision, his SSS grade system flares to life, presenting him with a high-stakes emergency quest specifically tailored for the gambling hall. Since he is a royal baronet and a highly respected healer, walking in bare-faced would be social suicide. So, Raymond goes undercover. He pulls up to the casino wearing a sleek white masquerade mask, a clean white shirt, and a blue vest, with his loyal assistant also wearing a mask right beside him. The subterranean hall is the definition of high society, packed with green felt tables, massive stacks of colorful poker chips, and actual piles of gold bars. Raymond takes his seat at the highest stakes card table in the room. Sitting directly across from him is the smug cartel boss himself, also masked and casually swirling a glass of red wine. The boss is basically smirking, fully expecting to easily bankrupt this young doctor and take his clinic. But Raymond brought a literal cheat code to a card fight, his medical system. As the cards are dealt, Raymond doesn't bother trying to memorize the deck. Instead, he activates his diagnostic scanning skills. Through his system-assisted vision, he turns his opponents into walking anatomy charts, monitoring their heart rates, breathing patterns, and tiny micro-expressions. Every subtle biological reaction is mapped out in real-time digital metrics on his interface. Whenever the boss tries to pull off a bold bluff or holds a weak hand, Raymond's system instantly flags the spike in his heart rate and blood pressure. It is a physiological lie detector, and the cartel boss has absolutely no idea his own body is betraying him. With absolute composure, Raymond reads every single move. The boss's confident smirk begins to fade as Raymond repeatedly calls his bluffs with terrifying precision. With a quiet, knowing smile behind his mask, Raymond confidently pushes a massive tower of chips right into the center of the table. The master of the underground casino is left staring in absolute shock, sweating under his mask as the young doctor completely turns the tables. The high-stakes showdown in the underground casino is finally reaching its breaking point. Behind his clean white masquerade mask, Raymond is the picture of absolute calm, casually stacking a mountain of chips he's already swiped from the table. Across from him, the casino boss is completely unraveling. The guy tries to pull off one final, massive bluff to save face, but he has no idea he's playing against a guy with a literal SSS-grade cheat code. Raymond's system is scanning his vitals in real time, tracking every nervous twitch, micro-expression, and spike in his heart rate. Armed with his physiological lie detector, Raymond effortlessly calls the bluff and lays down his winning hand. The boss recoils like he's just been physically struck, and the room erupts as Raymond sweeps up a massive, glittering fortune of gold. But of course, a corrupt noble cartel isn't just going to wave goodbye and let our boy walk out the front door with their entire vault. Tension instantly spikes as the boss's henchmen start closing in, looking ready to resolve their financial issues with violence. Right on cue, the grand doors swing open. Princess Sophia sweeps into the hall, and she is absolutely commanding the room. Wearing an elegant blue off-shoulder gown with black lace and a matching black eye mask, she radiates an intense, terrifying royal authority. With the princess backing Raymond up and the very real threat of the royal guard hanging over their heads, the cartel's tough guys instantly freeze. The guards move in, slapping handcuffs on the corrupt operators and securing the entire establishment. Meanwhile, Raymond's system interface is basically throwing a party, spamming him with a barrage of notifications. He's unlocking major achievements. His fame rank gets a massive upgrade, and he gets the notification he's been waiting for. The massive debt tied to his inherited estate is officially cleared. Raymond is already mentally projecting himself, sitting on a literal golden throne, surrounded by stacks of gold bars. He's finally rich, and he is absolutely ecstatic. But the sweet taste of victory lasts for about 5 seconds. The second Raymond actually sits down to review the administrative paperwork and system assessments for his newly acquired estate. Reality hits him like a freight train. Sure, the cartel's debt is gone, but the fine print on this reward is a psychological horror story. The estate is plagued with astronomical historic maintenance fees, back taxes, renovation costs, and legal fees. Raymond watches in sheer horror as his financial projection graph takes a brutal, blood-red nosedive straight into the ground. It's a total emotional wipeout. Every single coin he just won at the casino is immediately sucked away to cover these endless administrative fees. He went through a high-stakes undercover heist only to end up completely broke all over again. He is clutching his face, weeping dramatically in his own mind over his empty pockets. To keep from completely losing his mind, Raymond gathers Hanson, Lyndon, and the rest of the clinic staff at a local tavern later that night. Clinking massive wooden mugs of frothy beer, they toast to their survival and their victory over the cartel. Even though Raymond is financially right back at square one, looking at his loyal friends and his newly upgraded system stats gives him a bit of peace. His clinic is safe, and at the end of the day, his real wealth is the lives he keeps saving. Raymond is standing there in his clinic, staring out the window at the peaceful white birds drifting through a clear blue sky, but mentally, our boy is in the middle of an absolute Category 5 hurricane. The crushing weight of those astronomical estate taxes and maintenance fees is weighing him down like a ton of bricks. He survived a high-stakes casino run only to get hit with the ultimate boss of real life, historical property taxes. While Raymond is drowning in paperwork, a completely different storm is brewing in the kingdom's high society circles. Inside a sunlit castle pavilion, Raoul Kaplan is sitting down for a very tense meeting at a round table. Dressed in his signature blue cloak, he is facing off against an incredibly smug, wealthy noble decked out in a luxurious, red, fur-collared coat. There is an advisor with glasses sitting between them, desperately trying to keep the peace, but the vibe is already completely ruined. The smug noble treats Raoul with absolute, blatant contempt. This guy actually points a finger in his face and slams his teacup onto the table, casually dropping arrogant demands that directly threaten Raoul's family. You can practically feel Raoul's blood boiling. The rage inside him is so intense, it is represented by a dark, suffocating pressure swirling around him. Unable to tolerate the insults or the blatant pressure for another second, Raoul slams his fist, shouts in pure anger, and storms out of the pavilion, his cape billowing behind him as he fumes across the sunlit courtyard. Needing some serious backup, Raoul goes to meet with his uncle. This uncle is a powerful, red-haired man in a green suit who carries himself with a highly confident smirk. Normally, your family is supposed to have your back, but instead of finding an ally, Raoul walks straight into a betrayal. His uncle pours a glass of wine and confidently presents a document stamped with a prominent, dark, magical seal. This isn't just any paper. It reveals a sinister alliance with the predatory cartel, putting Raoul's family in a desperate chokehold. When Raoul realizes his own relative is actively leveraging this threat against him, he slams his fist onto the table, gritting his teeth in absolute, helpless fury. His uncle merely smirks from the shadows, thoroughly enjoying his leverage. Talk about a toxic family dynamic. Meanwhile, back at the clinic, Raymond is still desperately digging through his estate maps and documents. He is scanning every single line, praying to find any possible loophole to escape this financial ruin. Suddenly, his eyes go wide in absolute shock. He actually found it. The ruined land the king dumped on him as a reward includes a highly strategic piece of territory right next to Kent Street. Sure, right now it is a crime-ridden district, but Raymond realizes that if he leverages his plans to transform this area into a major commercial trade shortcut, the land's value is going to skyrocket. This one move won't just wipe out his debts. It will turn his rundown estate into an absolute gold mine. The sheer relief hits him so hard that Raymond literally falls to his knees. He is clutching his chest, sobbing and laughing manically at the same time. His poor mustachioed assistant is just standing nearby, sweating bullets in complete shock and confusion at Raymond's sudden, hysterical shift from deep despair to wild, unhinged celebration. But Raymond doesn't care how crazy he looks. Clutching his fist in absolute victory, he knows his clinic is safe. The financial trap meant to ruin him has officially been shattered. You would think that finding a massive loophole to save his land would mean Raymond could finally kick back and relax, but real life has a funny way of humbling you. To avoid going instantly broke from astronomical restoration costs, our boy is forced to do the heavy manual labor himself. Imagine inheriting a grand noble estate, only to end up sweating and crying comically as you scrub the dusty wooden floors. His students can only watch in absolute exhaustion as Raymond desperately mops the endless hallways and wipes down towering windows. But hey, at least he has his SSS grade system. Every time he wrings out a mop, the system chimes in to reward his grueling chores with tiny, satisfying stat increases. Honestly, turning household chores into an RPG grind is the only thing keeping him sane right now. While Raymond is busy acting like a glorified janitor, his good friend Raoul Kaplan stops by. Dressed in his signature white tunic and blue cross-shaped brooch, Raoul brings a much-needed breath of fresh air. Instead of looking down on Raymond for being elbow-deep in dust, Raoul greets him with a warm smile and a supportive embrace. He hands Raymond a document and shares some genuinely encouraging words to help him push through his current financial and housing nightmares. Everyone needs a friend like Raoul when they are dealing with this much stress. But the bonding time is cut short because a medical emergency waits for no one. A wealthy man with glasses and a goatee bursts onto the estate in a state of absolute, unadulterated desperation. His wife, a purple-haired woman, is back in their luxurious bedroom, completely incapacitated. She is sweating profusely, groaning in sheer agony from a crushing pain in her abdomen. The local traditional healers have already looked her over, but they could only stand there in helpless silence. Standard magic is completely useless here. Distressed and out of options, the husband literally throws himself at Raymond's feet, begging him to use his strange, miraculous medical science to save her. Raymond doesn't hesitate. He rushes straight to the patient's bedside, his goofy, floor-scrubbing persona vanishing in an instant. The moment he begins examining her tender upper abdomen, his SSS grade system flares to life, projecting a highly detailed anatomical diagram of her gallbladder and bile duct system. The diagnosis is clear and incredibly severe: acute cholecystitis. Her gallbladder is dangerously inflamed and blocked, sitting there like a ticking time bomb. If Raymond doesn't perform surgery immediately to remove it, it is going to rupture, which would be fatal. This is where the real work begins. Raymond and his medical team quickly prep the operating room, snapping on their sterile surgical caps and face masks. The patient's vitals are dropping fast, and she is on the verge of slipping into shock. To stabilize her crashing blood pressure, Raymond preps a dose of epinephrine while the system interface lays out the exact steps and dosage for the cholecystectomy. The room goes dead silent as the surgical instruments are laid out, the heavy, suffocating tension of a life-or-death procedure hanging over everyone. Locking his focus entirely on the patient, Raymond's green eyes turn incredibly sharp. He raises his scalpel, ready to perform the delicate, life-saving surgery.